Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the Luffy fanfics, back with the amazing fanfiction. This is the fourth part of What If Godlike Luffy Ate Mythical Devil Fruit and Became the God? Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. A killing floor of innocent people, children, and babies, of caring old people and more. That's what Luffy expected to find in the Fisherman district. Luffy released a sigh, denoting his worried heart as they approached the town. This wouldn't be a fun experience for him. The Queen, Zoro, Jimbe, Brook, and Chopper who came with him, and the hardened soldiers. Luffy believed this experience would be vomit-inducing for most of them. It was with a bit of a heavy heart that Luffy approached the killing ground, hoping that his observation picked signs of survivors. Hody Jones at least had a grander dream. Vander Decken, with his pure obsession and hatred, committed the greatest sin today. Vander would pay for his crimes in hell. He was dead. After all, his body was transformed into a paste by Shirahoshi's tail. I sometimes ponder, Zoro, could we have done better? Asked Luffy. His expressive eyes met his first mate. Done better? Where? His first mate asked for more information. Within 2 years, his captain truly changed. In everything. If we were more prepared from the beginning, could the fate of those who died change? Luffy was speaking in incomprehensible terms. Zoro looked to the side while scratching his hair. After a while, Zoro spoke. Hyuna died in a way I couldn't comprehend. If I knew how she would have died, could I have saved her? I sometimes have these thoughts, but they don't mean anything in the end. What's done is done, said Zoro firmly. Yeah, you're right. What's done is done. There can be no going back from our actions and the actions of others. Do you have regrets, Luffy? Zoro, for the first time, saw how his captain had grown. Luffy was reckless and kind-hearted. That had not changed, but now there was an incredible depth to him, of emotions, thoughts, and a lot more. To think he'd see the day Luffy would regret something. Do you regret not saving your brother? Luffy nodded. Perhaps, if I had been more prepared, more powerful, things could have happened differently in that war. He had already made up his mind about Ace. It was the choice of others that led to his death. Luffy was only there for the end. But perhaps, if he was better prepared, then Luffy could have overturned the choices of others with his own power. And maybe his brother could have lived another day. He was probably very happy that you came to rescue him in the end, even if he was worried. Zoro tried to reassure his captain in his own flawed way. Yeah, by the time I saved him from the scaffold, his smirk was uncontrollable. You're right, Zoro. He was pretty happy that I came to save him. But Ace is not the only thing I regret, said Luffy, looking at the Black City. They were almost there. And what we will see down there, I'm sure it will add to the pile of regrets. Thanks, Zoro. Luffy had resolute eyes. The time was approaching. Zoro didn't betray any emotion. Luffy wondered what would Zoro feel when they see the tragedy of a killing floor. Luffy only remembered the burning terminal. This time there would be no screams, only unrelenting silence in the middle of a dark sea. Luffy approached Brook, Chopper, Jimbe, and the Queen, and they drew their strength from him. It felt unbearably cold, as they knew what they were approaching ever so slowly. The soldiers were old, almost in the retirement age. There was no way they could send fledglings here only to suffer. XOX. One grinned, another sobbed, another smirked, and the last smiled. The first one to cry was Ottoheim. She cried so hard in relief, hugging her love. Luffy. 1 second later he grinned like the sun while petting her hair. Zoro and Jimbe a minute later realized why. The swordsman smirked, and the Knight of the Sea smiled. The sinking feeling disappeared, but not completely, as they landed on the sand in a hill next to the Black City. The reason for their good mood was, of course, their observation hacky. The observation allowed them to sense survivors in the city. The Queen's observation was the first to pick up signs of life, followed immediately by Luffy. Zoro and Jimbe were the last ones. Ottoheim had her hands on her mouth as she cried, and Luffy hugged her tighter. There were more survivors than she dared to expect. Her advanced observation picked up more than 60,000 signs, scattered around in warehouses, deserted places, and the outskirts. It was like the survivors made shelters in various parts of the district. Deccan's insane spree had left a lot of survivors, even if he killed a lot of people in the end. Everybody expected hopelessness in this desolate place. They only expected to cart of corpses from the killing floor. But they found rays of hope. The many survivors. This was welcome news. XOX. They divided into groups led by those with observation hacky. Chopper went with Zoro, and Brook came with Luffy. The soldiers were divided between the Queen and Jimbe. Luffy approached the warehouse. A bubble was around him as pressure made his naked feet firmly planted on the floor. Luffy put a hand on the door. It was locked, perhaps even blockaded from inside. But it didn't matter to him. His hands pressed against it. He applied a tiny amount of force, crushing the door and the furniture, blockading it. There were people inside. 50-60 survivors. A young merman of about 21 charged with a spear pointed. Die. The spear struck, but it was crushed by Luffy's arm as the limb lunged outside of his personal bubble to grab the spear. The weapon was crushed by his fingers. The young merman reeled back from the shock of having his weapon so easily crushed, yet his eyes held deep determination as he stared at the tall muscular human. Why is a human here? That monster killed everybody and now this. The young merman warrior exclaimed as tears fell from his face. Kids and elders, adults and women sobbed and murmured from further in the warehouse. They saw the exchange and wondered how strong the tall human was, and how they couldn't escape if he turned his wrath onto them. The young determined merman was preparing to attack again. Even without the spear, he felt he was the last line of defense from the survivors. Leave us alone, leave us be human. The merman prepared a fist, but Luffy's hand grabbed him in a handshake. Luffy's eyes were high with emotion. I'm here to save you, you idiot. Luffy yelled. I don't believe you. To save us? Lies, the merman said with a weak voice. The people there looked at Luffy with fear and hope, yet the prejudice made them not step further and stay huddled in the back. They felt that the black-haired straw hat human was just lying to them, yet they wanted to immediately beg for the human to save them. That magnetic pull was the overwhelming charisma the tall human with a straw hat boasted. Believe me, the nightmare has passed. I'll get you out of this place. Nobody here has to suffer anymore, Luffy said as he looked to the ground. All of the people held hope in their eyes, but the elderly had doubts. The children wanting to get out tried to run, but they were held by their mothers as they shook their heads. How can we believe you? The merman and the other survivors in the warehouse wanted to believe him so bad because he had such a warm presence. That monster is dead. Shirahoshi, your princess killed him. This place can't be your home anymore. I came here at the queen's behest. Believe me, please. Luffy's hand is shaking. His emotions were bare, and it affected them all. The merman had a baffled face as he saw the tall human holding his hand firmly. The merman felt that this human was empathizing with their plight. The survivors wanted to believe him. Their hearts were filled with hope. They now believed him. Luffy loosened his hold and let go. He finally faced them, and people slowly started to approach the tall human in the bubble. Their fear was turning into hope, and even more when the survivors that Luffy rescued from more than 75 homes and buildings appeared by the door. The young merman warrior who protected them sobbed when he spotted his wife outside. His hand was on his forehead as tears fell down like a waterfall. He hugged her deeply, crying in her hair. He never held his wife this tight before as he yelled her name repeatedly. Luffy led them outside, more than 15,000 survivors that he already rescued. Their hope turned into gratitude as they followed his orders. Brook came in with even more survivors, rounding that number to 20,000. Luffy walked with Brook as they led the group. Luffy looked to one building. It was an orphanage. Luffy's eyes grew heavy. Brook, what do you feel when you see how many people are dead, cleaved in half with that horrified expression, right on the street, innocent people? Luffy looked at the road they walked. Innumerable bodies, with the most horrific expression marking their faces, with the group of survivors behind them, covering their children's eyes and looking to the side. I feel heavy. Unlike me, these people don't have a second life. It feels like a hook is pulling me into the abyss, Luffy-san. I see. I feel the same. Brook, take them out of town to that hill over there. We called in for more help. There should be a lot of ships arriving there. Luffy pointed to the specific hill. But, Luffy-san, we already saved most survivors. The other survivors are being rescued by the other groups. Leave the orphanages to me. Brook, nobody should see this. Luffy struggled to say the last part. Brook wanted to say something, but a determined glare from Luffy shut him up. I understand, Luffy-san, said Brook, respecting the captain's order. But the skeleton was still worried. If nobody should see this, then Luffy shouldn't be seeing either. That's what Brook wanted to say. Tell Otohime-chan and Zoro that I will take care of the orphanages, and that if they disobey me, I will not forgive them for breaking my orders. Brook stared at Luffy's back as he entered the door to one of the orphanages. XOX. All of them were on the hill, waiting for Luffy to arrive. Otohime wanted to go with Luffy and rescue the children in the orphanages scattered around the district, but Jimbe and Chopper blocked her. She was still beaten up, and her mind had taken enough tragedy, seeing the streets filled with dead, innocents dead. Their bodies were torn, their faces helpless. They were her citizens. And yet, her government never touched them. They were her people and she never tried to rule them fairly. The place had become a cesspool of criminal activity for both humans and fishmen. Eventually, the disagreements became too great, and a fisherman supremacy movement was birthed and festered here. And yet most of the people living here never let their hate rule their lives. Half of the people living in the district never committed a crime. There were children, young men, young women, elderly. They were killed without mercy. Unlike the fight that happened in the plaza, these people were killed without rhyme or reason. Vander did not have a grander ideology like Hody or a desire to protect the kingdom from malicious enemies like Luffy and the Straw Hats. The reason for the killing floor was just insanity caused because of the powerful drug. Addiction caused extreme violence and fueled his obsession. That was the motive. Drug abuse which caused an extreme psychotic rampage. The truth was sadder than fiction. And now Ottoheim had to take the brunt of seeing her citizens slaughtered by the masses. Her blue eyes were just tired. She looked at the green-haired swordsman, and he was fine if not for the slight frown and the slew of complicated thoughts swimming around his body. Jimbe was taking everything very well. He was very mature. He didn't let his emotions show on his face, yet she knew that he was suffering. Her observation read people's emotions very well. The skeleton was fine. He had a sinking feeling, but that disappeared fast, she noticed. Chopper had ruffled fur and focused eyes. He was working hard, despite almost crying after seeing so many dead people. She had to give it to the little reindeer. Seeing the little reindeer helping people despite the obvious sadness and rage. Chopper was someone worthy of respect. After a few minutes of waiting, Luffy appeared. He was carrying over 70 children and babies on his back. As ridiculous as it sounded, it was comical to look at. It was like he was carrying a pile. He was grinning at them, but his eyes were shadowed. Soon the children were treated, and they swarmed their savior. Luffy was the charismatic leader, and the children adored to be by his side. It was a joyful occasion that lifted everyone's spirits. They gathered around, and he expertly eased their worries. Luffy truly cared for them. He cared for her. It made Ottoheim's eyes just a little brighter. Go on. We need to collect the bodies for burial. Work in groups of 10. We'll carry the survivors in 4 of those ships. Good luck and stay strong out there. Luffy was talking to the 500 soldiers that arrived to help. He ordered their leader on how to tackle the problem. I gave my passing to the orphan babies and children under 10 who died. I brought their bodies outside of the district. Their bodies are now scattered ash. The commander gulped in anxiety. They were orphans, so they don't have anyone. They won't even get a proper burial by their family because they have none. So I took matters into my own hands and gave them a passing that will clean all cruelty committed to them from their souls. Luffy walked away from the commander, displaying tired gray eyes. May they have more luck in the wheel of reincarnation. They didn't deserve to end by the hands of a maniac. Luffy muttered to himself, as his gray eyes lost their tired look and joined the survivors. Their business was done here. Ottoheim's eyes closed. She was dead tired. Her head found Luffy's shoulder as she slept. Luffy couldn't blame her. The day was tiring, suppressing an uprising, and dealing with this tragedy, not to mention all the wounds she sustained today. Luffy praised her resilience. She was truly a worthy ruler of her people. Hey Chopper, good work out there today. I'm proud of you. Luffy praised Chopper. He did so much today for Fishman's Island. Hee, I'm not happy. Shut up, you asshole. Chopper danced around. It was obvious that he was happy to be complimented by his captain. Well, let's take this cheeky queen to a bed. Luffy lifted the mermaid and went inside the ship. The soldiers led them to a cabin where there was a bed. They were happy to lead Luffy about the place. He had gained their utmost respect for what he did to save their kingdom. Luffy put the 12-feet mermaid on the longer bed and pulled the blanket over her. Her eyes, even closed, looked dead tired. She deserved a long rest. Even after seeing her in this vulnerable state, she sure was stunning. But soon Luffy's gaze wandered off her body, and he removed himself from the room, leaving Chopper inside to tend to her wounds and reapply some bandages. Luffy posted a few strong warriors outside her room and went towards the deck. They were sailing again to the Fisherman's Island. When all was done, there were no human slaves down there in the district. All of the slaves were killed in the fight on the plaza. Most of them died to the new Frankie shotgun. Luffy was surprised. That mech was really powerful and cool looking. Luffy-san, what will happen to all of these people? Brook was referring to the survivors of the genocide. Luffy looked at them. A lot of them cried for a lost one. Others searched the crowd endlessly, trying to find their family and friends in the crowd. Some gave up and started to cry. Others wandered helplessly, with dazed eyes only focused on searching for their close friends and family, and never finding any of them. It was sad to watch. Others had a happier ending. Their families were reunited. What will happen to them? That's a loaded question, Brook. They probably will live on Fishman Island, following their laws. The children without parents will probably live on an orphanage somewhere on the island. It is probably a bittersweet ending for most people. I wonder what will make those people smile again. Brook was watching the people searching the endless crowd on the large ship, not finding anyone close to them. Brook could imagine the heartrending feelings very clearly. I don't know, but it will depend on what Ottoheim does for her people. Probably. Yo ho ho. Luffy laughed with him. Yeah, probably. I can't read the future, but it's out of our hands now. This is not our problem to solve anymore. We cannot be the ones to ease their pain, not ours to solve. That's a bit cold, Luffy-san. Brook stared at him curiously. Luffy smiled. His gray eyes regained their brightness. You think? Ultimately, we are pirates. It's not our job to save everyone. We are selfish. We act on our desires and dreams. Saving everyone. Leave that to real heroes like Shirahoshi, Ottoheim, and Fukaboshi. Luffy was interrupted by children and teenagers pulling his leg. Those cheek brats pushed him away. Sorry, Brook. Luffy smiled at him as he was led away. Yeah, you're completely right, my captain. Brook stared at Luffy's back as he walked away to play with the teens. Brook looked at the complete darkness of the district as it was fading from view, and the brightness of the world tree giving light to the kingdom. So, the district will be closed off, and the survivors will have to live under the Queen's direct rule. To think we would be embroiled in something so desolate right at the start of our adventure. It makes me think we will have unimaginable adventures waiting for us in the new world. But this is the ending you wanted, isn't it, Luffy-san? In the end, we only entered this conflict to help Otoheim and Shirahoshi, who have been kind to us. It was the ending you wanted, right? Luffy once more came to visit Otoheim in her cabin. She was very affectionate toward him and he reciprocated in kind. She even invited him for a celebration. They saved their country, so a country-wide party was obvious. Luffy agreed for 2 reasons: to take Otoheim's mind off the aftermath, and because he really liked the food. They talked for a while. Chopper was dozing off in the chair as Luffy sat down on the floor beside her bed. Their flirting reached a point where she raised her head and pecked his lips, biting on it. XOX. Luffy got out of the room, and a young soldier blushed, so they were doing that. Zoro was on the opposite wall, sitting down with his swords on the shoulder. Luffy had a sweat drop. It seemed Zoro didn't care at all. Both walked towards the deck. They were almost approaching the city. Hey, Luffy, you told me you regretted more. What did you regret? Well, setting aside Ace, today I regretted something. Luffy walked with him. If I had killed the stalker guy in our first meeting, would it have prevented the genocide? If I had punched him then, delivered the final blow, perhaps hundreds of thousands of people would have still been alive. Luffy looked back at his fist. If only. You have the habit of holding back. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. The only reason that guy survived was because of sheer luck on his side. I see. Next time don't be light on your opponent, Luffy. The lion hunts the rabbit with all its might, remember that. Zoro gave advice to his captain. His eyes were hard, but concerned. Luffy smirked and agreed with him. The stalker guy ... that Hody guy. These enemies were resilient and stubborn. Even when their life was about to end, they didn't stop. I'll probably find enemies even more stubborn than these 2 in the new world. With my new powers, I thought this was going to be a breeze. I guess not. We'll see. Luffy looked as they entered the bubble toward the beautiful Fisherman's Island. XOX. Luffy stepped into the palace, finally regrouping with his crew and Shirahoshi. As the feast preparations were being made, the group gathered on a balcony as they discussed their adventures and what they found cool about the island and its culture. Luffy was looking at Jimbe as the Knight of the Sea refused his invitation for the crew. Why are you refusing, Jimbe? Let's go adventuring together. Luffy started forward as if trying to decipher why Jimbe refused. Usopp grabbed Luffy's shoulder as he stared at Jim with a smile. Yeah, join our crew, boss. It would be great to have a former warlord of the sea on board. Chopper put his hands on Luffy's hair and petted it. I'm only saying that I cannot accept your invitation right now. I'm grateful and overjoyed by it. I am sure that it would please me greatly to travel with you, but there is still business to be done here, said Jimbe, and Luffy put a hand on his hat. Shirahoshi held concern in her eyes at Jimbe, a bit surprised that he didn't accept. Brook had a tea ready and was sipping on it while Usopp and Chopper were resigned to Jimbe's decision. I have a position here, one that I have temporarily satisfied. But once I have upheld my duty and all loose ends have been tied up, Jimbe stared at Luffy with a determined look. I promise you that I will return to you if you still feel that same way about me then. Will you ask me to join the Straw Hat crew once again? Luffy frowned. I don't like it, but I respect your decision, Jimbe. You better come back to me once that's done. Got that? There it was, the demanding part of their captain. It was hard to refuse an order from him, and Jimbe knew that well. Come on, Luffy, the man's got a duty to perform. Don't put so much pressure on him. Sora arrived with a cupcake and persuaded him with food. Luffy quickly grabbed her and gave her a kiss on the cheek, thanking her for bringing a dessert for everyone. It was funny seeing Shirahoshi with the huge cupcake in her hands. Sora was truly a master chef to produce a pastry that large. Everyone was happy that Jimbe really wanted to go with them. He must really like us, Robin said with a smile. Yo ho ho. Brook laughed, and Zoro smirked. To think Luffy really wants this guy to join. We'll be waitin', Jimbe, said Frankie with his boisterous voice. Even Nami was happy that Jimbe would eventually join. You have my thanks. Jimbe closed his eyes. Zoro crossed his arms. So what now? Right into the new world. What? You're leaving already? But we still haven't thanked you properly yet. Shirahoshi leaned forward. Her eyes stared at Luffy and he laughed. Don't worry, Hoshi-chan, we will be staying for a while. Sora had a diabolical smirk on her pretty face. She leaned as her bangs fell on her face. Her pupils became hearts. I agree with the captain. Here's a suggestion: we should stay on the Mermaid Cafe for at least a week to get to know the mermaids down there. Nami just booped the chef in love. Sora, you just want to see the mermaids. Geez, even after you turned into a woman you still haven't changed much. She murmured the last part. Well, if Luffy wants to stay here for a while then we have no choice, said Usopp while secretly supporting Sora's decision. They awaited the feast. XOX. Most of the cells were now occupied by the new fisherman pirates. All of them had partaken in the power drug, which made them impulsive and rageful. The drug was amplifying their hatred. The guards expected the prisoners to plead for mercy or try to convince someone to release them. They expected fear at the sentence given, but none did that. Because of the drug, their racism was amplified. It was the forefront in their mind. They believed for real that they were some sort of force willing to drive humanity down to the depths of the sea. Even if they were scared of dying, they just yelled nonsense about humans, and they charged against the bars to make noise. It was bizarre, and a bit sad to witness for the soldiers who were protectors of Ottoheim and her dream. To think hundreds of thousands of people would sink so low, it was pitiable. But it was the truth that the people of Ryugu had to live with. However, there was one prisoner they couldn't hold. It was the Yumabazu Watatsumi. They couldn't possibly imprison him due to his sheer size, so they tried to execute him on the spot. But as they mulled on how they were going to do it, the Straw Hat's cook, the woman called Sora, stopped them. Her reasoning was simple. He wasn't a citizen of Ryugu and was only a child. He didn't kill anyone and was roped along by Vander Decken. Still, the giant Yumabazu was complicit to Deccan's crimes, and so they banished Watatsumi from their kingdom. Sora thanked the ministers for their decision and dragged Watatsumi by the hair. The soldiers were all impressed by the massive physical strength in those thin arms of hers. She kicked to the sky and went outside of the kingdom in seconds, dragging Watatsumi in the water 10 kilometers deep. 1 hour later, Sora returned empty-handed. It made the soldiers wonder how far had she placed Watatsumi outside of the kingdom. They didn't know, but they saw Sora talking with Jimbe in secret. Perhaps the boss knew where Watatsumi was placed, but it left an impression on how amazingly strong the Straw Hat crew was in the kingdom's mind. XOX. The waves hit the beach on the merchant city of Coral Hill. There was a lot of noise from people working. Did you catch anything? We got a major haul. A lady fish woman had a huge basket on her head full of giant-sized fish. Gut the fish and take him to the palace. They're going to have a huge feast for the Straw Hats, said a man with a mustache, carrying the same load as the woman. I hear they love sea beast meat. A man carried a huge animal 30 times his size, but he wasn't alone. 10 fishermen were working together to carry the beast. Well, they'll love this. We got 7 of them to serve their crew. They are getting the beasts that the Straw Hat defeated on the plaza too. Man, how long does this feast gonna last with that much food? Don't know, but Neptune's marriage was a 60-day-long feast, a whole 2 months of nothing but party. It was crazy back then. I heard they are going to have that kraken as a main dish, but can they eat that thing? It is 300 feet tall. That thing is massive. There are rumors that the Straw Hat appetite is unmatchable. Remember that lady with the red shirt, black skirt, and swirly eyebrows? She already dragged the kraken to the palace, and is currently cooking it. Man, that crew sure works fast. Yeah, so we can't afford to lose face, the man said with a smile as they carried the beasts. We've got sweets and cakes. A lady brought stashes full of sweets, while a man carried crates of it too. Both were with a smile. It was said that the factory was destroyed, but they could rebuild. They were sure that Big Mom would forgive them, but they faced a disaster and she wasn't there to protect them. A strong and tall shark fishman carried a 10-ton barrel of booze. He looked at his side as others carried a similar load, and he looked at his boss, an old whale merman, carrying a 100-ton sack on his back easily. But that was to be expected of the boss of the brewery. Is this enough booze? Well, you could bathe in a hot spring with this vintage selection we're bringing. Haha, I'm sure the Straw Hats are going to love this. Let's go men to the palace. The good-natured boss led them. XOX. Thank you for coming, Luffy and friends. A soldier bowed to them. We will speak inside. During the festivities, he pointed at some flat giant fish. Ride those long flounders to the ballroom of the Ryugu Palace. There are 2 of those long flounders. There were bubbles along the top of those fish that protected them from the water. They split up as Luffy boarded one with the queen at his right and Jimbe at his left. They sat down and the scales had a leather-like quality. It was almost like he was sitting on a comfortable sofa. They entered a dark room full of water that was too big for words. It's a pitch-black room full of water. Nami was surprised by the size of the room. Is this such a good idea? Now I'm getting a bit nervous. Nayu, I've never been to the palace. Hatch-Eye was already healed. He was enjoying himself. Kimi faced him with a smile. It's exciting, right? Hatch-Eye nodded. The nightmare was over. They could finally relax. What is this place? Luffy looked down, seeing signs of a lot of people. This is the ballroom, Luffy. It was used a lot when Neptune's father was still alive. I have a lot of memories in this place. Luffy-sama, I remember it was here. When brother reached 21 years old, there was a huge birthday party here. Shirahoshi was simply too big to sit on the fish. She was swimming by their side. I see. Where is the meat? All of them laughed at Luffy's single-mindedness. Look, the heroes are here. Soldiers and partygoers who were on the ground cheered them. Shut up. Don't call us heroes. I want all the meat. Luffy shouted at them and they just laughed for some reason. He was pretty serious too. The floor was filled with people enjoying the party as the lights came on. The stage had even brighter lights as a 20-feet fish woman walked onto the stage. The stage is right ahead. Everyone. Shirahoshi pointed at the singer. Stage. Brook had a smile. There's someone there, Usopp said as he saw a classy-looking fish woman with an expensive black dress and pearl necklace. That's the greatest diva on the seafloor, Maria Napple. Ottoheim massaged her throat. Her bandages were mostly gone as she healed fast. Only a few gauzes remained close to the surgical wound. HRM. Luffy looked on with interest. Maria started to sing, with an orchestra of jazz behind her. Oh, Nami relaxed with the voice. It's like her voice is melting my ears. Usopp was dying of bliss. I can feel my soul trembling. Oh yeah, Brook said as he brought out his guitar to complement the song. All of the Straw Hats enjoyed the first song, but it was enhanced greatly when the Mermaid Cafe dancers appeared close to them and started to dance to the song. They only wore bikini bras on their bountiful breasts as they danced for the crew. Sora was especially happy about that. She was laughing and jumping around like a little girl, but her dark gaze told a different story. Pretty mermaid servers came carrying small tables full of food. Some servers arrived with barrels of beer, as the Straw Hats' consumption of alcohol was enough to cover 2,000 people. Of course, the two gluttons for booze were Zoro and, surprisingly, Nami. Luffy was content with plenty of meat, food, and a little bit of drink, but especially meat. The plates at his side were increasing at a fast rate, while he deepened the connection with Ottoheim and Shirahoshi. He truly did like both of them and wished to make them his lovers. The Straw Hats cheered and clapped as the festivities continued. XOX. Ha ha. Ottoheim walked to the balcony with jolly eyes in her steps. Her legs were scaly as a goldfish, yet they were soft like a high-class woman. She already displayed the ability to shift between a mermaid's tail and human legs whenever she wanted, a big advantage above the sea. Her face was flushed as she drank wine from a bottle the size of a human. She swayed side to side, approaching a figure by the edge of the balcony. What do you want to discuss? Luffy's crewmate. If I remember, your name was Robin. Nico Robin, was it? Ottoheim was about to collapse from drunkenness, but she was still somehow more dangerous than any person here in the palace except Luffy. Her wounds were already healed. Her vitality was impressive. Pardon me, Ottoheim-san. I thought this was our chance to be alone and discuss. Robin faced her. Even while drinking 10 cups of sake, Robin didn't display any tipsiness. I see. Ottoheim faced her with cloudy blue eyes. The Mermaid Queen had a lot of booze because she was trying hard to forget, or at least mitigate the feelings she had of the tragedy that happened today. Joy Boy, who is he? Where did you hear such a name? Ottoheim focused more on her. She was just startled, not angry. I read the poneglyph in the forest of the sea. Who was he apologizing to? Ottoheim's face was grave. So you are capable of reading that? Ottoheim swayed. She tilted her head as her frizzy hair fell a bit on her face. Ottoheim faced Robin with a sad smile. To think someone had the knowledge still. I can't begin to comprehend. She murmured, I am a survivor of Ohara. You don't have to tell me if you don't want to say it. Robin had a calm countenance, yet a deep curiosity roamed her thoughts. Ottoheim caught that. Don't worry, you are a comrade of Luffy. I can trust you. I'll tell you anything you want to know, Robin. Ottoheim fell to the floor like a hammer and crossed her legs on the ground as she took a gulp of wine. This is what I've gathered from my husband and his older brother. Both are dead now. So I am the only one with the knowledge. I intend to pass this to my children as well someday, but I don't know the full story. The royal family always kept their secrets close. Neptune, the warring general, wasn't different in that regard, even if he denounced his family. Joy Boy was a person who lived on the surface during the Void Century, so, at least 800 years ago, was the time frame he existed. Ottoheim had her head down as if trying to remember what her husband talked about. That message was meant for the daughter of the king at the time. In other words, it was the mermaid princess of that time. It was an apology, I think, an apology for breaking a promise made with the Ryugu kingdom. Promise. I don't know what the promise was. As I said, my husband and his family were very cryptic and liked to keep secrets even from me. But according to hearsay. No, that's not it. Let me remember. Ottoheim put her hand on her forehead as she furrowed her brows in an apparent headache. Neptune's father told us that someday something shall be fulfilled. It doesn't have to be Joy Boy, I think. Or was it? Something is linked to Noah. It is the ship of the promise. So Joy Boy and the mermaid princess had something to do about it. Ottoheim truly was not knowledgeable about the subject, but she tried her hardest to pass this information forward. The royal family was mistaken in hiding this information because now Neptune, his elder brother, and father were dead and took their secrets to the grave. Something always is lost when it's word of mouth. Robin thought it was possible Neptune didn't have much knowledge to offer if he was still alive, then Ottoheim was as well. Legends passing down from family member to family member always lost their veracity. That's why the royal family protects Noah until this day, so some promise can be fulfilled by someone else other than Joy Boy. I think, but perhaps I am inferring too much and making too many assumptions. Perhaps the whole story was completely different. I don't know. I'm sorry. Ottoheim was truly regretful for not knowing more, especially when someone who could read those stones appeared right in front of the queen. After the conflict ended about the island, I heard that Noah was taken to the sea forest by Sea Kings. If Joy Boy were meant to use Noah, could he have had the power to control the Sea Kings? Robin inferred. She was very smart and could piece together things very quickly, unlike Luffy, who moved based on primal instinct and impulsiveness. No, that's not it. The one who could control them was the mermaid princess at the time. Yes, just like Ottoheim leaned. Her eyes were unfocused. Her blush was overwhelming as she drank more and more. As I thought, meaning that Princess Shirahoshi has the same power. She can do the same thing the mermaid princess could 800 years ago. She can control the Sea Kings. Robin's hypothesis was getting along as she thought more about the issue. Yes, you're right, yes. I believe that ability came into her full control today. That doesn't bring me happiness. It is not something my dear daughter should be burdened with. Being a tool for a greater plot, one that could decide the fate of the world. I don't like it, Ottoheim said with a sad tone as she took more swings with her bottle. I don't blame you. A tool, you say? 2 years ago, I read a poneglyph on an island in the sky that contains the location of an ancient weapon, and that location was here. Robin tilted her head and focused on the almost passing out drunk Ottoheim. Could the mermaid princess who lived in the time of Joy Boy have a name? A name? Ottoheim chuckled while depreciating herself. She knew exactly what Robin would say next. A name that Princess Shirahoshi, who has the same power, will now inherit as her own. Her other name is, in fact, Robin was about to reveal it with her cold eyes. The ancient weapon, one capable of world upheaval, Poseidon. Ottoheim closed her eyes while frowning hard. Her daughter shouldn't have this fate. Shirahoshi shouldn't become a tool for someone else to use. But that fate was sealed and Ottoheim didn't know what could be done. Shirahoshi was already dead set on becoming useful to a certain someone. Her eyes, her baby blue eyes that were inherited from her mother, looked at a man with a straw hat approaching her bed. She looked at him with pure obsessiveness. Her fate was set from the moment she met Luffy. XOX. Luffy spent most of his time after the party talking to Shirahoshi. In fact, right now he was in her bed. She was laying down, with an interesting face as he recounted the tales above the sea, of adventure and discovery, of wild sceneries and animals, everything he encountered on the Grand Line. Of course, she was interested in his tales. After all, she barely left the room in 10 years and hadn't at all left the palace at that time. To Luffy, she was beautiful, and in this conflict, she gained a strength of heart. She would be all right. She had the inner strength and resolve to face any obstacle. Luffy eased her heart, thus they connected more and became closer. Luffy had warned her about becoming romantically involved with him, but again this family surprised him. Shirahoshi was very understanding and wanted to have a relationship with him, his polygamy problem included. And so late at night, with Megalo already deeply asleep, Luffy's tiny body in comparison was kissed by her huge and soft lips. He smiled and laughed and kissed her cheeks back. His eyes became violent as his conqueror's side came out. It was time. Zoro woke up in a large bed. He groaned and yawned awake. He walked over to the foot of the bed and put on some clothes. He looked to the bedding, and there were some odd 11 mermaids all splattered around. He didn't remember much of the night, other than copious amounts of booze he'd drunk, so he yawned once more and grabbed his blades, and walked out of the room, leaving the naked mermaids behind in his bed. The same situation was happening in Sora's room. Filled with the desire to bed as many mermaids as possible, she woke up to more than 50 mermaids splayed across her room in various stages of undress. Sora rubbed her gorgeous face in every mermaid's chest before leaving the room, unlike Zoro, who was indifferent back at his own bedroom. It was courtesy to give them her affection before the day started, in her opinion. She entered the kitchen and opened the giant freezer. The kraken was already comprehensively cut into pieces. It was time to make a light breakfast with a bit of white fatty meat. The kraken was full of protein and minerals for his size. It was quite nutritional. She smiled as she expertly handled the chef's blade, her curly eyebrow twitching. Sora remembered spying on her captain having sex with Shirahoshi last night. She blushed at the thoughts. No, she was Sora, and she was a proud lesbian who was once a man. She couldn't think of her captain that way. But she took extra care of making her captain's food, the same attention given to Nami and Robin's food. The crew met at breakfast with Jimbe accompanying them. They ate breakfast while praising their chef Sora as usual. But their chef's ability really soared in the 2 years they've been separated. And Luffy noticed, giving Sora more praises in which she bashfully accepted. What? Akinu and Aokiji had a fight. Luffy pointed a fork at Jimbe and ate the 500 kilograms octopus meat that was on it. So it's just like I expected. Rayleigh Sen really withheld a lot of what was happening in the current times, Jimbe commented. Zoro, Sora, Nami, and Usopp had no clue that this massive event even happened, just like Luffy. I knew about it, I did, Chopper cutely pointed out. Robin, Frankie, and Brooke were well informed. Seems like they were sent to places that information came easily to them. Following the war 2 years ago, Fleet Admiral Sengoku stepped down from his position, Jimbe told as Luffy filled his stomach even more with copious amounts of food. And to take over his empty position as Fleet Admiral, Sengoku endorsed Kasan, who had widespread support from his own subordinates. But higher dignitaries within the government felt that Sakazuki was better fitted for the job. As you all know, Aokiji is not one to show motivation of any sort, but he strongly opposed Akainu. The tensions culminated, and there was a confrontation between the two of them, a duel for the position. All of them were paying attention to what Jimbe was saying. To say that Luffy had a grudge against the Navy and world government for his mother and hatred for Akainu for his brother was an understatement. The hatred was so enormous and cold that if a Navy soldier crossed his path, that Navy soldier would be dead. His hatred for the government couldn't even be measured and was still growing inside, a cold and patient hatred that took no prisoners. He told his crew of this when they were navigating towards Fishman Island, so they were already well informed. Akainu, similarly, most of the crew encountered Aokiji and had tense exchanges with the one who controlled ice. Robin, who was already in the know, had a distant look as she was the most connected to Aokiji. This unthinkable tension between two of the most powerful forces in the world led to a duel between two admirals on an island, since dead men tell no tales. The loser would have no quarrel with the outcome of the fight. The winner would seize control of the Navy as the new Fleet Admiral, Jimbe said with a serious look. The battle raged on for a whole month, the talk of the world. They were evenly matched, meeting blow for blow, until finally, Akainu emerged victoriously. Jimbe glared at Luffy's cold gray eyes. He saw as the straw hat reached for the small cross scar on his chest. A scar that would never heal because it was before Luffy gained his insane healing factor. And thus, Sakazuki is the new Fleet Admiral of the Navy. Akainu. Luffy's eyes smoldered as an ozone smell started filling up the room, his fingers grasping his scar. So is the Iceman dead? Did Aokiji die? Luffy picked up more fatty meat as Sora eagerly served him. They both suffered grievous wounds in the battle. At the sight of his longtime comrade at this mercy, even the man who preached absolute justice couldn't bring himself to finish the job. Akainu did not kill Aokiji. As for Aokiji, unable to bear serving under Akainu's navy, he made the decision to leave his post. So, Aokiji isn't even a marine anymore? Ha, Usopp said. Indeed, who can say where Aokiji is and how he feels? It was certainly a very costly battle for the government. The scars of this conflict will surely affect them deeply in the future, Jimbe said as he took more sake. But the plan the government enacted to fill that hole granted the Navy an unexpected boost. Listen carefully. Keep in mind these changes in the new world that have taken place in the last 2 years will affect your crew, Luffy-kun. I'm listening. Luffy gave him a charismatic smile. Under Sakazuki's leadership, the Navy has grown far more powerful. While it's true that the destruction of the old Marine HQ by your hands, Luffy-kun, has affected them, it was not an important event on the grand scale because the majority of their power now stays in the new world. And the rebuilding process is quite simple. Your actions have only given new pirate rookies more chance to enter the new world. The new Navy in the new world is not to be taken lightly even by someone of your power, Luffy-kun. They gathered in a living space with sofas and chairs, and they all centered towards Jimbe. Luffy sat on the floor as mermaids served him and everyone else booze. Even after a day, the festivities continued. The mermaids arrived and sat closer to the males of the group, and the women of the crew all sat near Luffy, including Sora. Then, there are the Blackbeard pirates. They have made fearful strides of their own in the new world. Blackbeard, the ones we met at Mock Town, Nami commented. Zoro twitched his brow as he slept. As a veteran of Pop's crew, he knew the new world in the back of his hand. Teach conquered the entire stretch of the sea that was Pop's old territory, using the powers over quakes that he stole from Pop's body back in the war. Now, the rest of the world labels him as one of the 4 emperors. Alongside Red Hair, Big Mom, and Kaido, the despicable pig, Jimbe said in a grave voice as his large bottom fangs grated on his teeth in rage. According to rumors, they're now putting their efforts into devil fruit hunting. They kill those with power and collect their devil fruits. Somehow they possess the means to kill power users and loot their fruits and their abilities. Blackbeard is in search of more devil fruits to expand his crew and his sphere of influence in the new world. Oh no, I'm in danger, Chopper cried out. Nobody's looking for a human fruit, retorted Usopp with his eyes hidden at the stupidity. Why not? Chopper yelled at him for demeaning the power of his fruit. Blackbeard's dangerous, and I hardly need to remind you of your own score to settle with Blackbeard, Luffy. I ask you not to. Jimbe opened his eyes to see Luffy devouring the food, not paying attention anymore. The women around him affectionately placed their hands on his arms and back. Luffy-kun, Are you listening to any of this? And you call yourself captain? Oh, how great your 600+ million berry bounty must be, when you remain such a clod and don't inform yourself. Jimbe fumed. Huh, you mean a captain isn't one who ignores all this stuff? Chopper asked. Oh, you poor souls. Jimbe lowered his head. A depressing aura overtook him. The crew agreed. Luffy took them from one reckless adventure to the next. Don't worry, Jimbe-san. Luffy properly listened to you, didn't you, Captain? Sora asked, smirking with her pretty lips. Luffy cleaned his mouth. Yeah, I was listening. Grudges, and what else? I'm not going to actively seek them. But Akenu and Blackbeard will inevitably stand in the way of my dream of being the Pirate King. We'll settle everything then there. This is mine and my comrades' adventure. I'm not going to let anybody interfere. Jimbe, don't worry. Luffy was eating the sweets the mermaids prepared for them. Whoa, hey guys, try out these Fishman Island sweets. These candies are great. Then the crew and Jimbe went to taste them, with Jimbe looking worried about something. Relax, Jimbe. I'll take all the chances when it counts. I'll become a man who is strong enough to protect my crew's dreams. That's my second dream, you know. Everybody was bashful, except Zoro and Robin, at Luffy's wholesome comment and hit Luffy with slaps as they tried to deflect his commentary. The Straw Hat crew was really weak in these types of situations. Hey, Kami, did Shirahoshi and Ottoheim wake up? No, both are still in bed. Shirahoshi is strangely sore this morning. Must be all the commotion yesterday. Sora twitched at that comment. Luffy had a proud look as he didn't feel any guilt whatsoever. Sora should have realized his whimsical attitude would blend into other parts of his life, one of them being his sexual life. XOX. In the afternoon, the festivities paused as the crew and the Queen went to an undisclosed location deep within the sea forest. 200,000 men were there to be executed. They committed the crime of attacking the royal family, which was greater than treason and bylaws. They were to be summarily executed. Luffy was on top of the railing on the ship while the crew was by his side. You know, saving kingdoms and island we visit, we did that a lot in the past. His conquering self surged from deep within as a deep voice rumbled in their bodies. This was their captain speaking, not the usual whimsical man. He spoke as he watched the proceedings. It would be an hour until Ottoheim, who was now healed, would execute 200,000 men by decapitation. I fought and toppled cruel regimes not by some sense of justice, or if it was the right thing to do. I'm not a hero, not at all, those weren't the reasons. He faced them with a smile, a charming smile that would conquer the world. The tall, muscular member of the monkey family looked at the criminals locked in the cage, many of them full of rage and dementia from the power drug, others fearful with scattered movements, the rest unresponsive and drooling due to overdosing a dangerous chemical that ravaged their bodies and minds for a quick power boost. I, like many here, witnessed cruelty from a young age, so I have a sense of justice too. But that's not the reason I fought yesterday. And a sense of justice was not the reason for going up against so many terrible villains in the past. Let me say this up front. I don't want to become a hypocrite. If I went spouting my sense of justice to anyone who hears, I'd have to uphold my values in every situation I come across. Having your sense of justice dictate your actions restrict your being. I hate being restricted, Luffy said with a great voice. So what was the reason I went up against Hody and the others yesterday? Was it because I want to stand for what's right in racism? Wanting to protect the Fishman people? No, I only helped because I wanted to. My selfish desire to keep Ottoheim and Shirahoshi happy. Otherwise, I wouldn't really care. He looked piercingly at them. Ever since I was a child, I did what I desired. Didn't bother with complicated stuff like politicking. I've always been reckless and did what I wanted to do. You guys should all follow this advice. Don't go acting for some sense of self-righteousness. Fight for what you desire. I wanted Ottoheim and Shirahoshi happy, so I stormed that guy's little uprising, and now I'm going to do what I want. He concluded as he jumped towards the distance, arriving near Ottoheim, who had trembling hands. The Queen was about to execute each and every single one of those 200,000 men. The crew and Jimbe digested his words. This was the words of the man who wanted to become the Pirate King. Always doing what you want to do, not caring about morality and repercussions, the reckless way of living of the tall straw hat-wearing man. The execution ended sooner than everybody expected. That was because Luffy forcefully took the part of the executioner, not letting Ottoheim on such a cruel job of executing her own people and seeing her failure to protect and change their minds. Thus, with great reluctance, Ottoheim returned to the ship, with a big sigh of relief and a growing affection for Luffy, who was so sympathetic towards her. Instead of a full day of executions, a wide spark of electricity was felt by the man who controlled the fruit of God. Model Indra killed all 200,000 men. It was a parasitic spark that clung to every prisoner and stopped all of their contractions and muscles, including the heart. This was the power of the incarnation of Indra, a spark too fast to react, who could without notice kill you. Just like that, Luffy ended 200,000 lives with just a pointed finger. This man was the incarnation of the god of heaven, therefore ruled lightning. Luffy walked back, leaving the criminals dead in their cages. He reunited with Ottoheim and the rest of them. He did what he wanted. He saw how sad Ottoheim would be if she had to go through the execution herself, so he took her place because he wished her to be happy. Nothing more, nothing else. Living by his desires without hiding that fact from anybody. That way he would be free and not be considered a hypocrite for upholding some sort of moral code. It was always this way. He fought the world government for Ace and Robin, not for some sort of revolution for their oppression. He fought Enel because he hurt his crew and because he was hiding the gold bell he wanted to ring, not for the angels or Shadorians. He fought Crocodile for Vivi and the old man in the desert, not for the people of the land who were suffering from the extreme drought. He fought Arlong because of Nami, not for the people in her village. Other people can have their own sense of self-righteousness about their actions, about saving the world. But Luffy didn't care about that. He only cared about his selfish wishes, and thus he was free to do whatever he wanted in this world. A truly free person. Some might consider him to be evil, but he didn't really care about what others thought of him. He would continue to follow his own heart and not lie to himself. Hey, Luffy-kun, about what you said, don't you think it's wrong to push your values onto your crew? Jimbe asked with curiosity as both had their privacy. No, people say it's wrong to push your values onto someone else, but I don't care. They're my crew. I can push any values I want to them. We're as close as a family after everything is said and done, Luffy responded with a smile. Just as you influence them, they influence you as well. Jimbe concluded with a smirk. That's right. Luffy grinned as he pushed his hat, hiding his handsome face. XOX. In the afternoon, Shirahoshi was already awake. Shirahoshi and her brothers were in the courtyard. As she learned how to walk with 2 legs instead of a tail, Shirahoshi could seamlessly switch between a mermaid's tail and 2 scaly legs, ever since she had sex with Luffy yesterday. But now, it was time to see what it could do. Ottoheim arrived and went on explaining how to control her new legs, as she also could change between a set of legs and a tail. It would be a while until Shirahoshi got to a good level of dexterity, but she made great strides. Hey, Luffy-kun, you displayed great prowess with lightning. Since the event where you destroyed G5 a year ago, most of the world has a faint grasp of your new devil fruit, but what is it? Did you eat a Loja fruit that can control lightning? No, that's not right, Jimbe. I don't control lightning. I am not like Enel with his fruit of lightning, Luffy said with his mouth full of sea king meat. As the festival would be continuing throughout the week, this was merely the second day. Then, how does Luffy's Sama power work? Shirahoshi asked, curiously, with her soft and cute voice as they naturally gathered around Luffy. He lifted his leg up and down as he sat on the grass in the garden at Ryugu's palace, making noise as his powerful and muscular thighs hit the soft grass. His eyes scrunched and his face red as he used his brain to think of an easy explanation. HRMM. How do I explain this? HRMMM? Oh. He opened his eyes, and his first met his palm as a light bulb lit up. I don't control lighting as a Loja user can. I become a god who rules the heavens, therefore rules lightning. My powers are rough, and that's why Nami can complement me so well by amplifying anything I create and having finer control over my creations. Lightning isn't the only thing I can create. Luffy put his hand forward as a great concentration took place. His face was red with effort and sweat as 2 drops of water dripped from his index finger. He let go of his concentration and heaved hard. It took a lot of effort. I can create water. I can create clouds. However, they take too much effort because of the devil fruit's inherent weakness. It inadvertently weakens me even though it's not supposed to, since I don't get weakened in rain. The only thing I can create is small mists. Otherwise, the effort is too great. Creating something that has water was infinitely more difficult and taxing than learning how to swim. He doubted controlling water could go further than making a small stream of water. It was a failed power, a complete flaw on his devil fruit. He had no talent and the limitations were too large to bear. I can also control winds, but I can only handle a small breeze. If I try to put more power into it, the wind transforms into electricity instead. So my offensive power from this fruit is 50% lightning. The other offensive power is, since I'm the ruler of heaven, I also control the sun. And the sun is plasma, superheated gas. I can superheat gas with my lightning and form the plasma and control it. It's basically a thick soup of hotness that's at the same time airy and heavy. His powers were rough and hard to control, and most of the fault could be attributed to having 2 fruits. No, it was best to be described as one new mutated fruit, since the fruit of God, the red apple he ate, cannibalized the fruit of exponentials. Both fruits were enough to destroy the world on their own. What happened next was, the more powerful the fruit of exponentials became, the base powers of the fruit of God kept increasing without control, and Luffy had no way to stop it. So he had to keep restrictions on him, as the 3 concentrated sea stone armlets on his bicep. Since the fruit of God kept ever increasing in its ridiculousness, his control of it wasn't optimal either. so his lightning was deadly no matter what, and his plasma was a danger to those around him because of how hot the heat irradiated was. That's why he was glad he was trained to be a tank of massive physical destruction. His basic foundation of haki was well built. He had endless potential in that area, and if things turned for the worse, he could always boost himself or other things with his fruit of exponentials. The point was, relying on his lightning powers was dangerous to the highest degree. The most important part, though, is that the fact that he had ingested 2 fruits was kept a secret. His powers over exponentials worked behind the scenes always. The world was better off knowing that he had some lightning powers and that he lost his rubber powers. And that was it. Discovering he had the fruit of exponentials would be inviting unneeded trouble for now. The world was hunted down mercilessly because of the world-ending reputation the fruit of exponentials had along with the fruit of quakes. XOX. The second day continued as day turned to evening. This time he drank too much booze, so he was a bit disoriented as he dragged both Otoheim and Shirahoshi with him and dominated both of them roughly on the same bed. Mother and daughter were forced by the Conqueror into a threesome that both of them enjoyed until they blacked out from being fucked silly. He took to the outside with just shorts as he found more mermaids around the castle and pushed them into a nearby room as they eagerly pleased him. His Conqueror's desire for lust was too great for words. The night continued until he found Robin as he walked around the castle. He smirked as she turned around to face him with an innocent, adoring look on her face. "Robin, Luffy, what are you doing?" "Oh, just playing around." He sat near her as his larger muscular body filled the couch he was in. To think our childish innocent captain from 2 years ago would become such a playboy Casanova. Robin joked with a small smile. Luffy grinned as he scratched his neck, his smooth black hair falling down on his face, so he had to pull it back. "Well, nobody told me back then that sex was so fun." I guess spending so much time on an island of beautiful and strong women has changed you a lot, in terms of innocence at least. Robin arrived on his couch and put his head on her lap as a lap pillow. "Robin giving me a lap pillow, this is heaven," Luffy murmured with his deep and roguish voice, so unlike the voice she heard 2 years ago. Robin blushed as she stroked his hair. Her captain had changed. It didn't sink in until now, but she didn't know how to make of it. When she looked at his changed self, the love she felt for him was still there. In fact, her love had grown. "I love you, Captain," she whispered with her mature voice on the edge of his ear. His eye pierced her, making her a bit anxious about what he was to say next. He raised himself, pushing his body against her on the couch. Her boobs pressed against his hard chest, as his face and hers were separated by a few inches. He stared at her blue-outlined eyes with his own gray ones. He then stared at her lip. What are you doing, Luffy?" "What am I doing? You know already, Robin." His hands encircled her waist as both of their noses touched. "Do you truly love me, Robin?" "Why, yes, even when I'm such a playboy like this. A man who finds sex on the daily fun." He stared with open eyes, with all his seriousness placed firmly on his stare. His tipsiness was nowhere to be seen. "Yes, I still love you, Luffy ... but with so many women at your disposal, I feel anxious that if I try to go further, you'll just forget me. I'll just be another faceless woman you had sex with." Robin looked at his lips like he did with hers. She wanted to kiss him so badly but was afraid of that type of relationship with him. If he was going to treat her like another mindless woman to have sex with, then Robin would prefer to be his most faithful crewmate and have her love forever unrequited. "You are my precious comrade. You'll never be that, Robin. More importantly, I love you. Do you think I went to war with the government for shits and giggles? Not at all. Now 2 years later, I understand why I was so desperate back then. My immature self might have not understood, but I was saving someone who I loved from the bottom of my heart." He said that as he closed in. "Robin, I love you, be mine. Forever." Both kissed as tears came down Robin's face, both hungry for each other. A light electric current made Robin tingle with pleasure as he pushed her down. That night he took Robin for himself. All her body, it was his to keep. XOX. On the 3rd day of their stay, Luffy was back at the shop to gather even more clothes for the crew while Frankie's friend coded their ship for departure. Since the fisherman working on it wasn't as proficient as Rayleigh, it would take more time to depart rather than the 3 days. Luffy was thinking about it. For over 2 years now, he went basically without a shirt, but to go topless would be a waste. So he ordered a tailored shirt with a wide V-neck. It was dark blue. As for his feet, he didn't wear anything anymore. His old flip-flops, even if they survived, would not serve his now 16-sized feet, so his feet would be naked for now. Perhaps he could make it his style. Luffy noticed his crew also enjoying themselves in new clothing, and he smiled. Zoro was looking critical at any green, white or black shirts, suits, and kimonos. When he found something he liked, he would always smirk. Nami has always liked to bring the majority of clothing and bargain for a more reasonable price. It didn't matter how cute or how beautiful the clothing was. What mattered was if the navigator had the clothing or not. Usopp went with what was cool. He was very critical in the mirror when choosing his outfit. Luffy thought that Usopp didn't need to be so critical. Most clothing fitted the sniper just fine. Sora was interesting. She would now choose black and red. And all her clothing was formal and businesslike. The female chef had a serious and rapid approach when choosing new clothing. However, the dark skirt and black pantyhose ever changed. Chopper had clothing tailored for him. What was funny was that Robin, who was a bit sore for reasons, she always intervened and made the choices for Chopper, which kind of infuriated the little reindeer. Robin chose inconspicuous clothing that fitted her curves well. The female archaeologist was always choosing darker colors. Frankie would choose what was rebel and cool in his eyes, and he only chose clothing for his top. The bottom clothing was always Speedos with the shipwright robot, which made that part unchanging. Brook, on the other hand, was like Sora. The skeleton musician chose formal clothing, but what he differed was the flamboyant nature of his formal clothes. Of course, he was flamboyant. The skeleton musician had a huge gold crown on top of him. Now, let's go and see what this Mermaid Cafe is all about. Luffy shouted. The crew cheered. XOX, Minister of the Left. HM, what is it? The minister, with his formal attire, cane, and lens on one eye, turned around to see a soldier calling for him. A message from Big Mom. It said that we can expect Peckham's and Baron Tamago tomorrow. But the sweet factory. The factories are destroyed. We can't produce more candies for a long time. The minister concluded. Yes, they were destroyed by Hody and his band of traitors. And the sweets we did have in hands were given as thanks to the Straw Hat Pirates. They were enjoyed at the festivities the day before. The soldier had a cold sweat. The Queen doesn't want to have more relations with Big Mom anymore. Perhaps because of that we relax, but the country isn't ready for a confrontation with Big Mom just yet, especially since Baron Tamago is arriving here. His 400+ bounty worries me. But can't the Queen just deal with him? Yes, she can, but we must take caution and not invoke Big Mom's wrath. Big Mom is one of the 4 emperors of the sea, and our army doesn't stand a chance against that monster or even her family. She would destroy a whole country just for the sake of those sweets. Calling her sane is plain wrong, the minister discussed. Yes, I understand. I'll warn the army to be careful. We shall welcome them in the palace. I'm hoping with the Straw Hat and his crew there, along with the Queen, the scales might shift to our side. Perhaps a deal can be made. We can only hope. The minister revealed his plans as the soldier nodded. XOX. After visiting the amazing Mermaid Cafe and seeing the dancers again, the group went to the Coral Beach to have a blasting party on the coral dorms along with every dancer on the Mermaid Cafe. Luffy made a point to have a lengthy visit with the matron of the Mermaid Cafe, Madame Shirley. Suffice to say it was a very enjoyable visit for him, and a very painful and pleasurable visit for her. She was thoroughly punished in the afternoon. After visiting and having a great snack at the dorms with the mermaid girls, one thing led to another and led them marching over to the great beaches across the island when the sun was about to go out. There, on the beach, the crew had an oceanside grand barbecue, with the royal family joining them, as it was the first time Shirahoshi went to the beach in over 10 years. Of course, the main meat was the kraken that Sora butchered in the kitchen. It was an inexhaustible supply of food, but with Shirahoshi's size and Luffy's appetite, as well as how many people actually accompanied them into these wild parties, Luffy watched the dusk with his crew on a swimsuit as they played on the grand beach. So different from the coral reefs yesterday. It was an open sea full of native life. He saw Shirahoshi playing with Sora in the sea, as she was the only one in the crew who could keep up with the mermaid princess' ludicrous speed in the water. He took a giant bite out of his meat on a spike as night fell, and the party continued strong on the beach. This was the good life. Of course, he dragged Robin, Shirahoshi, and Ottoheim to the royal palace later for some private fun. XOX. The morning came. They were in the throne room, riches aligned, as Nami had a precious look on her face. However, by her side, Luffy was looking with severe eyes, because in front of the crew, and in front of the royal family, was a lion standing up with sunglasses, and a long human with his torso in the shape of an egg. His hat was a teacup. The ministers were arguing with the strange duo. Giorararar. The lion growled, sending shivers through the royal knights. The lion was a dangerous opponent. That's what his presence announced. Nami, Chopper, and Usopp had sweat coming down their heads at the lion wearing a strange pink tuxedo and sunglasses. The other members of the crew prepared themselves, but Luffy, Zoro, and Sora were still non-threatened. In fact, their eyes weren't focused on the lion, but on the long-legged human with the torso resembling an egg. Giorararar. Listen to me, Minister. Can't you overlook it just this once? The factory was destroyed by terrorists. It was an unforeseeable disaster. The Minister of the Left argued. If it was destroyed by foreign attacks, we'd even make a deal. But your civil unrests are not our problem, fool. The lion said. I was expecting to have a great snack. I arrived hungry, damn it. Well, calm down, Peckham-san. We might not have the promised sweets, but we can help you with some food. The minister said to the lion, only to be growled at. You give us a month's worth of sweets every time ... and we let you use Mama's name and flag for protection. That was the deal we've made with your queen. It pains me to say this, Minister, but you know what happens if you make Mama angry, don't you, you fool? Luffy approached the lion standing on his 2 feet. Luffy was significantly taller than the lion but very small compared to the long-legged man. Hey, who are you? Who are you, bastard? Peckham said, as he stared at the new arrival. It was a man who looked half competent, but that hat. He removed some wanted posters from his tuxedo pocket. Grrr. You are Monkey D. Luffy, the Straw Hat Pirates. Weren't you missing for 2 years? To give a wet behind the ears rookie like you more than 600 million as a bounty? The government must be mad, Peckham said as he paged through the bounties of rookies that would be passers in the Ryugu Kingdom. What do you want, bastard? Didn't I say previously? Who are you? Luffy narrowed his stormy eyes. They glowed with promised pain. Peckham's was oblivious or underestimated the threat in Luffy's glare. To ch, rookie, it feels like you need to be taught a lesson. The man with the long legs walked gracefully and sat on the steps to the throne. Peckham's, glaring at every royal guest, isn't going to solve business here. Let us explore more peaceful means. The tea party is in 4 weeks. If we can leave on the morrow, we should return in time. The man took a teacup off his hat and drank it. He cleared his throat. Bonjour to you, half-boiled pirates. GM Appel Baron Tamago, my Amy is Peckham's. We're from the Big Mom Pirates, at your service. Do remember the name Asilvu's plate. I see. My name is Monkey D. Luffy, the man who will become the Pirate King. As for the sweets, I ate them all, Luffy announced without shame. Peckham's looked like he had his life almost sucked out of him, and Tamago almost had his cup drop. I see you ate them all. Pass bon. Not good. The lack of sweets is our current problem. The factory needs to produce 10 tons every month for the quota you see, more. The logo you see around the city. And the factory is the Jolly Roger of our Captain Charlotte Linlin. This is a sign that the island is the territory of the Pirate Emperor Big Mom. Understand now, half-boiled pirate Sora. It means that Fishman Island is under the protection of an emperor, Nami responded. But we didn't see anything of the sort in the Grand Line until now, Sora pondered. Yes, but I hear they are very prevalent in the New World, Robin said. Zoro considered everyone's words and looked down in thought. Usopp and Chopper were very frightened of going to more emperor territories. Pirates lording territories and kingdoms in the sea like great emperors, with their fully fledged armies capable of facing even the world government, Brook commented. You've seen that 2 years back, didn't you, Luffy? Zoro asked. Luffy looked at them and remembered the war. Yeah, even as an old man, the pirate forces the old man Whitebeard amassed was awe-inspiring. That old man almost ruined the old marine fort. 1 year later, I finished the job though and sank the G1 to the ground, Luffy said. Grrr. There is no way that story is true, the lion told them. Luffy disregarded Peckham's, earning more rage from the stubborn lion. So Big Mom protects this island. I sure want to meet her. I'm afraid you don't comprehend her. This is a contract. If it's not fulfilled every month, she brings out her own incredible might and destroys the kingdoms with unfulfilled promises. Sure. The Baron glared behind his dark glasses, making a very dangerous promise. HRM. A dark cloud of ozone surrounded Luffy's body faintly. He just saved this kingdom. He took the time of his day to save this kingdom. There was no way that he'd let some disgruntled woman with a sweet tooth just destroy it. Grrr. Rookies like you are so full of themselves. We are in the crew of an emperor. You seem to have possessed a rubber fruit 2 years ago, but now it's a Loja, lightning, isn't it? The lion rushed him. The lion closed the distance faster than expected by the Straw Hat crew. People like you put so much stock into your devil fruit, but the new world is not so soft. The lion's hand turned black. Peckham struck his enhanced fist right into Luffy's stomach. Peckham's had a moment of triumph before it was shattered because his fist failed to even make Luffy flinch. The captain of the Straw Hats looked down on him as the smell of ozone got stronger. It seems you have a misunderstanding. My devil fruit is not a Loja. Peckham's was still reeling from the fact that his hacky enhanced fist did nothing to the soft, unprotected skin of the rookie. Yes, Luffy had not used a single speck of armament to protect himself. And yet even after the hit that would have demolished anyone worth less than 300 million, Luffy barely felt it. In fact, there was no wound, no trauma, no bruise at all. And what are you doing? Luffy put his hand on his hat and backhanded the lion across the room. Peckham's, the Baron called, as the lion slowly got up with bruises all over his body while growling in pain. Tensions were running high. Zoro readied his blade for a draw. The Baron almost drew his blade. Until, what is happening in my throne room? The Mermaid Queen arrived. Ottoheim sauntered in with a glare directed at the new arrivals, with her corrupted trident, with eyes looking at the Baron, and barbed tentacles flailing. The trident was now black from the color of armament. Luffy was glad. It seemed Ottoheim had healed and even gotten stronger. As impressive as that sounded, it was true she did little in the conflict, but that was because she was on the breaking point after forcing herself to fight her own people, even if they were criminals. But now she displayed her true strength against the members of the Big Mom Pirates. She was not a doormat, despite her overwhelming kindness. Bon, GRR. Yet even after her entrance the tension was still there. The Big Mom Pirates were not so weak as to go without a fight. Both still had the power to wreck a lot of things and people before they went down. At that moment, there was a lone ring from a transponder snail, a snail with the characteristics of Big Mom. It rang loudly and cut through the tension and added terror into the hearts of the two visitors. XOX. Ha 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 mama mama. You sure sound happy, mama. I'm just excited for the tea party in 4 days. I'll be able to eat those delicious sweets from Fishman Island again. I'm looking forward to it. I can't even stop my stomach acid from overflowing. So excited for the Fishman Island sweets. An eye opened in the dark. A wide smile appeared on the throne, and from that open smile, drool dropped to the ground. The drool sizzled, mixed with stomach acid from the Titanic woman sitting on the throne. Are you all excited too? Of course, those sweets are the best. Then, you can wait for it, all excited on my stomach. Big Mom opened her jaws, full of acid inside of her mouth. The people who were accompanying her, citizens of her country, servants started to run and imploring Mama to stop. But it was no good. A lunged hand grabbed all 4 of them. 1 teenage girl, 1 middle-aged man, 1 elderly man, and a young man, all crushed by her fist. Their bones were macerated into dust and fine particles. Their squishy bodies imploded in a shower of blood that coated her own hand, making a fine sauce on top of the human meat. Then she threw their dead contorted bodies inside of her mouth and chewed on them like popcorn. Their ground and dilacerated bones giving her mouth a satisfying crunch as her drool became darker with the color of blood. Her stomach acid was making quick work of their body's chewiness. Big Mom then swallowed them. While she chewed, however, the head of the young teen girl fell from her mouth and rolled until it reached the feet of a young lady. The head and skull underneath were burned off from the acid, and most of the teenage girl features were lost. Geez mama, chew properly. Food fell from your mouth again. The young lady complained and threw the head by its remaining hair follicles back into Mom's mouth. Ha ha mama, sorry pudding. The young lady opened 2 eyes out of the 3 she had, 1 on the forehead and 1 on the right, then closed them again and sighed. Mama, I'm home. Boyoyan, an annoying voice resounded, as a curious man with a head that trembled side to side arrived. Oh, how did it go, Bobbin? Everything went up in flames, burned to ashes. Oh, how nice. The baked pastries from that country were the best. I bet the country must have smelled delicious as it burned, and people died screaming. It's a shame, really, but there was nothing we could do. They broke their promise to us, after all. Got any snacks? Bobbin's head trembled side to side again. All of those who don't give us sweets must be killed. I don't like people who say they'll give something and fail to deliver on their promise. I hate it as much as bitter candies. Oh, and that reminds me, Fishman Island might not come up with the offering this month. I just got a call from Peckham's. Wanna burn down Fishman Island too. The man Bobbin was small in size, smaller than a midget, but his mind was cruel. One of the 4 emperors, the great pirate Big Mom, Charlotte Linlin, moved forward on her throne, with her remaining spit of acid falling on the ground, her eyes shadowed by the dark, yet they glared with such terror-inflicting look akin to an eldritch abomination. Yes, this woman wasn't human anymore. The terminology, the logical assumptions of biology all failed when faced with this aberration. She was not an old mother. She was the caricature of an evil monster in horror stories, wearing the skin of an old lady, amplifying her size by several meters. A caricature of a person, hiding a monster underneath. Yes, Charlotte Linlin as well as other emperors were all like this. Abominations disguising themselves as people. They were so strong and terrible they were akin to eldritch horrors. There was not anyone or anything like them in the world. Her eye could literally kill, and she faced her subordinate, leaning forward. Fishman Island doesn't have any sweets. What is that little queen doing? Get a transponder snail at once. XOX. BRRing. The transponder snail rang. Peckham started sweating. It must be Mama, GRR. I just phoned in our situation. Usopp widened his eyes at the snail. You mean that super scary Big Mom, an emperor is calling. Usopp ran for the hills. What are we going to do? Big Mom, so she's a lady? Sora was imagining a hot, mature, noble lady. The other occupants were getting tense, with Chopper also cowering. Nami was crying in fear. Even Ottoheim had a trickle of sweat come down her face. Hey, Peckhams. The Baron pointed at the snail as to suggest Peckhams take the snail and answer it. You answer it. I don't want to get yelled at. Peckhams immediately shouted his answer. Luffy's naked feet walked confidently. Every step felt like the step of a titan. He brushed past both intruders. They were no match for him. And even if they attacked, Zoro and Sora had them trained in their eyes. He lazily picked up the speaker on the snail and put it against his mouth. With his stormy eyes looking elsewhere, he answered the call. Hello, is this Big Mom? The lion and the Baron were shouting at him from behind, but he ignored them completely. This isn't Tamago, or even Peckham's. Who might you be? An old lady's voice, who boomed with unseen terror, sounded. Luffy matched her confidence, and his tone of voice was charismatic as was intimidating. My name is Monkey D. Luffy, the future king of the pirates. Monkey D. She smiled. Garp's grandson, now I remember. The little brat who stirred up the war 2 years ago. I also hear you were responsible for G1's complete annihilation a year ago. Luffy smirked with confidence as he thought of his next words. There are no more sweets for you, you old hag. I ate everything. So the news was true. There were supposed to be 10 tons of it. The terrible voice complained with rage in her heart. A smell of ozone permeated within the palace, as lightning danced through Luffy's gray stormy eyes. I ate all 10 tons of them. What are you going to do about it? Silly brat, you're trying to cover for the fisherman, are you? Your sense of justice is just like your grandfather. It seems your age is failing you, old hag. I'm a pirate. I do whatever pleases me. I would have eaten the candy no matter what. It seems that you are trying to shift the blame to the fishermen since they seem an easier target. Since you can't go after me because you're too scared. Scared? Who's scared of you, little brat? They had to drag your dying corpse from that war after you failed to save your brother because you were too weak. It seems you haven't learned your lesson. You haven't learned the true horrors that await you in the new world. The battle of words continued. Haha, you're a cheeky brat, that's for sure. Sure, I'll go along with your little plan. I'm changing my target from Fishman Island to you. Monkey D. Luffy, grandson of Garp. Now I know your name. Come here, to the new world. Yeah, I'm coming, just you wait. I always pay my debts. It's dangerous to leave this kingdom in your hands, so when it's the time, I'm going to rip your head off and offer it to the sharks, and then I'll make this kingdom my territory. Big Mom on the other end twitched her eye. Her smile widened. I'll serve your head on my plate, Monkey D. Luffy. You'll be a great dinner. Came her cannibalistic threat that put everyone on edge. Big Mom sent a chill down everyone's spine except Luffy. This was a declaration of war. Luffy had antagonized one of the most powerful forces in the world, but he didn't care one bit. He was going to be the pirate king. If he didn't defeat every single emperor before that, his rule might come into question. His journey is all about proving himself to be the top dog of all oceans and destroy all enemies that might challenge his freedom. Ignoring the challenge between pirates, the queen approached the Baron. With the factory destroyed, the sweets will only be shipped next month. Concerning our agreement, I am willing to pay 300 million berries to the Emperor Big Mom. With this money, I hope she can forgive this little passing. If not, don't you think this kingdom won't go out without a fight? I promise half her sons will be dead at my feet if you attack. You, Tamago almost burst a vein. The threat remained. The queen of the Ryugu kingdom was a fierce opponent. Not even the strongest pirates dared to challenge. However, the emperors of the sea were a different class of monsters, prideful eldritch horrors, the 4 of them. Big Mom was one of them. Fortunately, her subordinate. The Baron saw the value in the queen's proposition and dared to bow down and negotiate with his captain. With the losses they incurred while facing the impudent supernovas like Kid and others, they were in dire need of replacing warships. And with the money she was offering, they could build more than 20 of them, replacing the 10 they lost. Convincing Big Mom not to target Fishman Island was easy. Her rage was focused solely on the brat with the straw hat. Convincing her to accept the money and forgo her pride was a hard task that took 30 minutes. She was not someone who wanted to accept the money. Luffy sat down with his crew outside. Nami and Usopp were chastising him for making the biggest enemy they had so far aside from the world government. Robin was by his side, not caring at all that he just made himself the enemy number 1 of an emperor. Frankie was the same. Zoro had the eyes of an excited predator, waiting to fight the army of an emperor and see where he stood on the world. Chopper was just panicking with Usopp. Brook was as calm as a leaf, just chugging his tea. Sora was smiling and calming down an angry Nami. At that moment, the Baron and the lion arrived outside. They walked with a large sack of treasure, and on the hands of the Baron was a small ornate box. The lion glared harshly at the Straw Hats, especially their tall captain. The Baron just bid them goodbye with his normal manners, though he was paler than normal. Nevertheless, who could blame him when he was the target of Big Mom's ire for more than 30 minutes? They were escorted out by the guards as esteemed guests. It was a tense moment, but now the enemy was gone. XOX, how things are going on your end, Jimbe-san? How are the Big Mom pirates treating you and your crew? I cannot truly describe her as reasonable, my queen, but we are managing. As a powerful man such as yourself, I didn't think you would serve another captain other than Fisher Tiger-san. Not at all. Being a leader isn't an alluring prospect to me if affiliating myself with an emperor of the sea will give safety to my men and bolster your relationship with Big Mom. However, I think I'll soon be leaving Big Mom's wing. Oh, meaning you will be accepting Luffy's invitation? He is a powerful man that will shake the world, she said with admiration in her tone. Yes, I've thought about it for these 2 years. However, I am a man bound by honor. If I am to cut ties with that ancient destroyer, I would be going back on my word. And it might incur her wrath upon this island once again, just as Luffy-kun managed to focus that wrath upon himself. Your sense of responsibility must be commended. But it might be your greatest weakness, Jimbe-san. I am honored to have you as my close friend during my rule, she praised him. One of the greatest warriors to have ever existed. The man in front of her must surely be on the same level as Fisher Tiger once was. No, it is you, my queen. I am grateful to have lived and have great existences, such as you, Whitebeard, Tiger-san, and Luffy-kun as dear friends. I have led a very blessed life. Jimbe, you needn't worry about this kingdom losing Big Mom's favor. As of right now, most of the male survivors of the Fishman District massacre wanted to join the military. They don't want another Vanderdecken to frighten their families. 120.000 men want to prove themselves and become stronger than the 2 horrors that plagued the insurgents. Should we lose the protection of Big Mom's Jolly Roger? We have another, a Jolly Roger with a straw hat upon its skull. Luffy was kind enough to let us use his name and flag should we face a dire situation. Haha, the man worth 600 million, now that's a formidable flag indeed. XOX. Meanwhile, in the New World, a battle was happening near the Red Line with a bunch of pirate ships and navy ships going at each other. The sound of cannon fire was so loud the smell of gunpowder made the eyes of junior soldiers cry. Here comes a big one. In the navy ships, the soldiers screamed as a cannonball approached their ship. If it hit, it would completely blow out this side of the ship, making it unusable. Look out, Captain Tashigi. I'll protect you with my loving embrace. The men in the ship jumped towards the only female to hug her and protect her from the cannonball. However, she jumped over them without any hesitation, using them as a springboard as she closed the distance between her and the cannonball. Not again, she complained as she drew her sword. It was a long katana and she used the blunt side of it to redirect the cannonball with her blade towards the sky until it finally blew. Woohoo, that's our cute little captain. Disorderly navy men who looked more like pirates and ruffians cackled the girl who had just saved them. Take this seriously, please. We need to capture these pirates alive, understand? Now prepare to board their ship. She tried giving them orders, but they just brushed her off and kept catcalling and flirting with her. Tashigi was tired of this job with the G5 crew, but Smoker insisted on coming on the New World, so they were saddled with these ruffians that call themselves Navy men. Enough of the horseplay in the middle of a battle. You're going to lose your lives if you keep that up. This is the problem with G5, such pathetic excuses for sailors. She put on her square glasses and returned the scabbard to her hips. She wore a captain coat over her shoulders, a small Hawaiian shirt with cherry blossoms, and her usual jeans. Her others were so loud that it irritated Smoker. He was interrogating the prisoners there. They were beating up and almost at death's door. However, the Navy medic was still doing his job. However, Smoker didn't care about the health of some measly pirates and started questioning them anyway. With a cool, grave voice, he summarized what he had learned. I see. So you were held captive by the pirate Hody Jones, down on the seafloor. That explains why we didn't see any rookies coming through Fishman Island for the past few months, as well as the cockroach swarm of pirates we're seeing here today. However, the number still doesn't add up. Our reports say that at least 700,000 pirates were reported making their descent towards Fishman Island on the past 6 months. And accounting for the usual deviation when pirates meet their death in the seafloor due to their trip, there still should have been more than 100,000 pirates coming up on the New World, but where are they? They were killed, executed by the pirates down there. They are terrifying. The crew called Straw Hat Pirates killed them, all those who were on the plaza that didn't escape in time. Straw Hat Luffy is a terrifying monster. The pirate continued his spiel, saying that Luffy was like a human tank that bulldozed over life, like a big elephant stomping on ants without any remorse. Smoker had a surprising look on his face. After all, the Straw Hat he knew never killed anyone. However, reports in recent times categorized the Straw Hat as a merciless killer who had destroyed the G1 base along with every marine in it, but he was a cruel genocidal maniac. The pirate's confession continued and said that there was a civil war down there and that the human pirates were slaves to a Fishman pirate crew. The Fishman pirates would torture them, stick them into bonfires. It was a lawless land that made them go crazy. When they had the chance, they escaped. It was when the pirate crew went against the kingdom and Straw Hats. It was a full-blown civil war that they had no chance of winning, as the Straw Hats steamrolled over lives like they were nothing. It was a disaster given form. So the Straw Hats are finally making their return. They're coming here to the New World, but they will soon realize that there is no place that will welcome them. Smoker stood up and walked towards the pirate ship. His smoke powers were making the mist around him about as his body became gas. He was going to attack the pirate ship in the distance and destroy it. Let's go to Tashigi. He ordered his captain to attack with him. Yes, Vice Admiral Smoker. Tashigi armed herself again and put on a scary face instead of her usual cute one. She was ready to jump whenever the blade by her side was ready to be drawn. Her thoughts, however, were swirling around. The pirate hunter Zoro, was he really a killer, killed innocent people without remorse? There was only one way to find out, and it was to meet and face him in battle. XOX, Madam Charlie. Luffy Chin is about to leave the island, so for the past week, the Straw Hats have been visiting with frequency the incredible base and the Mermaid Cafe. All Mermaid Cafe dancers have been in Luffy's bed every day. He even paid a visit to Kami and Shirley. Their time with him was so wonderful, so it was a bit sad that he was leaving the kingdom so soon. Not only Kami, but all the girls wanted to go see him say goodbye. All of you, I suppose, only to shut down the cafe for a bit. All those customers we lost because of that idiot Hody will be trickling back. I'll need your help to get the cafe buzzing again, girls, she said with a smile as she took a puff of her pipe. Of course, madam, the mermaids replied with a smile and wink. Kami looked over the ground and saw a crystal ball broken and shattered. My crystal ball, I'm done with it, for good this time. No more fortunes. I never wanted to see a future as terrifying as Fishman Island brought to ruin by Straw Hats. They are our saviors and nothing can say otherwise. Our people are strong-hearted. Even after the tragedy week ago, we are slowly but surely rebuilding. People look happy now. They aren't anxious anymore. They can look forward to another day with a bright smile, and it's all thanks to that crew and our queen. Shirley concluded her speech. Even if her predictions were 100% correct, she believed, no, she was certain that this one was false. But it's the fact that she's never made a false prediction that had her so terrified. What she saw might be a year or more off. There is no proof yet that she was wrong. Kami, however, was still worried about what could happen that would make Luffy. Still worried. Forgive me for initially doubting your friends. I understand how foolish I was. The queen even berated me in public. I now know that we can trust that man in the straw hat. Don't you think so? Why, yes, Kami said with a happy smile. XOX. Wow, must you truly leave, Luffy? And just when I had finally encountered my true love. Can't you stay just one more week? No, one more month. No, one more year. Luffy consoled her about leaving. He was sitting on her hands, wearing an expensive short and an open shirt. Sure enough, she was a mess, crying over him leaving. Sure, Hoshi was important to him. She was one of the 2 women in the world that truly, truly loved. Strangely, he only just met her and just spent a week with her. Ah, to think the day would come when the mermaid princess would shed tears at our departure. Don't worry, princess. I wish I could live here for a year, Sora said with a sultry smile as Brook was singing another song by her side. Actually, that's a good idea. You should stay here for another year, shitty cook. Zoro started bad-mouthing her again. Their rivalry never truly over after 2 years. Sora's eyes turned dark. You should know better than to insult your cook. Perhaps the next meal you'll find will be your last. Actually, I do want to see what happens. I want to know if I can ingest poison or razor blades. It will be a good training exercise, Zoro boasted as he evaded a kick that would decapitate a normal man as he slashed towards her with one of his blades. And she easily avoided it. Their bout continued uninterrupted on the ship. Meanwhile, Nami was marveling over the new type of log pose the Minister of the Left gave to her. It's a log pose type used in a new world. Please take it. You simply can't travel up there with only 1 needle to follow. There are 3 needles. Why is that? Nami asked. Usopp, Chopper, and Brook were also listening to the explanation, as they also zeroed on the new compass on Nami's hand. The old log pose wouldn't work. The Minister of the Left pointed at her old compass on her wrist, and the needle wasn't settled even after a week of use. The process shouldn't have taken more than a day. The needle was swaying like crazy. On the Grand Line, they used the log pose to read the unique magnetic field emanating from the next island, so that it may serve as the compass through the treacherous waters. But on a new world, not only do the currents and weather patterns change immediately, so do the magnetic fields that were the only means of navigation on Paradise. Some islands will even lose their fields abruptly right in the middle of a person's voyage. That was the explanation of the Minister of the Left towards the group of pirates. They were quite shocked to hear that, especially Usopp and Chopper, who were a bit scared of the thought. You must be joking. How can you ever get to the next island? Nami prodded the minister. Navigators chose a simple solution. If with only 1 needle the log pose would be ruined, what would happen if they had 3 instead? He pointed at the new log pose on Nami's hand. Only 1 needle was jiggling just like the older log pose. However, the other 2 were stable and pointing towards different directions. Each of the needles is tuned to a different island. In short, you can choose your route through the new world. The one with the broken needle, this pointing at an island that suffered a catastrophe and became unstable, so a navigator needs to choose a safe path throughout the new world. The rule of thumb was, the more abnormal the movement, the more dangerous the destination. Thus, a talented navigator can determine the safest route based on the movement of the needles. Ottoheim was quite sad that Luffy was leaving them so soon. However, the reverie was coming closer. It was time to make preparations to meet the world head-on and to finally start the fight for what she believes in. Therefore, she gave a tearful goodbye to him and a gentle kiss on his lips. After the death of Neptune, she finally found a man worth loving again. a man who would lead them to a new age. She truly believed this without question. By his power and by his ambition the world would bow to him. However, now it wasn't the time. There were many obstacles, insurmountable obstacles in his way even. Luffy, meanwhile, heard the Minister of the Left explanation from far away even when he was with Otohime, Shirahoshi, and Fukaboshi and smirked with evil intentions. A mysterious needle that leads to dangerous islands. Usopp and Nami wouldn't be ready for the next captain's orders, he thought. Even so, the more perilous the path, the better they would become as a group and as individuals. They needed to see everything that this world had to offer, especially the bad parts. If the way were easy, then the adventure would become predictable and boring, and he couldn't let that pass. Hey gang, we're ready to sail. I've got the hang of the surface and controls too for the past few days, shall we? Frankie announced on the top of the sunny for white-green in a cocky attitude towards his own skills. But of course he was the talented carpenter, one of the best in the world, that sailed on the Straw Hat ship. He was exceptional, was even able to learn how to do coding work for future endeavors. Luffy was proud, of course he would be boastful about his own abilities, and Frankie was the best in the last civil war they fought. Frankie and his weapons bulldozed over many lives that were there in the plaza, killing more than 100,000 scoundrels. Frankie had returned as a beast. Luffy nodded and gave a manly handshake towards Fukaboshi, the proud, fearless warrior prince of the sea. There was no doubt in Luffy's mind. This warrior prince would surpass his mother in the future, there was no doubt. They exchanged a respectful farewell. Yeah, it's just about. Luffy answered Frankie and jumped on the railing of the ship with his impressive tall body. The Straw Hats followed into the ship, giving their goodbyes to the friends they met, to the mermaids of the cafe, and various citizens that had come today to say goodbye. Even Kami and Hachai came to say goodbye, and he was swamped with work back in the city. He and various fishermen were rebuilding the factory that had been destroyed. It seems in the meanwhile they would still send some candy towards Big Mom as reparations. Don't forget about us, Luffy-sama, Sora-sama. The mermaids at the cafe. Luffy had spent so many precious moments with his bed called the two crew members who they spent the most time with on the ship, Luffy and Sora. They were the most addicted to sex on the ship, so it was only natural. Luffy took a long-lasting look at Jimbe, and the ex-warlord nodded with a fierce gaze. Luffy responded with a smile belonging to a king. That was all the goodbye they needed. They would be seeing each other again in their journey. Shirahoshi wasn't satisfied yet. She was still obsessed with Luffy, and that obsession was growing steadily. It was Luffy who showed her all these things. Luffy was a special light in her world. She grasped the side of the ship and stared at Luffy while crying. Tears weren't fit for her stunning face. She had the last word and made him promise her when they meet again, he will take her to the surface and they would visit a real forest this time. Luffy swore pinky promise with her large fingers. His hands were so warm, kind. She will never forget him ever. He was her special person. There is no doubt, there was no error in her judgment. He was her destined partner. The boat left port with a tearful farewell. Luffy was looking forward, his heart ripe with excitement, the thought of reaching the new world. This is how adventures should be. The invasion. The ocean saw the world begin. The man sang a song for all to hear. It was his preferred song as they approached their destiny. Finally, the great era of the pirates is coming to a close. Isn't that right, C-sensei? Asked a slender, curvaceous young woman with reddish-brown eyes and dark blue hair framing her face. She wore a blue hooded cape, high heels, black leggings, and a miniskirt. By her side was a rather tall and lanky man, with large lips and broad shoulders that appeared disproportional to his long arms. He dressed in a flamboyantly colorful outfit with a black and yellow oversuit, and a hot pink bodysuit underneath which also covered his head. He wore a green sash around his waist and carried a sword and a large shuriken on his back, tied on by a light pink cloth. His appearance strongly resembled that of a ninja. In front of them was a man with a large black coat with an intimidating aura. He only nodded as they approached the island. The large man went inside to rest a bit. His gait favored his right side as if he were carrying something heavy on his right arm, or something there was weighting him down. Around their ship was an armada with a collection of like-minded soldiers, along with mercenaries. With these numbers, they would accomplish their long-fought mission. Finally, Z's ambition would shake the entire world. XOX. He cradled the massive weapon inside of his cabin as he still sung. And the ocean knows how the world will end. Sounds of war outside, cannons being fired, men screaming in pain, shots from rifles. Thus it calls us down the path we must take. He raised his large, muscular, tan-skinned body, standing around twice the height of a typical man, being 12 feet tall, with short purple hair and a large mechanical right arm with concentrated sea stones connected to him. He endured pain from his right arm and was constantly reminded every day that he needed to use a breathalyzer to combat his need for air. Thus it leads to a righteous word. The ships commanded by him approached the heavily fortified marine base. The towers on the mountains kept raining down cannon blasts that would have detonated any normal ships. However, with all that artillery, only a few of his armada were hit. It envelops all pain and suffering. They were able to land on the rocky island. With all the artillery, his men still pushed forward, fearless and strong. They carried bayonets, rifles with a dagger on the end, a revolutionary tactic invented by his disciple Ain. It changed normal rifles into spears that were superior to normal blades and sabers, with the capacity for shooting out multiple rounds. The Navy, who boasted of only rifles or swords, lacked the versatility of his own fighters. His fighters were comprised of mercenaries who were already on his payroll or sympathizers, which willingly gave him their strength. The battlefield soon told the results. Soldiers and lieutenants belonging to the Navy on the ground, dead like trash, shot and bayoneted, some bleeding from the chest, some bleeding from their crotch and legs, some with their stomach turned inside out with their entrails spilling, some blown away by their own cannon fire, their bodies lifted like dolls with all their little bones and organs and muscles torn apart and with the consistency of an apple juice well blended, honorably and kindly wrapping them up. His own fighters also being torn apart by artillery. However, that artillery did not last long. An intruder and saboteur had already infiltrated the towers, blasting artillery down on them. That saboteur was his second disciple, a shinobi with Wano blood and one of the most dangerous devil fruits from the Paramecia type. Soon the towers were destroyed from the inside as a jungle grew from within stone and concrete, blowing up their biggest defenses on the island. With more and more invading ships arriving, the Navy had no other counterattack but to call an admiral. The ship with him arrived. He took a step forward as the doors opened to him. His gait favored his right side, since he wore such a heavy mechanical arm, thicker than a barrel, made entirely of the highest concentrated sea stone. He wore baggy black pants and a black coat with an inverse symbol of the Marine, symbolizing that his army stood against everything the Navy stood for. With this, my ambition finally starts. I will crush every single pirate. He rushed forward, faster than lightning itself, his arm making a grating metallic sound as he closed the distance between him and a giant Marine captain. He roared and punched the man on his abdomen. The hit was so brutal it made the giant's spine and ribs turn to the other side as deadly shards busted from the man's back. The abdomen, which contained all his entrails, was blown to bits and rained down on the battlefield as a shower of slaughter as half the giant's chest fell to one side along with his face, and the lower half was blown away towards the mountain. The man with the mechanical arm then jumped towards the agglomeration of Navy soldiers and bashed one in the neck, decapitating the man. His normal arm picked up the man's head and coated it in his armament and started using the man's head as an iron ball, killing, murdering and massacring any Navy soldiers that went on his way. It didn't matter if hordes of them started using their swords on him. It didn't matter if he was shot with cannon. It didn't matter if he was the target for shooting. His armament and mechanical arm were able to ward off all blows like they were just fodder. He was a King Kong stomping on ants without any difficulty. The man with the mechanical arm laughed at his own power. This was Z, the man who was an ex-admiral, revered for his physical power without relying on any devil fruit powers to help him. His arm was like a cyclone that produced blood storms. He was completely unstoppable. One individual appeared from the distance, overlooking the battlefield, a vice-admiral. Their face paled, realizing who was attacking. But before he could confront him, someone arrived by his side, a woman with blue hair and ruby-like eyes. "You are his Marine captain back in the day, Ain, was it?" he said, preparing his sword and coating it with his armament. "It has been a long time." Vice Admiral Yamakaji, she bowed to him in respect for old times, but nothing more. Yamakaji was a tall and broad-chested man. He had a slightly wrinkled face, a round nose with prominent nostrils, thick lips, and a wide, round chin. Being 9 feet tall, he dwarfed Ain in size. He wore a yellow dress shirt with a red polka dot pattern, brown pants and brown shoes with the Marine cap and the designated coat over the shoulder for vice admirals. "Unfortunately, I cannot let you meet Z-sensei. So Zephyr-sensei thinks his apprentice is enough to beat me. He doesn't want to meet his students after all this time." "Huh," he yelled at the girl. The girl overlooked the battlefield they were in. Z was down there, not noticing their battle up here and instead focusing all his haki to annihilate the Marine soldiers who protected this base and came out of every little hidey hole like cockroaches. This was fine. Facing a student after so long would pain her master. For that reason, Yamakaji couldn't be allowed to meet him, and he would die here. "Get out of here, little girl. You were a captain the last time I saw you. You can't beat a vice admiral." The man closed his eyes and gave her a pleasant smile and rushed faster than the wind could catch him and slashed with his giant blade. "This is enough." Ain retrieved a danger and a pistol for this battle. She didn't even need to use haki. She blocked his armament-enhanced sword with only a dagger and shot 2 bullets right at his face. He dodged but was instead hit by the back of her heel as she roundhouse kicked him into the curb. He got up and slashed at her, making her draw her distance like a silent little fairy on the battlefield. His fight with her continued on, and she didn't even emote any difficulty or anxiety fighting a vice admiral. She just fought him like a child. He had over 40 years of experience. He had been in many deadly battles, and this girl was looking down on him. The solo battle continued on with Yamakagi doing anything and everything to make the girl die. However, nothing worked. Not his haki of observation and armament. Not his legendary sword skills. He got reckless and went for his defining attack. However, the ground he was laying on turned into a pool of lava that gushed upwards, burning half of his right side in the process. His right arm was melting off because of the burns. His coat caught fire. He could barely move due to the pain. This fight was over. Both experienced warriors realized this. It was a battle of patience, and he lost because he had been furious that a 25-something girl had looked down on him. How pathetic of him, he thought about himself. That's right, you had a devil fruit power. What was it? He grimaced. Aang didn't even deign a response. What a serious and killjoy girl, he thought. She was much cuter back then. This girl in front of him didn't even have a shred of emotion or nostalgia for old times. She was a 16-year-old captain, a rising star back then. To think she became so strong that she could toy with a vice admiral. Zephyr truly was a great teacher, Yamakagi thought as his right arm fell from his body. He knelt in more pain. She put her revolver and dagger back into her strap, and she rushed faster than even a vice admiral could react. Stood in front of him and flicked his forehead. He felt his heart stop beating. He felt that he could barely think anymore. Why is Zephyr doing this? Why are you doing this? Was the last thing he asked. It is all to fulfill Z's ambition, for that I will sacrifice anything, she said as she regressed his nervous system to non-existence. He collapsed with a touch from her devil fruit, who could regress things as she liked. The Vice Admiral Yamakagi was dead. Utterly defeated and annihilated by an apprentice of Aang felt that her training and deadly battles leading up to here had been worth it. She could be useful to her master's ambition. XOX. He entered the inside of the laboratory, as a set of captains got in his way. However, the ever-fast Binns arrived, and with his power over all plant life made a devastating massacre. Every single time he punched a tree, bark grew inside of the enemy, skewering their bodies formed their insides. He'd form a giant spear out of tree bark to attack the captain, coated in armament. And when the tree was complete, he would break the bark and rain down various poisonous splinters on the Navy Army. Binns then took the massive shuriken from his back and rotated it like a saw blade and kept ripping the Marines apart one by one. Captains and lieutenants who were stronger than the average pirate mowed down without a sweat. Aang, where were you? Just taking care of a problem, master. She was hiding the truth from him. I see. Z finalized the talk. Aang was a trustworthy person. If she told him not to care about it, then it was nothing of importance. For his ambition, trust in his fellow man was the most important thing. Aang and Binns were there for him from the very beginning. It was their faith in him that led him to this moment. Z gladly put his faith in them as well. No man in this world can do everything alone. That was a lesson he learned very well in his youth. They finally reached an iron steel door. Inside were the tools needed for the job. He used his right mechanical arm to blow the door. An explosion was triggered by the mechanism of his arm, and a big bullet shell came out of it. There inside was a round hall, with the walls being a drawer glowing purple. Every single one of its lever being pulled were Dena stones in a pink water container. These Dena stones were the government answer to the 3 ancient weapons. The government must have truly been scared of these ancient weapons to produce a monstrosity such as this. Cowards. Put enough of them on an island and their power would sink the island to the ground. Massive explosives capable of covering such a wide area. He ordered his men to place 10 of them on the peak of the island. This would be the first spot for destruction. He then ordered his men to store the 290 other stones on his main ship. XOX. To think this brat would arrive. He cursed as he faced one of the biggest marine threats produced. Admiral Kizaru. What a cool name. The brat still over-relied on his devil fruit. He still hadn't learned his lesson since there was barely anyone who could challenge his light powers on the sea. Z was an old man, but he was still an ex-admiral. He wouldn't let this youngster thrash his plans like this. One of Borsalino's beams of light hit one of his ships. If it had hit the one ship he stored all the Dena stones, even the light man would have perished. The brat thought himself invincible. The brat kicked in his direction, but his beam was blocked by his mechanical arm. The brat used his mirror to move behind him and kicked him again. But he shouldn't have underestimated Z's observation. The beam was blocked again and a shell of explosives reached the other location Borsalino moved. However, only a tiny fraction of Borsalino's coat was singed. The standstill continued. Oh, long time no see, mentor. Why did you come here? Borsalino, I thought I warned you to not rely on your fruit too much. I see you're as strict as ever, Zephyr-sensei. Borsalino made a light sword and made to attack. However, Z roared and met the Admiral blow for blow, calling him Zephyr. That name was abandoned ages ago. Those lazy-ass men in the government gave you the title of Admiral, but aren't you letting it get to your head a little? He counterattacked one of the Admiral's strikes and blasted another shell to Borsalino's face. However, he evaded with his light powers. I did not come here to reminisce about the old days. He responded with a lackadaisical manner as always and shot a beam of light at Z. He blocked and created a cloud of smoke, surrounding his presence to the brat's observation. He went around and hit the Admiral. However, his attack was blocked by the light sword. That was a mistake since his mechanical arm was of sea stone. The light sword disappeared. This time Kizaru wouldn't be able to block it. Another shell blasted the Admiral. This time the man had to transform into light particles to get away. Z coughed on the ground and lost the air in his lungs. He needed his breathalyzer. He fished it out of his pocket and put it in his mouth and activated it. However, he wasn't fast enough. Kizaru appeared behind and kicked him with the speed of light. His armament was able to mitigate the damage. However, he was still without air and without his breathalyzer near him. Why are you going against the Navy at your old age? Shouldn't you be happy and retired on a summer island drinking some tea instead? Huh, Zephyr-sensei. Kizaru appeared on top of him and skewered him to the ground with 2 light spears. Kizaru had impaled both of his kidneys with precision. When did admirals become so strong? When did he become so weak? Old age isn't funny at all. Back in time I would be able to handle 3 of these brats at the same time. What is Drea? Ambition end here. Why were you so interested in the Dena stones in the first place? My ambition. My ambition. He mumbled as a torrent of blood spilled from his mouth. He could barely move his body at this point. Rest easy, my mentor, Kizaru said as his foot glowed for the final devastating blow. However, a shade of blue ran towards his head, with a dagger approaching the Admiral's eyes. He dodged with light particles and saw a woman wearing a blue coat, with her features shadowed. Oh, you are. That's right. Kizaru didn't have the chance as a murderous spree was unleashed. Form that girl. The girl could keep with the Admiral that moved at the speed of light, and she fought better and stronger than her own master. To think that this girl who was just a marine captain had grown to such a degree. Her observation and armament were on another level entirely. She parried his attacks with grace and was able to even nick his face with her enhanced dagger. A student so young who had surpassed her master, Zephyr, an achievement even Borsalino could not boast at her age. Letting someone like that go would be unwise. He started relentlessly attacking her, battering her down with light explosions. However, she adapted fast but was losing stamina to continue the fight. He targeted her sensei who was down to bait her into dying. However, she took the hits with a modified cipher pole technique and armament on her whole body. What a scary woman. Zephyr sensei picks these orphans in the marine and get them indebted for life. What a wicked man, Kizaru said in an easy laid-back manner. She raged silently at his comment, then looked back to her master. My ambition. My dream, he said with a look that stared right at her soul. She didn't know what emotions passed through her teacher's head. However, this was his final breath before his organs failed him. She silently cried for her incredible loss, her only father figure. However, she had inherited his will. She and the others would fulfill Master Z's dream, no matter the cost. She roared in pain and attacked with all she got. She was able to match an admiral for 10 whole minutes before she realized what must be done. She dragged the battlefield towards where one Dena stone was located. She grabbed one of them and shoved it right to Kizaru's face and cut the glass, protecting it from the oxygen around them. Kizaru paled and moved away. However, this was the plan. She touched the air around her and regressed a conceptual notion. She regressed Kizaru's position in reality itself, until he was right next to her and pushed the stone onto his face, with him paling and realizing what was happening. There were a lot of powers in the world that could deal with a man that ran as fast as light. Her power was one of them. He looked to the side to see the stone glowing and being pressed against his face, his eyes fearing the next picosecond. Steel body. She activated her enhanced cipher pole technique and coated her whole body in her armament haki, her skin turning into metallic volcanic ash in color with the biggest defense she could muster. Vince had already retreated with the other 290 stones. The next step of the mission was in his hands. She closed her eyes and waited for death. The next picosecond, the island blew into an inferno. On top of a Navy ship, Kizaru arrived in a flash of light. His sleeve was a bit singed as well as his coat. Even after your death, your disciples will still do your work for you, huh, Zephyr-sensei? He ordered his men to leave. Chasing after his army of lunatics would be a hassle in this ash rain, not to mention reckless. At least Zephyr and that girl were now dead. A man arrived a few moments later after the marine left. He used a bicycle on the sea, his powers over ice making a nifty way for him. He looked at the pillar of fire that was previously a government facility. He sighed. My, what on earth the Navy doing? XOX. The arrival. The attack on the New World happened a few days ago, shocking authorities worldwide at the size of the explosion. The existence of the Dena stone still kept as secrets. As for the Straw Hats, they had spent a week on the Ryugu Kingdom after their tenuous civil war. And now, the Straw Hats finally left the wondrous Fisherman Island. They now traveled underneath the sea of the New World, towards the surface. Looks like smooth sailing. Robin spoke. So smooth it's scaring me. Usopp as always was in the lookout for danger. Of course their ship was always surrounded by dangers, but the marine life here was blind to their presence for the moment. Their ascension to the New World started. The biggest stage yet to come. It appeared while they were in the bath. Zoro went and caught a fish with his sword. It was now tied to it. However, the problem wasn't the fish but a white tube flowing in the middle of the ocean that was bigger than a continent in height. Nami was still drying her hair when she and Robin noticed how bad the situation was. A white strom, an enormous white whirlpool that naturally forms near the floor of the sea like a writhing dragon. Once a ship is caught in the stream, it turns up days later in an unfathomable distance away, empty and devoid of life, meaning its crew is entirely dead. We gotta get out of here. Usopp paled and yelled at Robin's explanation. Luffy sat on the railing of the second floor. HRM, so the ship is flung far away. So it's like a magical warp zone. He grinned. He was having too much fun. As much as her maturity as yearning for adventure hadn't diminished. In fact, it has grown so large like a hungry carnivorous monster. Nami was worried. Hurry, people. We need to get away from that current. Finally, our navigator has ordered, let's get moving. Usopp was of the same mind as Nami. Hey, that fish monster, it's getting sucked into the whirlpool. Brook commented and took a sip of his tea. Nami face-bombed. What are you guys thinking? How are we supposed to control the ship with that disgusting thing weighting us down? Cut it loose. At her words, the males of the crew along with Sora had a shocked look. It was their dinner. Sora was looking forward to making a deep-sea dish with her legendary cooking. She was sad. What's more important, you dinner or our safety? Nami screamed at them honestly. The trouble you managed to get us into when I take my eyes off of you for 1 hour. Use the ship's coop to burst, Frankie. Nami ordered. It's a bit super late for that, he said with a pose as the current dragged the fish and them towards it. The ship was sucked into the white strom and thrown upside down as it was dragged along for the road. While his crew was frantically searching for a place to drag on, Luffy laughed maniacally. There was no fun in adventure without thrills such as this. The surfing continued for a long while. However, something was in the way. Luffy deflected the big thing they hit with his palm before the ship's coating could be undone. After he deflected, they were thrown out by the counterforce towards the normal sea again. Just as he planned, this fast current was getting tedious after the first 20 minutes. We stopped. Robin asked. What? Brook yelled at the sight. Before them was a pod of innumerable whales, each of them longer than 1 mile in length. Their low calls reached their ears, showing how massive they were, each bigger than an island. Luffy was surprised, so they hit one of the whales. Reminds me of Laboon, he whispered, and nobody heard him but Zoro and Sora. Laboon, Brook yelled at the closest one. He was reminded of his promise along with the Rumbar pirates, that they would sail and return to the beginning. He even started tearing up. Laboon, oh, look at the size of you. Don't be silly. Laboon's back in the Twin Capes, remember? Usopp rebuffed the skeleton. There is no way that he could slip through the red line with his size. It's a miracle. An entire gam of island whales, Robin said as she brought her sketch pad. Look, a couple of them have scarred snouts like Laboon. Zoro commented. Even the marks are the same. If I hadn't fought him, I would have been fooled. Luffy contemplated on the massive strength that whale had. He was excited of their rematch. Crocus was on the Pirate King's ship. Hope the man teaches Laboon some haki. That would be a legendary contest. Brook started to sing the Brinks Brew again, still thinking that Laboon was with them. However, he was scolded by Usopp. Hey, look, this isn't time for whale watching. Sora flipped her long hair. First a head count. Did we lose anyone during the stream? Luffy, Sora called her captain. Luffy waved at her on top of the mast as he watched the whales. Nami, she called her beloved navigator. Here. Nami leaned over the fence on the second floor as she kept watching for more unexpected currents. Robin, Sora called her beloved archaeologist. Present, she said as she took a sketch of the whales in her cute and bizarre style. Okay, that's everyone. Sora crossed her arms below her breasts and nodded. Chopper and Usopp came crying to her for not counting the other members in the head count. Shows how much Sora likes her women. The strangest part was that she called and was worried for her captain first. But nobody noticed that. You have observation, shitty cook. Can't you see that everyone is here? Zoro insulted her again. She narrowed her eyes. You don't get it, she muttered. Their rivalry still going strong between the two most powerful crew members. As this was going on, Nami kept giving orders. A group this size creates its own current. Fighting this flow will only put us in more danger. Set the sails and make sure we follow the group. Aye aye. The crew started working on her orders. Brook approached the rail and stared at a whale. It stared back at him with intelligence in its eyes. Are you perhaps looking for a smaller whale that was separated from the pod 50 years ago? Have no fear, he's on the other side of the world safe and sound. He's surely grown up by now, your little one as well. Brook brought his heart out despite being a skeleton and sang his favorite song. Binks Brew with his old violin. Both the crew and the whales watching him as they were guided. The whale he spoke to closed its eyes in apparent joy. Love for music grew in the family, it seemed. The whale was so overjoyed that it went behind them and started pushing the ship with its head along with speeds untold. Ah, are you going to give us a ride? The god with the straw hat asked with a tender smile. The whale answered with a loud call of happiness. Out of all of them, it was Luffy who appeared to understand the living creature. Nami and Robin looked at him serenely. Nami sighed. Well, let's take it up on its offer. It looks like they're heading for an upward current. The crew joined Brook in singing his favorite song, and so the massive gang of whales continued their journey and leading them. Luffy started thinking to himself, these whales are leading one of the worst pirate crews to the surface. We killed so many and will continue our journey, killing those in the way of our dreams. The whales, they don't see us as anything but fellow animals on this world. It made him realize, no matter what the person had done upon their life, nature, the world around didn't treat them differently from anybody else. No matter if you're born poor or rich, no matter if you're born powerful or weak, in the end humanity is but a speck of dust upon this large world. Humans won't ever make a difference in the universe. However, humans can make a difference on somebody else. The freedom to choose what to do was the most important thing because you're the only person that can decide the meaning to your life. I wonder if Ace realized this in his last moments. His brother was constantly plagued by the meaning of his cursed life. Luffy hoped his brother discovered what his life meant to him. The sea started becoming less dark. The crew could see the surface. The new world. I wonder, what would they find in this wild ocean? What stories would be told of this place? Waiting for the answers is tiring. Searching for them is exciting. Yeah, it's the new world. The crew screamed as they arrived in the new world. With terrible rainstorms and winds all around them, the whales cried as the crew of the future Pirate King arrived. XOX, Lily the Little Giant. The Straw Hats had emerged to a turbulent new ocean, the mysterious and terrible new world, where death and life, adventure and horror stood as one. They had landed on the new world after successfully evading one of the most turbulent currents in the world, and with the help of whales they were guided to the surface of this extreme sea. As for the Straw Hats right now, the Navy, Luffy uttered as his hands tightened and stood tightly against his chest as he crossed his arms. The force behind the tightening of hands could probably blow out a mountain. He furrowed his brows as he saw various ships circling around them as soon as they arrived in the new world. Nevertheless, something was amiss. His observation was revealing an entirely distinct story than his own eyesight. Luffy ceased to care and went back to relaxing on his usual spot in the ship. A heavy rain kept falling on the Navy ships as they arrived. His crewmates' clothes were also soaked by the amount of rain falling. What is going on here? Usopp said, opening his mouth wide enough as sweat rolled from his face mixing with the rain. Chopper was in the same mind with his eyes wide open. Brook and Frankie were surveying the ships and closing them from all sides. Frankie had a pale face, but even then, he was ready to unleash the full might of his weapons. Brook was just feigning a surprised look. As expected of the Navy, they know every move we make. Robin praised them with a straight face and voice. Usopp admonished her fearlessness even in a dire situation such as this one. Zoro and Sora, however, were in a completely different tune than the rest of the crew. They took a long glance at the ships surrounding them and just went on with their business and lives, not caring at all that they were in the middle of a trap. Usopp was now getting really mad. He shouted at Luffy, Zoro, and Sora, who were the strongest of their crew, for not taking this situation seriously. Chopper joined him in his rant, however. It only took one stern look from Nami to shut them up. Nami viewed the sky. There is no need to worry. This is just a weather that produces mirages. As she said this, the ships collided with Sunny and disappeared like mists, one after the other. She's right, the warships disappeared, Robin said with a look of curiosity. Chopper pointed out the rain had stopped. Nami explained the mirage effect in detail to the ones willing to listen. It was common in this area of the seal. Luffy and Zoro had irritated looks. This was a whole load of nothing and no action. The Straw Hat captain was itching to kill some Marines too. XOX, I'm hungry, need some food. 2 tons of it. Luffy complained in the heat of the sun. He took his shirt off and was now only with a white jean pants. He rested on the grass floor of the ship in hopes to catch more sunlight. Usopp chastised him by his side, wearing a yellow and brown cap and a very colorful tank top. Brook wore light clothing as well, even though he was a skeleton and could not feel the heat. But I'm impressed. Nami-san, you know a whole lot about the weather in the New World. I studied as much as I could about the New World over the past 2 years. Don't worry, this crew is in my good hands. She stretched on her sunbathing chair. She wore a white frilly bikini and a red hairband. Her massive breasts bounced and jiggled up and down as she relaxed and took a sip of her cool drink. Robin arrived at her side wearing a jeans jacket and nothing else, just a small string bikini for the lower part, which meant that the cleavage under that small jacket was nude. Zoro was in the other part of the ship drinking some beer to cool off. Hey, didn't we catch a deep-sea fish on the way here? Chopper commented with a smile as he drank more juice and fanned himself. He was the one who was most suffering due to the heat since he had fur. Yeah, Sora is inspecting it, Luffy said. After a few minutes she emerged from the door to the kitchen, wearing a black bikini, proudly showing the assets she was so proud. Unfortunately, it was mostly ruined due to the horrible weather. Sora adapted to her new womanly body faster than any of them expected. Luffy still wondered why she chose to stay female, and yet she hasn't given him any meaningful reason. But Luffy was now patient. He knew that Sora viewed him as her important friend. One of these days she will tell him the full story. Luffy just had to support her in her decisions and dreams for the future. I still set aside some of the fish. I made some carpaccio for you, but it isn't much, Sora called him, and he went with her to the upper deck. She was a bit more kind to him after 2 years. Before she would only treat the ladies with food, now she was treating him with the same care. It was then that he tuned into his observation. Is there an ant in the ship? He asked himself internally. His observation was not good enough to register small insects. Did his color of observation grow stronger or something? Was his mind playing tricks on him? What? Her voice was full of anger. He saw her legs flex and tighten as she saw the empty plate in the kitchen counter where only a small piece of lemon sat. Where is my carefully prepared carpaccio? She then tuned into her observation. There is something there. Luffy spoke while squinting his eyes. Something really small was eating the last piece of lemon. There it was, the small ant he picked up. You're right. I thought it was some sort of insect I was picking up since we arrived in the new world. It's a person, Sora commented. Luffy was impressed. As expected, Sora was a league above him in observation. She knew there was something off ever since they landed. As he was thinking this, the small person rushed outside through them towards the deck at the bottom. Luffy was at a loss of what to do. There was an invader at the ship eating their food. However, the person itself didn't feel malicious, so no need to bring out the big guns. First things first, they needed to capture it. Luffy shouted his orders to the crewmates standing on the deck. They all saw the grass being rustled. Usopp and Chopper tried to catch it like bug hunters with nets. However, the small person was very nimble. Catch that little food thief, please, Sora begged. She was almost blowing a gasket with rage as she saw the crew members below try and capture it. Luffy put his large hands on her small shoulders to calm her down. She nodded and her anger vanished. Thief, I can't let that slide. I just bait what I found sitting around. The little human answered them. It was a female voice of all things. Luffy sat on the railing as he watched the crew trying to capture such a small thing roaming around. There was no ship in sight, and they just arrived on the new world. Did she hitchhike in his ship from way back in Fishman Island? That had to be it. There was no way that she could have entered the ship otherwise. Hey, she went your way, Frankie. Catch her. Usopp warned Frankie, who crushed down and was getting in position. Leave it to me, he said with his giant mechanical hands enclosing on the tiny person. However, something surprising happened. Frankie, who weighed a whole ton, was thrown over his shoulder by that super tiny person. That was so unexpected that even Zoro, who watched the scene with disinterest, whistled at that moment. She took Frankie down. Even if he wasn't really trying, that's impressive, Luffy said as he drew a bit of entertainment from watching the scene. However, the entertainment was over when the tiny person was completely captured by 2 hands sprouting from the ground. Robin, who was drinking a cold tea, giggled a bit in her sultry tone. I guess it's game over, huh? Luffy commented with his right fist in his cheek. I can't be captured here. Take the full rebound of my powers. The mini person shouted, and her body grew 50 feet in an instant. Robin's floor abilities vanished like petals. Robin raised an eyebrow at the small ant-like human that sprouted to a height of a giant. Before she went back to read the news, taking a sip with her drink. She was a beautiful dark-skinned woman with green wavy hair, blue eyes, and a tribal-like outfit. Luffy was impressed. His observation flared with her growth. Before, he detected a small presence the size of an insect. Now she had the presence of a moderately powerful giant. On her hands was a metal trident. Not a trident again. Just after that Hody guy. Luffy sighed and complained. He had enough of spear wielders and trident wielders. Her ability seems neat, but... He looked at her, aiming that trident towards the deck of the ship. If it continued like this, the Sunny would receive some damage. No hard feelings. She thrusted her weapon down. However, Luffy appeared in the way of the attack, pelting the weapon high in the air. Then he grappled her large thighs and immediately, without any warning or delay, suplexed a giant of 50 feet towards the ocean. Luffy did this without any struggle on his part, which spoke volumes about his transcendent bodily strength. What? She cried out in surprise as sea water hit her face. Her head and torso were now underwater. She was still being held by Luffy up above the railing. Soon she lost control of her power and started shrinking. She shrank down as her fruit was disabled by the sea. Soon Luffy pulled her back, and now she was in her original size, a manageable human size. So she was a devil fruit user. Usopp commented as he watched Luffy drag her body out. It was fortunate that Luffy was still holding her thigh when she shrank down, otherwise she would have drowned. She coughed a bit of water as she was held in a princess carry by Luffy. Luffy had an indescribable expression as he looked over her. XOX, Dad, I'll save you at any cost. Wait for me. She gasped and removed the covers. Her body was showing signs of fear and anxiety as she shouted her dad's name. She looked around and was greeted by Chopper, who was overlooking her condition, and Sora, who was overseeing the intruder. Oh good, she woke up, Chopper said as he flipped the pages in the book he was studying. Here is some tea for calming down the nerves, Sora said as she served tea, still dressed in her bikini. Then the blonde chef started a long string of flirts with the dark-skinned intruder that made her blush in embarrassment. Hey, you're finally awake. Luffy entered the medical office for the ship with some food as well. Luffy, don't use violence against her again. Understood. Sora softly spoke to him. However, it appeared to be more of an order than anything, forcing him into an agreement. She was still fiercely protective of the female sex. Then again, it wasn't his intentions to seriously hurt the green-haired girl in the first place. But seriously, your body can shrink and can grow, that's awesome. Luffy praised the green-haired intruder. It looked like his own more powers. His own application was slightly more scientific, and he couldn't find a way to shrink his body. His powers were exponentially additive in nature, so he could only grow in size. However, this girl had a power specifically for that nature. There was truly a power for everything, even powers that did similar things. He had changed his presence to be more charismatic instead of intimidating. The girl dropped her guard immediate by his presence and smile. The small unnoticeable applications of his conqueror's haki in his daily life was incredible. He could put people at ease. He could put the fear of God in people. He could make them pass out. He could even make them have a heart attack if he wanted to. Truly the power of a chosen king, as they say. As expected with his power, she dropped her guard and started talking about herself. I was born a giant in Elbaf, but I ate the mini fruit and became this size. Luffy liked her strange accent. She was charming. She was the size of a normal human girl, but she could shrink to any size she wanted or grow to be back to her giant form. She said that she could infinitely shrink, however she never did after a certain point, because the world became a very scary place the further down she shrunk. Luffy thought the same with his own powers. There was a fear of the unknown about using his own powers to their fullest extent. His more powers could easily create black holes if he was not careful. And he didn't know the extent of his god powers. He truly didn't. It felt like he explored less than 1% of his god powers. There was a lot of unknown that couldn't and wouldn't be revealed, unless there was a way to lower their potency. Their truest extent would remain hidden forever, but that was the price to pay for consuming 2 fruits at the same time. He could have died back then. He almost did. However, instead of dying, a world-destroying monster was born who could not truly control his powers, only guide them. HRM, that explained why you could lift Frankie's body. She smiled at him. She appeared to be an adventurous girl with a bit naive as well. Even when small, I still hold the power of the giants, she said with a boastful smile. Chopper though her to be very cool with her powers. Even Sora was impressed. Giants were powerful, at least 1,000 times stronger than normal humans. Can you do anything else? Sora said with a smile. I can get smaller and slip into an opponent's body. Then I grow to my normal size and their bodies explode. It's pretty cool, she said with an innocent, naive smile. It seems all they would find in this new ocean was people who found no wrong in killing the opponents in the goriest fashion possible. It appeared that Fishman Island was just a test run for the real thing. At least those were Sora's thoughts. Chopper, who listened attentively, looked a bit sick at the thought but didn't puke or anything. 2 years back he would have definitely vomited at the thought of a person exploding from within another person's body. It meant that this crew was becoming a bit more mature, or started not ignoring the times they were living in. Sora didn't know. Luffy thought that if this giant girl could get over her fear of the molecular and atomic worlds, she could cause major damage as well with her powers. For example, she could cause atomic reactions and blow up an island. Although she would also die with the attack if didn't have the endurance to withstand an explosion of that magnitude. By the way, young lady, what's your name? Sora asked. My name is Lillian Strom. People often refer to me as Lily the Glutton, and it's a bit embarrassing. But if you're a devil fruit user, then how did you board the Sunny? Chopper asked. Why? Well, she told her tale that she shrunk down and remained inside of a bottle in these parts of the sea when the Sunny emerged from underwater with the whales. Her bottle broke and she landed on the ship miraculously without falling into the sea water. The rest was history. When asked about why she was in a glass bottle in the middle of the harshest oceans possible, she responded that she was waiting for someone, her father. By that point in the explanation, her face was filled with anxiety. Sora wondered why she was so worried. Sorry for your hospitality, but I must be going. I can't waste any more time here. Huh, why? Luffy questioned. I need to get to my father. Your father? What kind of man is your father? Chopper asked. Her outburst stopped and she took on a proud look. My father is the greatest pirate chef in the New World. A pirate chef? Lily-chan, what's your father's name? Sora asked, suddenly interested because she was in the same field. And greatest of the New World, now that was a powerful boast. It's Pants and Strom. So I wasn't mad when I thought I knew your last name from somewhere. Lily nodded and started explaining to Luffy, Sora, and Chopper that he was a giant who was a volcanic cooking chef. He specialized in proteins cooked over a volcano with a South Blue style of cooking barbecue, using salt crystal from volcanic rock and rare spices that could only grow in volcanic areas. Luffy was enraptured by just the thought of such foods. Lily continued, not knowing how much of an interest Luffy took on meat. She mentioned a paella with rice and assortment of seafoods, mushrooms, and other ingredients. 1,000-person paella that was bursting with strong flavor that blew minds away, and an aroma that could reach other islands. Luffy was now swimming in his own food fantasy with Lily also accompanying him. They had such good chemistry together it was astounding. Sora, I've heard he steals food from the government and other pirates and likes nothing more than to cook for starving people, Sora told them. So, he's like you, Luffy said with a tender smile at his own cook. Sora nodded. It was obvious that she heard of him. Both were chefs and took joy in feeding disheartened and starving people. After Lily was feeling better, Sora accompanied her and guided her on the facilities and attractions of the ship. Luffy and Chopper were alone in the medical office. Have you completed the analysis of that matter? Chopper swallowed and nodded. Yeah, it was a hard talk between doctor and patient. Chopper was responsible for the health of all crew members including the captain. As hard to say, he was also responsible for the sexual health as well. Chopper was the gynecologist for the female members, and now Luffy posed two problems for him. First were the unexplained regenerative abilities he received after the war. He was in a near-death state, clawed back from the death, a few days after acquired something out of the blue that made his body quasi-immortal. No explanation, no grand experience. He woke up and wounds were healed. That healing factor only increased with time. Second was the most concerning problem that Luffy faced, his unfortunate infertility. The Straw Hat Captain was poisoned to death in Impel Down, had to take an unbelievable number of hormones, steroids, and stimulants to survive. He was thrown in a war right after with more steroids and hormones ravaging his body due to his insistence in saving his brother, had his chest blown with lava, was treated with a risky surgery right after with more dangerous substances. The most possible cause of it were either Magellan's poison circulating his body, or the substances injected to make him survive. Narrowing the possibility further was impossible at this point in time. A normal person would be dead right now. The imbalance and stress upon his body caused lack of production of spermatozoids. However, his body still produced sperm. That stress almost caused kidney failure and lack of production in important natural hormones. Luffy was lucky to get off with just being sterile by Chopper's findings. However, he did find it regretful that he could not have children. Being bound by marriages or only one woman was an upsetting prospect. His lovers knew of this. He liked to have as many women in his arm as he could, but having children was another subject entirely. He would love for the Monkey D family to continue down. I'm going to find a way. It might take a few years or even a decade, but I'll find it, Chopper told him with a serious look. He was a doctor who dreamed synthesize a cure-all medicine. Becoming a urologist for his captain was easy as pie. He would heal his captain's infertility no matter how many years took to find the answer. Thanks, doctor. Chopper got very embarrassed of him calling him a doctor. He fully respected Chopper's medical skills. It doesn't matter if it took a couple of years or a decade or 50 years. Chopper was his precious crewmate. Luffy had faith in him like no other doctor in the world. He would find an answer to his problem. XOX. After lunch, Lily told them the story. She and her father had been pirating a lot. However, he had gone missing all of the sudden a couple of weeks ago. She used her devil fruit powers to scour for information. And information she found. Her father had been captured by the Marines and was due to be transported by this area of the sea to be taken towards Impel Down. Impel Down, along with not ever wanting a rematch against Magellan. That was out of reach for this ship now. Luffy could theoretically travel through the clouds with his lightning powers. However, this was the Grand Line. Even if he was to safely arrive at Impel Down, the return trip would be impossible because he wouldn't know where the ship was located. They still didn't have a Viva card pointing to this ship yet. His observation could only reach 100 squared miles, and the world was vast. Even so, that wasn't the case here in this situation. Lily's father still hasn't passed through here. It was possible to make an ambush. Her father was captured due to his bounty of 320 million. Kept stealing food from the government from over 50 years, and so the price went up gradually without the family of giants noticing. The Navy is passing through here, Zoro commented with his usual smirk. You're very brave, Robin commented. Frankie was almost about to cry for her story. Lily, we shall help you rescue your father. His crew were up and ready already. Some wanted to rescue him due to his gentle, heroic nature. Some wanted to make Lily, their new friend, happy. Some even wanted a good fight against the Navy. You guys, are you sure about this? She asked, and then she focused on Luffy's handsome face. Of course, without your father, you'd be lonely, right? He said with kindness in his words, as he commanded the ship for battle with the aura of an emperor over him. Lily was dumbfounded and attracted to his confidence and desired to help her. XOX. Fog started appearing again. Hey, what's happening with the weather again? Usopp asked. Is it the mirages again? Zoro said as he stared to the horizon. I think it's just fog. Nami answered. Brook looked around them. Visibility is going down. The Navy, Luffy muttered. Dad. She pointed at her father, crucified on a small boat that was tied to the battleship in front. 4 battleships in total making a diamond formation at sea. All right, crew. Let's slaughter some Marines, get her father back and have a volcanic barbecue afterwards. Luffy ordered. XOX. The Marines on the back of the ship kept their eyes peeled as they passed through the dangerous fog. A thump-like sound occurred and Theory pointed the guns towards the shadow that landed right in the middle of the deck. There it was, a huge man there, wearing a simple white shorts and a straw hat. His aura was tangible that most Marines swallowed in fear. Straw Hat, capture him. A rear admiral yelled. Call Vice Admiral Mamonga, he's on the front of the ship. Some went inside as they went inside to communicate with the other ships about the invader. So the big guy isn't in the back. I gambled wrong. Luffy almost released a sigh. The majority of them surrounded him with their rifles or swords, quite organized. Give it up, Straw Hat, Monkey D. Luffy. Surrender now or you won't die. The rear admiral coated his body with armament and wielded a polearm that was also a cannon, quite an interesting fellow. The men felt back-breaking fear when he turned to look at them and only one phrase was uttered. Pitiful that you guys chose this profession in life. XOX. In the frontal battleship, some men received the warning that the Straw Hat captain, Monkey D. Luffy, had arrived on their rear. Vice Admiral Mamonga, sir. Pirate Straw Hat Luffy is attacking the rear ship. Give us your orders, sir. What? Mamonga was a serious and powerful marine, with the rank of Vice Admiral, a man that had severed for over 40 years, incredibly skilled in haki and sword techniques, all to serve justice and maintain order. He was the man who stood in front of the Pirate Empress, one of the most powerful women to ever live, and did not flinch. Without Luffy convincing Hancock to go to war, he would have died 2 years ago, stranded in the Calm Belt. Headquarters were already notified of their position and that they were in direct attack by Straw Hat Luffy. Reinforcements, however, were unlikely. They were dealing with the massive problem left behind by the Neoarines, a terrorist armada that attacked a major research facility in the New World and had destroyed an endpoint of the sea. He picked up his blade and went outside. He knew how dangerous of an existence the man with the straw hat was. He was the possessor of Conqueror's hack. A man with such capabilities, talent, and unbridled potential and younger than 20 should not exist, especially when the man in question directly opposed the world government. No, the Straw Hats weren't a normal rookie crew. They had declared war 2 years ago on Anai's lobby. The world government had not forgotten, nor forgiven. Monkey D. Luffy's evil needed to be erased from the pages of history. If he had to be the one to do it, then he would. He was greeted by his captains and lieutenants, all powerful men manning the front ship. He hoped that his rear admiral would be able to delay the pirate before he arrived. Men, Mamonga commanded. However, in a flash a powerful slice crossed by his side, blocked by his honed reflexes. A beast had landed on the ship and rushed faster than his captains could perceive and went straight for him with the intent of killing him without any mercy. Mamonga gladly rushed and met the beast with his own blade. Mamonga took a step back when he was parried by the man wearing a dark green bandana, his own sword Wataraniki being blocked by a black blade that was cursed. Pirate Hunter, Boranoa, Zoro, Mamonga whispered. Oh, having a vice admiral remember my name, that makes me happy. The hunter boasted and started fiercely striking him, not caring that his attacks were decimating the ship. Mamonga blocked the black cursed blade again with a bit of armament. He addressed his captains and lieutenants. Men, go aid Rear Admiral Kuji against the Straw Hat. His men were not capable of facing this swordsman yet. They would just be cut down. On the other hand, he couldn't let his Rear Admiral be for long in a battle with the Straw Hat. Thus he made the decision to fight the pirate hunter and defeat him quickly before joining with his men. It was the most efficient choice. His most powerful soldiers jumped towards the adjacent ship to move towards the battleship in the rear. I guess the Navy aren't as smart as I thought. The pirate hunter before him had a red glint and a sinister smirk. What are you? Immediately the two adjacent ships received a massive blast to their sides. Men, Mamonga screamed at his lieutenants and captains caught in the explosions. However, that was a rookie mistake, because a flash of red and a finger went flying off. A lesser experienced warrior would have lost their right arm along with their right side. The pirate hunter drew another cursed sword from his sheath. The sword had a nick of blood as Mamonga retreated a few steps back and aliased his right hand. His pinky finger flew off a few seconds before and now blood started pouring out. You don't have time to pay attention to your men being slaughtered, because you'll die here. XOX. The Marine captain of the raft carrying grit his teeth as he ordered his men to be more attentive. No new orders had been given by Vice Admiral Mamonga, and the fog was so thick it was hard to see the enemies and allies. They were carrying the infamous pirate Pants and Strom on this raft, crucified with chains around his arms. They could not let him escape. He prepared his treasured sword. This sword was what made him get his rank. It could cut through concrete as easily as slicing air. They failed to notice a woman with blonde hair slowly emerging from the sea. With curly eyebrows and a swimsuit, she was completely not dressed for battle. She silently swiped her feet and a soldier's head went flying off into the horizon. Her soles were now bloodstained with gore and spinal fluid. The men pointed the guns at her, identifying her by the curly eyebrows. "Black Leg Sanji," they yelled. She forced them with cold eyes. "What's with this cold reception? At least get the name right." "The name's Sora, the most problematic lady killer of the Straw Hats. Surrender now." The captain rushed her with his sword, intending on taking one of her legs with his slash. She speared him with her leg, destroying his treasured sword that he used to block her attack, like a giant wooden stake going through the man's sternum. The leg pierced his ribs, his heart, his lungs, and his spine, and her feet had ended on the other side of his body. Her thighs were smeared with the Marine captain's blood. She threw the Marine captain overboard with her foot. The Marines around her gulped as they saw her right leg full of blood and her right arm as well. She drew lines of blood on her cheek. "My leg is quite deadly. Want to have a taste?" The massacre was untold after that. XOX. Inside of the flaming right ship, soldiers were being killed left and right by a single man, no, a skeleton. He rushed towards them with the intent of rapidly killing the lieutenants. One by one life vanished on that ship. Inside of the left ship, the 2 remaining captains of the 7 in this armada were assassinated. Flower Petal roamed that ship and a single dark-haired woman smiled serenely from above the mast. Life on this ship was vanishing as well. And the last ship, the ship on the rear that Luffy had arrived. There was just sounds of a man with its last embers of life still going for him. It was the Rear Admiral, master of Haki and bane of small-time rookies who had bounties less than 300 million. He was powerful and was about to receive a finally earned promotion after this mission. Now, however, he was on the ground, with both his arms blackened by his Haki, trying to push the man with the straw hat away from his floored body, trying to protect his chest from any attack. However, the man named Luffy was far crueler. The 6'8" monster closed his fist, without any armament, and battered the Rear Admiral's thigh, flattening it, pancaking the muscles, turning the femur into powdered dust. All his veins and blood vessels of the leg just imploded on themselves. And the Straw Hat Man kept hitting the same spot on the Rear Admiral's leg, over and over until the appendage was ripped apart above the knees. Then Luffy, not minding the screams of the Rear Admiral, grabbed the man's shoulders with both hands and tightened it until the bones of the shoulders were folded paper. The man screamed in pain. The man looked down and saw he had no right leg. The man could not raise his arms anymore because his shoulders were completely busted. He turned pale as blood escaped his body by waves of spurting gore on his leg. Luffy grabbed the man by his teeth and pulled up, ripping apart his face and frontal lobe along with half the skull. The Rear Admiral had previously told him that your grandfather would be sad to see his own grandson in such a state as the Marine looked over the sea of his dead comrades. Luffy did not give one response to the man and delivered a worse punishment to him. Now everyone on this ship was dead and killed by Luffy himself. He had no mercy for Marines. It didn't matter how many wives or sons or brothers or daughters these men had in their homes. They had simply chosen the wrong profession. He made the point 1 year ago when he annihilated G1 and every man within it. Sending any soldiers with the Navy logo after himself was a complete death sentence. Having a grudge against the Navy and the world government was an understatement. Understatement of the century for the man who ate the fruit of God. Any Marines, or anyone who enforced the rule of the world government, would be immediately dead on sight, with the small exception of his grandfather and maybe Kobe. XOX. The battleships were basically toast at this point. And finally, the fight on the main ship concluded. Zoro took off his headband and put his blades back onto their sheaths as the Vice Admiral's head fell from his neck. The Vice Admiral's pinstripe suit contained bloody gashes from the pirate hunter's technique. He was a stubborn one until the end, truly deserving of the rank of Vice Admiral, however still very far away from the highest position. As for Zoro, with a wide variety of nicks along his body, there was only 2 areas with holes, his left thigh and his right arm where the Vice Admiral had punctured with the tip of his sword. The fight was over. He could tend to his wounds later with Chopper. The real achievement was that he defeated and killed a Vice Admiral in single combat. He killed Vice Admiral M. Mamonga. Contact headquarters immediately. A Marine soldier yelled, his peers all afraid. Zoro rushed forward with one hand on the draw to slay the other soldiers who were still defiant. However, unfortunately, news of Mamonga's defeat had already been broadcasted before that soldier screamed. XOX. Sora walked in the air, kicking it and sprang her forward, and with a few kicks, the gentle giant was unleashed from his hold on the raft. She grabbed the large chains connecting to the main ship. She carefully placed them on the Sunny, which remained hidden carefully in the fog. Then came the shark submarine, carrying Nami, Chopper and Lily. She seemed happy being reunited with her father. Sora was glad for her. It made her be reminded of her relationship with her fatherly figure Zeph. It appeared that there were a lot of pirates who meant to do good, and Pants was one of them. Pants seemed a bit frayed from the harsh treatment, but he was a hardy giant. There was no need to worry. Chopper was also with them, and he was the best goddamn doctor the crew could hope for. The Sunny dragged the raft away. However, suddenly they were hit by a volley of cannon fire from the distance. There was another submarine, with a flag emblazoning an anti-symbol from the Marines, a strange Jolly Roger. A man from a long-armed tribe jumped in the air and arrived, trying to kill Pants. She couldn't allow it. She deflected his attack with her thigh and tried to rip his skull with her heel, however he evaded her strike. The man jumped back, and they were in a standstill in the air, within the fog. Just then, Luffy released a signifying amount of haki, saying that this fight was hers. She was to take control of the crew while him and Zoro were busy. Usopp, Frankie, sink that submarine, she ordered with a loud enough voice to the Sunny, who was surrounded by fog. The enemy submarine was still bombarding them along with the Navy ships. Get out of the way, little girl. All pirates must die. We are the true Neoarines. Neoarines. Sora was a bit confused by the naming. We will inherit Master Z's ambition and destroy every single pirate in this wretched ocean. Starting with the giant behind you, Pants and Strom, bounty of 300 million, the man from the long-arm tribe responded. Then went on the offensive. She entered a fierce battle where she tested her armament against an ex-marine. The man loved the sound of his voice, always telling how he was a great ex-marine rear admiral when he was only 20, and now 10 years later reached unimaginable power. That the Marines were weaklings that did not pass proper punishment to the criminals that infested these seas. XOXH. Hey, Sora just said to take out the submarine, Usopp said as he took off the binoculars he was using to see, even though the fog hid some things from his sight. Then go man the cannons. I'm going to supermaneuver the Sunny, Frankie said. Right. Usopp ran below and manned a cannon. Using the Gaon-Ho was a waste of energy. The submarine in question had a few faults in its construction. Frankie warned him about those. Usopp gladly aimed for these faults, precisely launching cannon strikes even through the fog. He was the sniper king of the Straw Hat Pirates. No one could beat him when it came to artillery. Soon the submarine sank due to Frankie's expert maneuvering and understanding of the submarine, and Usopp's peerless marksmanship. XOX. Sora was frankly amazed. The man was surprisingly strong, a nice enough warm-up after those disappointingly fast fights she had before arriving in the New World. Her legs were just too powerful and often ended up destroying people's bodies like folded paper. However, this was getting tiring. His haki was frankly inferior. She would have rather fought the Vice Admiral. The man tried to elbow her face with all the haki that he could muster. Sora turned her cheek and let it hit her, only making a small bruise on it. She started him with contempt. Enough satisfaction for you. Wah. She telegraphed her kick so that he could protect his chin and neck with haki, all of his defense, yet her heel kicked his skull out of his neck, his spinal cord ripping off and his head flopped back and hit the lower back of his body since the spine was still holding it. The man just fell to the sea. She jumped back into the raft as Nami, Chopper and Lily tended to her father. Zoro arrived from the frontal ship. Brook jumped for one of the side ships and Dear Robin flew from the other. They had cleaned up the captains and lieutenants nicely. Their ambush was flawless. Then their captain jumped from the rear ship into the raft, full of blood as always. Well, she wouldn't complain. Her leg was stained until the thighs with the blood, pieces of organs, bones, and brain matter of at least 20 different people. It was great that their captain had cleaned the air about violence on their descent to Fishman Island. The Straw Hats were not afraid to get their hands dirty. They never were in the first place, but Nami, Robin, and Zoro never displayed their kills in front of the captain outright. Their captain revealing that he was never that innocent to begin with was a relief. The only problems were how Usopp and Chopper would react, but having them in that war down in that deep sea was reassuring. While they had their qualms, they did not have any weird ideas of what this life as a pirate entailed. Destroying people with her legs was therapeutic, especially people who made her angry or pissed her captain off. Hearing the story about his brother and his mother in their descent after being reunited in 2 years made her realize that the government along with the Navy were all shitbags. She had no mercy nor pity for any of them. While she was occupied with her thoughts, her captain closed the distance between them. "Are you hurt?" he said as he traced her bruise on her cheek with his thumb with the air of concern in his handsome face. "No, but they mentioned something. They are Neoarines and want to destroy all pirates." She explained what that member of the Long-Arm tribe told her and explained what he stood for. That he was an ex-marine now working with a group to exterminate all pirates and his target was Pants for some reason. The fact that their vessel shot at marine battleships meant they weren't exactly on the same side either. "I see," he said as he caressed her blonde hair. Now if he could stop treating her this way, it would be great. Her heart was becoming a mess of emotions. She was the lover of women worldwide. She wouldn't give this body to anyone. Not her Mo. She stopped this line of thinking. It was no use to think about this now. Ivankov changing her genders was something she hated at first. However, when she looked upon the mirror, her outlook on things started to change. My motivation? In the end, it was all about respecting those who left them and safeguarding their memories left behind. That was all. Her new name was for the same reason. Sora. Now it was time to rob the Navy ships of their cargo and food. As a great pirate cook, this was an essential part of her business. After all, the dead have no need of food, only those who hunger or who starve. Food waste was bad, after all. XOX. A few hours after leaving the scene of massacre, a few straw hats were lazing on the raft being carried by their ship, conversing with Lily and her father. Thank you for all your help. I couldn't even sneak into their ships and you helped me, and Dad, thank you. Her dad also bowed with her as thanks. Then he started his story. I was on an island where the government ship was. Ever since Whitebeard died in the war, the new world has been thrown into chaos all around. The islanders were on the brink of starvation back then. The government was like a leech, sucking all the money the islanders barely had just so the world nobles could have a steady income. Other islands under it were no exception. But the government could see how badly the island had and lifted no fingers to even help. He had to do something to save them. If confronting that ship was it, then he would do anything. He didn't expect, however, that there was a vice admiral on board, or that vice admirals were that strong. After telling his story to the varied reactions of the Straw Hats, ranging from tearful ones to fully stoic ones, the giant pirate named Pants and Strom suggested he'd cook his special-made barbecue for the Straw Hats as thanks for help. Now started the saga to looking for an island where there was an active volcanic activity. XOX, Zephyr's apprentice. As they landed on the new world, the group settled to bask in the new atmosphere. Being hunted down by strange weather was part of the course. They met a strange giant named Lily and Strom who ate the fruit of minimizing. Her power let her control her own height. She was the little giant, and she was a pirate under her father, a giant named Pants and Strom who was a world-renowned pirate chef who used volcanoes as his method of cooking. The Straw Hats learned of her father's capture and transportation towards Impel Down, and they were fortunate enough to intercept 4 battleships carrying the gentle giant. After their deathly exchange with the Navy and a group calling themselves Neoarines, the Straw Hats were able to rescue Lily's father without any major wounds. An ensemble of captains, lieutenants, a rear admiral, and a vice admiral had died by the hands of the bloodthirsty crew. A notable death was of Mamonga, a revered vice admiral, at the hands of the Straw Hats' first mate, Roronoa Zoro, the famous pirate hunter. As for the Straw Hats right now, Brooke started singing with a spring theme in mind as Luffy put on a yellow jacket, open, and black jean shorts, without any footwear and showing his massive torso and tall body on the lawn of the ship. Brooke also was dressed for festivities, with a Hawaiian shirt over his bones, a pink afro, and a cat hat with green and yellow bracelets. "I'm the skeleton of happiness," he yelled as he sang along. Cherry blossoms were all over the lawn as they partied. Zoro, who was wearing a pinstriped suit and pants with golden sunglasses, was enjoying the cherry blossoms, as well as the amount of booze barrels and bottles near him as he sat on the lawn. "This is quite nice, drinking and watching the flowers." He tossed a small bottle towards his captain as a sign of appreciation for letting him face the vice admiral and win. "That was a great battle. You need to let me face more and more powerful enemies." Don't worry about that, Zoro. This ocean is crawling with people even stronger than a measly vice admiral." Luffy chugged his bottle in one sip. He groaned at the good strong taste. "Don't be concerned. I won't coddle my crew. We are going against pirates that have innumerable strong people after all. Those emperors we're making enemies of, they might be stronger than even me. If you can't keep up, train harder." The same to you. If our captain can't beat a measly emperor, then he isn't worthy of having the next world's strongest swordsman on the ship. Their banter continued like they were very old friends. To a captain and his first mate, their bond was unique and pleasant. "Our captain has become a reliable guy. Don't you think so, Chopper?" Zoro asked the little reindeer who was wearing a funny outfit resembling a cow and drinking from his milk bottle. "Yeah, Luffy becomes so strong and cool. But this festival is nice. Milk goes so well with watching the flowers. These aren't cherry blossoms. They were me." Frankie was wearing a bush of cherry blossoms on his shoulder and on his head as an afro. The petals were synthetic in nature, created by him. His mechanical arms were coated in pink. His new Speedo was also pink. "You go, Frankie san." Lily, who was wearing a pink bikini and small jean hot pants, was by Luffy's lap, resting her head with a smile as Luffy passed oil on her dark skin. A purple gas cloud floated about in Chopper, who was drinking the milk. "Oh, it stinks. It smells like poison." He collapsed. "I'm a goner," he said as he fainted. Is there poison in the air? Reminds me of that time I went up against Magellan. Great times," Luffy said ironically to Lily as they enjoyed themselves. "What's wrong, Chopper?" Frankie asked. "Inhaled poison. Of course I have an idea. Please listen to my new single, Inhaled Poison." "Now," Brooke said as he started singing new lyrics with a Western style as he played his guitar. "Go on." Brooks and Lily cheered for the song as she drew herself more comfortable in Luffy's lap. "Now that I think about it, the booze tastes weird," Zoro said as he chugged from one of his barrels and slammed it on the lawn with a smile. "But this is a dry brew, so maybe it was supposed to taste like this from the beginning." They're lively as always, Robin said while watering her own flowers on the second floor of the deck. She wore a small blue sweater that only reached before her belly button, as well as a string bikini panties. Blossom, Blossom, now all of you keep growing new pop greens for your master. By her side was Usopp, wearing orange and white striped pants, with a great barrel behind his back and wearing a mask. He was spraying his own plants with a pesticide, which was causing the purple cloud of poison. The great pest destroyer, Lord Usopp, will protect you from the insects. Hey, long nose, so you're the culprit. See, Chopper is all knocked out because you keep spraying that thing around. Frankie complained towards the source of the poisonous cloud. Usopp walked towards the fence overlooking the lawn and stared at Frankie. That's because you're all standing downwind. This is a pesticide. It only kills insects. If this is enough to kill you, that must mean you guys are pests. Zoro had a smirk. I see. Well, that's a relief. We're not bugs after all. He sat down to drink more of his booze. Chopper, who heard what Zoro said, got up as well since they were okay. I'm pretty sure that stuff's harmful to the human body too. I hope they don't get cancer and die a painful death, Robin said with a nihilistic look. And you need to fix your gloomy humor too, Usopp muttered. Geez, what a ruckus. Nami complained from her sun lounger next to Luffy. Why can't they just relax for once? Luffy, Lily, and Nami were all enjoying themselves in the sun as they listened to the banter. She wore a string bikini thong that really pronounced her ass. She laid on her stomach to catch some sunlight on her back. She asked Luffy to pass some sunscreen on her. Then she took off string bikini with a devious smirk showing the sides of her massive breast. Luffy was through with the application of sunscreen and was especially careful when he applied it on her ass cheeks and her thick thighs. His hands massaged the sides of her boobs for the last act. Thank you, she winked. Shut up, shitty assholes. Sora came out of the kitchen and served Robin, Lily, Nami, and Luffy with a cold drink made by some exotic fruits the Marines had on board. As a matter of fact, they had looted all their supplies and money. Turns out 4 battleships carried quite a large sum of 500 million berries. Nami was delighted about it. Sora was still wearing her swimsuit, but now with a red skirt. Sora-chan, can you bring some dessert for me? Nami said as she kissed her in the cheeks and winked. Luffy put his masculine hand on Sora's back. She felt her skin met his rough hand and didn't know what to think, except that her face was burning. Bring me some more meat for me, he said to her with a grin. Yes, Nami-san, Captain, I'll bring it now, she said with a smile. Feeding ladies and her captain were always a pleasure. Hey, Sora, give me some dessert as well for my hard work, Usopp yelled. Huh, Sora gave him quite the annoyed look. Both Chopper and the skeleton called for sweets as well. The damn cyborg asked for a cola and the moss head dare ask her for more booze. They asked without any politeness, just like spoiled children. Huh, why should I feed you damn bastards? She said with the coldest look in a very calm tone. She pulled her blonde hair over her ear. I was born only to serve the ladies. Then why do you always feed Luffy first when he orders you? Usopp asked while passing. She almost blanched at the question. Shut up. I only do it cause he's my captain. Stop asking stupid questions. Her tone of voice was agitated as she got defensive over it. XOX. At night, the Straw Hats united behind the ship. Lily and her father were in the raft, talking about possible locations to leave them. You guys should leave us at Kasan after we have our party. It's pretty close by and is in the beginning of the new world. It's a marvel. Their whole city is ran on steam, and there are high buildings with white walls all over the place. It's pretty famous for its worldwide hot springs and theater plays. Lily spoke of the town. There is also a newly instated sea train there. It's such a marvelous city-state focused on tourism and steam engines industry, Hans said while grinning. The gentle giant continued the story of the place. It was a touristic spot in the New World. With pirates and marines going on about, it was a place for all sorts of people, even giants. Though a giant might often be the center of attention for crowds. The place was famous for its bars, golf resorts, and its white desert where steam engine vehicles thrive. And on the center of the island was a giant mountain with the letters spelling out the name of the city and island. Kasan. Definitely a place I want to visit, Luffy said as he looked at the dark sea. I want to buy all the clothes I want, Nami said as she thought about the new metropolis. Hey, didn't we buy a whole warehouse of clothes back at Fisherman Island? Usopp scolded. Nami rebuked Usopp violently for defying her needs as a woman. I want to spend more of my money, and new clothes are the best, Nami said, speaking about the 500 million she now owned. I want to buy more medical books. I want to research something, Chopper stated with a serious expression. Robin squeezed him in her lap. Then let's buy some books together, she said with a smile. Oh, I also want. Brooke started to speak, however he was cut off by another weather event. Something was falling out of the sky in small flakes. HRM. Frankie looked at the sky. What could this be? Robin pondered. Is it snow? Chopper was in turn excited. No, it's too hot out to be snowing at night, Zoro said as he looked over the gray flake in his hand. Luffy took a bite out of his meat on the bone with the flakes on it. It gave a bitter but salty taste, reminding him of charred food or smoke. It was a nice seasoning. He bit into it more. It's volcanic ash, Nami said as she analyzed both the flakes and the dark clouds nearby. Guess we found our volcano for cooking. Luffy commented, with the grins of Lily and her father. Nami looked at her new compass. One of the needles was pointing to where the volcanic ash was coming from. That needle was rotating wildly as if a child lost its parent. She sighed. Nothing good could come out of it, but there is no defying her captain. By her prediction, it would take a day to arrive. The cloud of smoke traveled far off, which wasn't a good sign. It was late. It was time for the crew and the two giants to sleep as well. Luffy retired to his room. As he was about to fall onto his bed, he was visited by 3 girls, Nami, Robin, and Lily, who brought a whole cream with her with her nice food fetish. He thoroughly fucked the 3 girls in his captain's bed until morning arrived. Their bellies were a bit inflated due to how many times he ejaculated inside of them. Having sex with women, especially those that he loved, was such a great feeling. However, he noticed Sora silently spying for some of the night and masturbating outsides of the door. Luffy walked on the deck at the break of dawn. Brook was near the front, playing his old violin. Luffy sat near his old crewmate and appreciated his song with gusto. The ash flakes had lessened. However, he could see in the distance a blackened island, with no forest, with a small mountain spewing lava towards the northwest of the island. I hope I don't burn my afro with lava. What a dreadful-looking island. Brook made small talk. Yeah, but I feel the smell of adventure, Luffy commented, and their pleasant silence turned into an animated conversation. XOX. Luffy took a bite out of his barbecued meat after their party. He wandered off on the island destroyed by a volcano, and near the ends of it, there were various pools heated by the volcano. Seawater accumulated in craters on the island by the high tide. He felt something with his incredible observation. It was faint, but there was someone here. There on one of those sports there was a woman. She had blue hair darkened by the smoke and her arms were burnt. Hey, are you all right? Zoro and Sora accompanied him. They were also adepts at using observation, and ever since Ryugu Kingdom their attention never faltered. Another lady in need of attention just like Lily-chan? Sora asked. Zoro also got curious. This island just had its volcanic activity stop. Some areas there were still lava flowing like a river. For a woman to be here in this wrecked island where nobody else was. Her blue coat was destroyed along with the rest of her clothes. However, she seemed to be of the same build as Nami and Robin. Luffy lifted her tiny body with his muscular arm and cradled her to his chest. Master. She opened her eyes briefly to look at him. However, she passed out immediately. Is she confusing me with someone else? Luffy thought as he called for Chopper and ran to get help. Her arms were so burned he wouldn't be surprised if they had to get removed. Fortunately for the woman they found, Chopper was truly a miraculous doctor. He was able to treat her without having to resort to amputation. However, it left 2 scars on her forearm, and they would be there for the rest of her life. Who is this girl? It's like she blocked lava with her forearms to get that type of wound. Chopper warned. Found her on one of those pools of seawater on the craters around the island. Her presence was weak now. However, when I removed her from the water, her presence increased 1,000-fold. Luffy said to the group around the bonfire, consisting of the Straw Hats, Lily, and her father. It was already late at night and the group drank some booze, admiring the darkness that a volcanic landscape produces. The new woman with the dark blue hair was resting in a bed, also near the bonfire to heat her up. Do you think she's a devil fruit user then? Nami asked. Yes, most devil fruit users lose their powers and become useless when in salt water. Robin responded, with a pointed look at her captain, who somehow or another was able to build a semblance of resistance to it. However, he wasn't entirely immune to the sea. If he stayed too much, he would drown as well. What do you think happened in this island then? Sora asked. We found a lot of traces of melted metal around the island. Usopp answered, with Frankie explaining further. Pockets of metal suggested it was either tools or weapons, most probably weapons. Around the island there were faint signs of constructions in the mountain. However, the materials left signaled there was a fortress before the catastrophic volcanic activity. Gathering all the information, they surmised there was a battle here, and most men had retreated or died before a sea of lava could drown and melt them. The woman resting there must have been a survivor who couldn't escape in time. Luffy looked at her. She's as strong as Zoro is, and even Robin has no idea of her identity or her faction. Not many people were stronger than Zoro was now. That little Vice Admiral learned that firsthand when he fought the Straw Hat swordsman one-on-one. Luffy sighed. They would know if she was a good person or not when she woke up. Worrying about such things now is a waste of time. XOX. Z-sensei. She yelled his name in terror as she woke up, surrounded by people near a campfire. She immediately prepared for the worst. However, a cute little animal started treating her outright. His name was Chopper. He was a doctor. How strange. Then she looked at 3 people she was intimately familiar with, having read the news constantly. a green-haired man with 3 swords in his waist called the Pirate Hunter, a woman with long dark hair and blue eyes called the Demon's Child, and finally the most problematic sight of them all, a large and tall man wearing only beige shorts, a straw hat, and 3 silver-colored circlets around his bicep with large rubies encrusted in the metal. His being showed an incredibly muscled and buff body, with arms large enough to grind diamonds and legs so thick they could blow out an island. This was a man few people ever crossed, the son of Dragon himself. Your pirates. They were Z-Sensei's mortal enemies. She prepared herself and tensed her body for any kind of attack. Her master and her brother disciple had suffered long because of pirates. However, the pirates around her were all so kind and good-natured, she couldn't believe what she was seeing. She was even offered food by the great pirate giant Pants and Strom. As one of the commanders of the Neoarines, the 25-year-old woman didn't know what to think. She reluctantly introduced herself as Aine. No last name, she was an orphan at the beginning of her life. She owed her life to her master. He took care of her, made her grow into a strong woman who ate vice admirals for breakfast, with one of the most powerful fruits of the paramecia type, the fruit of regression. As the night continued and the festivities were underway, she got involved with them, especially towards the little giant called Lily and Strom. They were so similar with how much they loved their fathers, Z-Sensei being her only father figure in life, and the one she wanted to protect. But in the end, she explained that there was a fortress of the Marines on this island, playing to a pirate's natural hatred that pirates had for Marines. She said that she and her father attacked this island because it was a facility researching humans. All lies with a hint of truth. They were actors of justice raining down on the evil Marines when the despicable Admiral arrived on the island with the orders to destroy what was left on this island. The Admiral Kizaru. When announced that name, a lot of the Straw Hat crew flinched imperceptibly, with the captain himself frowning with hatred in his eyes. It appeared that this particular crew didn't have fond memories of the name Kizaru. The island ceded under the strike from Kizaru, and it turned like this after that. Her father was dead because of the Navy. That was the half-truth, half-lie she told them all. Their reactions were surprising. They all became very invested in her story and cried for her, cried with her. The truth was that this island was an endpoint and was destroyed by 12 or so bomb-like devices the Navy had created to measure up to the world-ending ancient weapons. The Neo-Marines under Z's command had stolen all of them. Z died in battle with that piece of garbage Kizaru, and she was left to trigger the bombs on the face of that annoying asshole who killed her father. She was this close to killing him. That bastard who only got lucky because of the fruit he ate. Next time, Kizaru would die by her hand, even if he moved at the speed of light. Her fruit of regression worked on reality itself. She digressed. The Straw Hat's hospitality and kindness made her heart be filled with both sadness and happiness. However, she mustn't forget her true mission, to fulfill Master Z's ambition. In the end, they were pirates and were going to be swallowed by an endless sea of lava, destroying the new world along with every pirate and swallowing even the One Piece itself, wherever it was, thus ending the great age of piracy. It was her teacher's ambition. In his last moments he looked at her with hope. She couldn't know of his thoughts, but that look meant that he trusted her with the future. We must advance towards the blue horizon. She sang a line with her melodious voice, the song her master adored. The pirates were surprised, especially the skeleton, by her singing, but she sang that line with sorrow in her heart. XOX. She spent 3 days with the Straw Hats on the remains of the island, being treated for burns in her arm that were going to lead to a permanent ugly mark in her forearms. It was the punishment for taking a bomb that rivaled an ancient weapon to the face. She was in wonder that her defense made her survive such an attack. Luffy was kind and manly, authoritative, and funny. He was the ideal pirate in her opinion, pursuing selfish dreams and not letting anyone get in his way. Most pirates were content with the promise of gold and greed. Luffy's greed lied somewhere else. She came to idolize Zoro's discipline and training in battle. He was silent and stern, but with his own funny faults, and he had a giant appetite for booze which she shared. Chopper, the doctor, was so kind to her. He was so attentive and cute. He was the best doctor she ever had met. Of all the others, she was indebted most to him for his care. Pants, the gentle giant, offered her the best food he could make along with Sora. And when asked, he said he always fed the people in need. She almost cried eating his food because of her conflicting sorrow inside of her. Lily, the little giant, quickly became her best friend in all but name. She did not think that she could meet a girl her age with so many things in common. She never had this much fun in ever. She became friends this fast with the Straw Hat crew, and on the second day, she found something with the help of Luffy. On one of the pools was the old mechanical arm her master used, the only thing to remember him by. Luffy jumped in the salt water and had some trouble, but was able to retrieve the mechanical arm. He said it was troublesome because he had 3 sea stone circlets. It was salt water, and that arm was concentrated with so much sea stone it made him almost weak. That afternoon, she hugged the huge mechanical arm, battered and bent in some areas, made entirely by concentrated sea stones to fight any devil fruit user. Aang hugged the only remaining relic of her father as she felt it draining all her power and making her as weak as a child because she was a devil fruit user. But she did not care. She's surrounded by, I mustn't dread, because my comrades wait for me. She sung another line from her master's favorite song as tears ran down her face. His Vivre card was burnt to cinders. There was no body to be found. It was vaporized by the explosion. The only thing left was his mechanical arm, the arm he cherished and loathed. Her father was dead and gone. He truly was. She was now alone with no guidance in the world. Would fulfilling her master's ambition give her some form of relief? She wondered and wondered as tears kept falling and her friend Lily kept trying to make her laugh. Aang put her hands on her face as she felt the salty tears, and looked at the clear blue skies in search of something. The Straw Hats, and especially the giants who she made friends with, comforted her that night. They were good people, a far cry from the tales of sorrow from her master, a far cry from the terrors she also faced on the sea. She witnessed how pirates were a vile and terrible scourge upon the world. Fighting pirates as a 15-year-old girl, having to bury innocent people in mass graves, deserted islands, people driven to madness, her own master suffering for it. She agreed to her master's plan to some degree, but having met these wonderful people who took care of her wounds from the battle with Kizaru, fed her wonderful food and comforted her in a time of loss, all of it casted some doubts in her inherited plans for the new world. XOX. The day arrived when only a single ship arrived at dawn. A black ship modified with technology only known to the Neoarines. She shrewdly attacked the Straw Hats, taking advantage of their trust in her. She used the fruit of regression on Nami, Chopper, Brook, Robin, and Lily. She didn't have the heart to kill any of them, so she defaulted to 10 years of regression. Please, we mustn't let Z-sensei's dream die here. Vince arrived by her side, no longer wearing his pink ninja outfit, but a darker green one, letting his hair out in a Wano-like ponytail. He was a cast-off orphan from that island and had eventually made his way into the Navy ranks. He was her brother disciple and as close as kin. He had the same objective as her. We need your help now that Sensei is gone. I'm dedicating my life to you. Aang, he said with the honor of a shinobi, dedicating his life to a master. She only saw him do this with Z-sensei. Please, don't kill them, Vince. But they are pirates. Vince shared her intense hatred of evildoers as well. They took care of me. They're good people. Vince read her intentions and nodded. He faced the main threats of the Straw Hats, Robin, Brook, Frankie, and Sora. Using his power over all flora to his advantage, he blossomed tropical forest full of tranquilizer poison. He used the sheer power of bark against the physical threats. After all, having a tree lumber towards you at the speed of sound was never a good prospect for your body. Aang used an old dagger and faced Zoro and Luffy in battle. She was able to match the swordsman very well. Their battle was at a standstill. She could not use her power against him as they already witnessed her touch the other Straw Hats with it. She took cuts on the arm and a small one on her left cheek, showing that her strength was dwarfed by the pirate hunter. However, she did not despair. One of the Neoarines chucked her pistol from the ship and she was able to graze his leg with a well-placed shot, a dagger in hand and a pistol in the other. This was her optimal state of battle. However, there was one obstacle that she paid attention to and despaired as she and Vince fought to retreat to the ship. One presence, Monkey D. Luffy, the Straw Hat, was slowly, step by step approaching her, with no expression on his face. He slowly looked at the forest being built. He looked at his teammates struggling against the shinobi-like man who had the power over flora. But he was disinterested. Instead, he turned to stare at her and only her. Her heart started beating wildly in pure unadulterated fear. One thing since she was a child was that she could always tell how strong a person was just by looking at them. And her senses told her that this man was completely and utterly unbeatable. Going against him means that you'd only lose. Stop this, Aang, he simply said, as he walked step by step, pace by pace, like he was in a pleasant walk. She panicked and turned her gun towards high, firing off. However, the bullets just bounced off from his powerful armament haki surrounding his body. He reached his massive arm towards her. However, he was intercepted by Vince, who arrived near his stomach and grinded the man with the shuriken on his back. However, the metal weapon did nothing against Luffy's naked torso. Vince was, however, well versed in handling tough enemies. He circled the man with a tree trunk fully coated with armament, and like the arm of a giant kraken, Vince threw Luffy towards the other side of the island, throwing the Straw Hat Man for more than 15 miles away. Forest of Ancients. Vince screamed with pure determination, and a massive forest was thrown at the mountains where the volcano stood and where he had thrown Luffy. He used every bit of his power, as giant forest made of wood raised and destroyed the earth, piercing the mountain of lava. The forest was so great, the trees so large they pierced the ocean on the other side. There was a giant forest, made for titans instead of the bleak landscape before. Aang sung her master's favorite old song again as she supported Vince as they ran away with fear in their eyes and retreated towards their ship. They knew how strong their opponent was, they weren't dumb. This was just stalling in the end. We leave now towards Kasan. The second endpoint is their Bince was being supported by Ain. He was exhausted and puffing after using so much power. Ain also strapped Z-sensei's arm in a cloth and strung on her back as they jumped to the ship. She left behind her journal with a letter towards the Straw Hats. She turned to look at her crew. Only a force of 50 soldiers remained. All of them were relatively strong, some apprentices in the way of the 6 powers, some using rudimentary haki, some who could use both, but none of them were truly proficient save a couple of them. The mercenaries were gone. All that was left were sympathizers with Z-sensei's plan. Because some wanted justice in the seas, some wanted revenge, others just were tired and wanted the pirates gone by any means. Some followed Z-sensei out of admiration as well. Some were vigilantes, some wanted to be heroes. There were a lot of strong opinions between the remaining Neoarines. 50 people. The other sympathizers had taken the last submarine and left, splitting from their group to do their own thing since the linchpin, Z-sensei, had perished. She wasn't discouraged by this. A smaller crew was more manageable, and they accepted her leadership easily enough. They heard of an explosion on the mountains of the island as the ship sailed away. A man walked out of the lava and magma, liquid rock falling off his shoulders and not even burning the man. He just walked through lava like it was natural. Ain had the face of a woman who feared her demise as she saw the man approaching his own ship and calling his crew to pursue her. That man, he cannot be human. He's close to the realm of gods. Vince commented as if the ninja had seen a god of destruction walking on Earth. She had to agree with him. Oh no, we have to leave. He wants a naval battle, Ain said as she ordered some cannons to damage the Straw Hat ship so they would have no choice but to retreat as well. The group of Neomarines were also very experienced and knew when to get the hell out and worked hard. Nobody here wanted to face a monster in human flesh and die a meaningless death, even if the enemy was a hated pirate. The naval battle started. However, they were able to lose the Straw Hat ship when a giant hail of rocks hit their location. Just a common weather pattern in the New World. However, their sole ship was damaged extensively during the battle. Just a measly 50 people from the thousands in the attack to obtain the Dena stones. They were against all odds trying to fulfill Master C's ambition. XOX. They got away, Nami said while swinging her little legs. Her body had been regressed 10 years prior. Lily was also regressed and now was just a little girl just like her. Robin was in her 20s. Chopper returned to being a little kid and Brooke returned to his 80s. We need to stop her. She's my friend. Please, I know that I've been asking a lot from you guys and I can't know how I will repay you back. But I will. Please save my friend. The little Lily talked to them. Not even concerned about the regression placed on her, that she had to age 10 years. All she cared about was her new best friend Ain and the dark route she was going down. Lily knew she ran out of favors from the Straw Hats. They already helped her save her father, and going on a limb for a person they just met again would be too much for normal pirates. What do you want to do, Captain? Zoro said while cleaning his blades. Luffy did not answer. He just read her final message in the almost empty journal, detailing her plan to destroy the 3 endpoints and how she wished farewell to them, as well as a desperate plea to coat their ship and escape towards Fishman Island again. The power of regression would fade in about 3 days. It was explicitly stated to be a promise from her, so the Straw Hats had no apparent need to go after her. Her power would fade and the crewmates affected would return to normal soon. Even so, Ain was kind enough to give them a chance to escape, mostly due to how they treated her with kindness. Even so, Luffy wouldn't run away. What else? I always do what I want to do. We're stopping her on the second endpoint. No questions, it's an order. The Straw Hats cheered. Ain had become their dear friend in such a short amount of time. Every member of the crew connected with her through her loss of a father figure. Many could relate to her struggle. And being shackled by a crackpot plan from a misguided old man was not a route the Straw Hats wanted Ain to follow. Nami started the explanation. The endpoints were 3 islands at near the red line of Merry-Gois, right after Fishman Island. The next endpoint was south, and the third endpoint was even further south from the second endpoint. Sora and Zoro were excited to go against Ain and Bince for a second round. The next time they were going to win. Frankie and the rest had their ego bruised because of the lost naval battle and the damage the Sunny incurred. They also wanted a rematch. As for Luffy, he was mostly disinterested in fighting. He was mostly disappointed in Ain since she was so powerful. He inherited his dream of being a pirate king from seeing how awesome Shanks was, his role model. Ain similarly inherited this crazy plan from mutually assured destruction from her role model. The main difference was that he made his dream his own. He wasn't doing this to please Shanks. Luffy genuinely searched the One Piece for his own selfish reasons. The Straw Hat was just a memento of his resolve. Ain was doing it for the memory of her old man, trying hard not for herself, not for her old dreams, but just to please a cranky old man's dream. She didn't make her dream her own. She was an empty shell without purpose, just following her master's steps. It was fragile. Her resolve was fragile. Her dreams not her own. She was a crumbling mountain of sand. It was sad to see such a powerful woman in that state. Luffy and the crew realized this, Zoro especially. Luffy nodded. He would leave this in Zoro's capable hands. The pirate hunter, more than anyone, wanted to fight Aang and her flimsy resolve. Lily also wanted to desperately go against Aang as well. He was a generous captain. Nevertheless, he didn't want to pamper anyone in this crew. They would have to fight this one themselves, and he would truly see their growth and display. They headed for the next endpoint, Kasan. XOX. Aang hugged her master's old mechanical arm as she rested on the ship's walls, deep underneath, where little light showed. She kept singing her master's old song as her strength was zapped because of the concentrated sea stone material. However, she did not care. All her mind was replaying was her old memories with her father. She was an unfortunate orphan, and as a child she was bullied a lot because she was one of the few girls that was not adopted. People loved to talk behind her. Boys her age loved to slap and punch her face for little to no reason back at the orphanage. She had nothing in her life, when suddenly, walking on the streets of her measly island, she spotted it. An enormous blue ship with white sails and innumerable cannons, and out came a man with violet hair and glasses, wearing a cool white coat, drinking his bottle of sake like a total badass, his soldiers all animated and respectful towards him. He arrived and was able to subdue the mayor of that town for corruption. The mayor had the gall to send assassins. But the violet-haired man just punched through a bladed knife with blackened arms and beat down the assassins with a single elbow blow. He then just stood, staring at the mayor as the mayor scrapped and wet himself with cowardice. Aang looked at the exchange, thinking that this man with the white coat was the coolest thing she had ever seen. He was a real hero in her eyes. He was way more heroic than those in the fairy tale stories, and way cooler than the famous pirate king the boys kept idolizing. The violet-haired marine chucked them all into prison and just walked away equals with a smile, being thanked by the poor around town for his work against the corruption happening on the island. Then and there, Aang decided to become a marine like her new role model. She wanted to be as cool as him. When she turned 10, she sneaked onto a ship towards Marineford, leaving her old boring island and orphanage behind. And after 3 years of working odd jobs on Central because of her gender, she finally was able to get his attention and put herself under his wing. She was selfish, but she knew and believed in herself. She made herself useful by quickly advancing in the ranks and leaving everyone else in the dust. By the end of the second year, she was already a marine captain and his honorary daughter. And when she was 15, tragedy struck her master once again. "I mustn't fear because you are here," she sung the old song again, hugging her master's mechanical weapon harder as she reminisced about better times. Her tears couldn't help but fall as she cried in the dark corners of the ship. Eventually, she ripped a piece of the metal plating of the arm. With it, she made a new dagger with the concentrated sea stone material that could cut through any devil fruit user. If Luffy were to go against her, she wouldn't need to fear that walking natural disaster. A certain way to win was to touch the man with her power of regression and turn him into nothing. However, she knew she would die before reaching him. Her new dagger was her trump card. XOX. After a few hours of traveling through the waters in the direction of Kasan, someone rode a bike in the middle of the sea right in front of them. "Aurora, what do we have here?" The man known as Aokiji scratched his fluffy hair as the sea around him dropped in temperature. Aang, right. Aang did not want to face an admiral in the middle of the sea. No, an ex-admiral. However, he and Z-sensei were close. She had to try and recruit him. Finding a common topic to talk was hard with the lanky man. However, he appeared willing for a discussion on her old master's plans. "Kasan, in point, huh?" he said with the most disinterested look. She tried and tried. However, the ex-admiral was losing interest. Searching for topics, something came out of her lips before she could notice. She had sung her old master's song. And Aokiji sung back the next lyrics like it was engraved in his mind. Then he smirked and left the Neoarines with these words. "While I don't agree with Zephyr Sensei's plans, I wonder how far his ambition will take those he left behind. We're not exactly friends or allies, but I will give a helping hand just this once." He waved as he cycled away towards Kasan. XOX. Kasan. After days of travel, the Straw Hats had found a destroyed island. Together with the two giants Pants and Lillian Strom, they stared a party and they witnessed Pants' volcanic style of cooking. While scouting the island, the powerful monster trio came across a woman half submerged in a pool of hot steamy water. The woman was named Aang and she had severe burns in her arms from a supposed battle against the Marines. The Straw Hats became quick friends with her and empathized with her suffering for losing a father figure in her master Z. The giants became her best friends during the 3 days. Lily the little giant and Aang Zephyr's apprentice became close as sisters in those days. Luffy found the mechanical arm of Aang's master and that depressed the girl they found, Aang, even more. She kept singing her old master's favorite song, a song the Straw Hats really loved to hear, especially Brooke. On the third day, her brother Disciple raided the Straw Hats with a group called the Neoarines. He pledged his allegiance towards her, and both agreed to fulfill their master's ambition by any cost necessary. Aang used her power of regression to disable a few of the Straw Hats, however they ran when faced with the monster incarnate that was Monkey D. Luffy. She left a journal telling of her plan and telling them to run away before the new world exploded into pure lava. She, who hated pirates, wanted to save them and give them mercy, saying that her power would expire in 3 days and the people whom her power affected would return to normal in time. Meanwhile, Aang became depressed and sang her song in the depths of the black ship before deciding to use a part of her master's mechanical arm and craft a dagger out of it. After days of travel, she met Aokiji in the sea, riding his bicycle, and was able to get him on her side. Aang headed towards the second endpoint in order to destroy it. Now, on the new marine fort, the fortress built on the side of the new world, so one of the disciples was able to detonate the Dena stones, and he is now dead, is he? Sakazuki's hand caught fire from the power of his magma as he saw Kizaru nod. Him and his little girl disciple are now dead because of the explosion. However, that doesn't necessarily mean it's over. His original plan was to use the stones to blow up the 3 endpoints, thus annihilating the new world and everyone along with it. He started his speech, looking at a room full of Vice Admiral and Rear Admiral. Worrying was that 3 Rear Admirals and 2 Vice Admirals were reported dead. Kizaru smirked. I struck him while he was defenseless. The old man had problems breathing because of his old age. Now his little disciple was worrying. However, I did not detect signs of life after the explosion. Nevertheless, his odd crew escaped with the Dena stones, didn't they? Ha 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 ha. Green Bull confidently laughed at Kizaru. Sakazuki silently raged. Precisely, and that's why it's unforgivable. Anyone who allied with Zephyr and calls himself these Neo-Marines should be exterminated in the name of justice. However, they are certainly scattered. We need to recover these Dena stones no matter what. He then proposed a plan to stake out the 2 endpoints, with many of the defenses on the second island. Admirals needed to scout the seas between the second endpoint and the third one. A small reconnaissance team to survey the strength of the Neo-Marines on the second endpoint, Kasan, and a full ensemble of Vice Admirals and Admiral on the third. Unfortunately for them, they needed 2 additional days to mobilize their forces. By the time they were mobilized fully, Kasan might be already compromised. Sakazuki wasn't willing to compromise his own forces on the second island just to blow up in their face. Kasan was a necessary sacrifice for justice. Let the Neo-Marines grow overconfident, and then they would exterminate them in the third endpoint, finalizing their demise in the name of absolute justice. Those were Sakazuki's orders as Fleet Admiral. Most understood, they had lost both Mamonga and Yamakagi, 2 powerful assets and revered Vice Admirals. They couldn't afford to lose more and be weak. Now, Vice Admiral Mamonga was transporting a pirate criminal when he was attacked by the crew of the Straw Hat Monkey D. Luffy. Sakazuki read the next order of business, the emergence of that problematic crew on the new world. Suru continued with the blessing from the Fleet Admiral. Garp's grandson had become quite a thorn on their side. Reports say that pirate hunter Roronoa Zoro, his first mate, killed Mamonga. Monkey D. Luffy himself had killed and destroyed the G1 base last year. Efforts to rebuild are still a continual process. But there is no telling how much he hampered our hold on the first part of the Grand Line. As you all know by now, his power over rubber has disappeared. Reports state that he has power over lightning. Experts assume it is a highly dangerous Loja power. It was used once again on their resurgence at Sabayati Archipelago, where he was able to destroy a pacifist with no effort. He also used an attack that produced a similar explosion to Kizaru's power, this time destroying an entire fleet and killing a lot of our soldiers. The attack at the 4 battleships on the New World left no survivors. The team of reconnaissance reports extreme cruelty in their attacks against Marines, hinting at some grudge the Straw Hat has against the Navy. Suru's report on him continued for over an hour, not understating the power the crew caused. A greater bounty right now was off limits because of the higher-ups. However, the Navy from this day changed their approach towards the Straw Hats. The crew was now a big fish, and the Navy would use bigger fish to catch them. As for the strange hatred towards Marines stemmed from the reports, most thought it derived from the execution of Porca's DAs. His brother's death might have incurred his anger towards all Marines. XOX. They docked on the nearby island to Kasanansen. There was a neat little port where pirates paid the owner as rent. Frankie used this so he could fix the parts that were damaged in the naval battle. It was already night when they arrived. Sunny's speed was greater than that black ship, so it would probably take longer for them to arrive. Frankie and Nam had calculated they were 2 days ahead from Maine. Lily and Pants went ahead to Kasanansen. They had business there and took the last train for the night. They went in for the hotel rooms, and Nami, the devious woman that she was, rented her room with her captain. Luffy stood with Frankie as he carried more tools to fix the ship. Frankie looked over the old man who owned the harbor. The man was looked lost in thought, staring at their ship. "Oh, old man, if it's about the docking fee or other payments, ask our navigator. Did the Neoarines do this to you?" The old man asked. A child was hugging his coat and hiding behind him. "Old man, do you know the Neoarines?" Frankie asked as Luffy put his fist on his cheek to listen in. "An awful lot of pirate ships been attacked for the past couple of months. Most of the pirates who survived said it was Z and the Neoarines who attacked. And it's always at the start of the new world. They always drift here eventually with their ships beyond repair." The man took a sip of his booze and cleaned his lips with his sleeves. All of them said the same thing. They were attacked by a man named Z. Luffy paid attention. If both Aang and this old man's stories were true, then the man that she respected and looked up to as a father was this man called Z, the man with a mechanical arm made out of sea stone. What a legend. Luffy and the gang accompanied the old man towards his house, where his granddaughter was there. She was the mother of that child hanging onto the man's coat. The crew rested there, and the old man resumed his tale. The granddaughter served them tea and completed his story. "These days all the customers that Grandpa gets at the dock are pirates with damaged ships and broken dreams, all with stories of being hunted down by Neoarines. We earn a living on this island by fixing ships and renting out the docks for any pirate or sailor needing a pit stop. There is a sea train stop on the other end of the island. What happens is that pirates dock their ships here and visit Kasan and other connected islands by the sea train without getting hassled by the administration for having pirate ships on their islands. Doesn't it get rowdy and troublesome to give a harbor for pirates?" The little Nami asked them. Grandpa was a sailor in his early days, so even if they are pirates, he can't help but look after them. The granddaughter commented, "Daha, I just like anyone putting their life on the line in the new world, pursuing their dreams. But it's true that the strong eat the weak in this ocean. Many a captain has lost their comrades or their resolve by going up against the Neoarines. When I see them at that state constantly, I think that these captains who lost their dreams are no better than husks, empty, better off dead than alive. It's tiring." The old sailor continued his tale, and the Straw Hats listened well. Aang's hatred for pirates ran deeper than any here realized. However, none here were deterred. XOX. Nami walked on the tracks underneath the sea's surface, jumping tracks and waiting for the train to arrive. Luffy and the others waited on the stone station as they watched the little Nami play around, one day until Aang would arrive in Kasanansa. And then on the distance, smoke coming out of the chimney and a train running in the distance. With cloudy skies, the beautiful sea train arrived to the delight of everyone. "Oh right, Luffy, Mosshead and Skeleton. Your faces are too recognizable. Leave the info gathering to us," Sora commented. "Since the girl is arriving there tomorrow, why not soak up in the resort in hot springs before the fight?" Zoro said with a smile to the agreement of Robin, Brook and Usopp. "We should definitely spend more time in buying more clothes. Our first shopping experience in the new world." Nami commented. "It seems they have the criminal brand on the island as well. Papagu is certainly rising up in the fashion world." Frankie elected to stay behind this time to fix the Sunny, but they would manage without his intense firepower. Luffy acquiesced. The cyborg had worked extra hard in the underwater civil war in Ryugu Kingdom. They entered the train in the direction of Kasanansen, paying for first-class passengers. As pirates, they had to enjoy life, and what better than spending Navy money they had stolen on the best things. They would arrive in the afternoon. The little chopper enjoyed the adjacent islands and patches of green land and the beautiful cloudy sky. Luffy, Nami, Robin, Lily and Sora rented a private room, and he sat his tall body on the couch leaning back, with Sora by his left side, Robin pressing her round and large breasts on his right and sitting on his right leg, Nami and Lily on his torso, playing around. He rested as he enjoyed wine and caviar and fun conversation with the girls. It was a pleasant travel. Being a pirate was the best indeed. They arrived on the island, a bustling city full of tall buildings and white walls, of steam chimneys and factories, of hot springs and massive resort selections, of theaters and bars, of the massive volcano and desert on the other side. "All right, everyone, make sure you remain unnoticed by the government. XOX. The rest of the team used bars and seedier locations for information gathering. However, they were only able to learn that the Navy itself was waiting on the third endpoint. Piecing it all together, it painted a horrible picture of what the world government was doing. They did not care about this island or its population of about 300,000. Robin worked splendidly as a dancer. She wore a very tight velvet shirt that pressed against her bosom and almost showed her braless nipples, and a long skirt cut on the side showing her legs, wearing gold bracelets and anklet. Her hair was styled differently, and she used contact lenses to hide the true color of her eyes. For the bar and clubs it was an excellent disguise, and Nami as a small part-time waitress in the bars. After they finished their gigs at the bars and clubs, They would often be accosted by some drunk stalkers. However, petals flowed, arms sprouted from their backs, and they were murdered by the woman with the power of flowers. She faced them all with a cold smile as she held Nami's hand as they vanished from the alleyways to end up in another gig at another bar or club, vanishing and killing again. The day had just started after all. Chopper landed a work at polishing shoes of important individuals, politicians, partygoers, rich sons looking for jobs, anyone with quality boots needing a great shine. Chopper absorbed information and relayed it to Brook, who would make timely visits to their homes, to rob them of valuables since they were pirates after all, as well as information towards anything weird. Usopp and Sora, however, visited underground gambling dens, with her using a small low-cut dress, revealing her incredible bosom for lusty men to open their jaws open. She was a man before. She knew what tactics to use to get men talking without ever having to do anything. Usopp was an expert at drawing wins in the gambling space and forced agreements with the den owners. Of course, not always they would be so friendly, to say a nice word. Some gambling den owners sent goons after them, which meant that Sora would kick and massacre them all in turn. Any unsuspecting goon had their head literally erased by her powerful kicks. Staining the walls of the alleyways red, she would then proceed to hunt down the owners and kill them in their suites or houses. In just one night, the murder cases had soared 55% from last year on this city-state island because of Robin and Sora indiscriminate assassinations of targets once they were sufficiently irritated, both taking quite a liking to their captain's newfound ruthlessness and applying to their own actions without remorse, just satisfaction at being able to kill without being criticized by their captain. Pants and Lily had arrived one day earlier, and they already started making their food festival, one of the main reasons they wanted to arrive here in Kasan. However, they also were ears on the ground, waiting for their friend Dena to show. As for Luffy, he passed all day sitting on the sands of the desert. His work was to put on a wig tonight and go on cabarets and gather information from any girls willing to serve him booze. It was also the job of his first mate, but the man got lost in some tropical forest on the other side, and Luffy was too lazy to bring him back since he could sense the swordsman with his observation, and the man was at the peak of the volcano right now. The sun was turning orange, and Luffy kept his fist against his cheek as he saw the sands of the desert move. If I were leading a small cell of terrorists, I would need to anchor near the desert and move the whatever bombs up the volcano to destroy those end things or whatever, right? Passing through the city would be suspicious. However, he couldn't keep his observation here in this wide desert all day. He had to go back to the city. The way to go was to mount an ambush when the Neoarines are ready to descend and corner Aang while someone deactivates the bombs. Damn, these so-called strategies are complicated. Luffy scratched his hair and left the desert. Being ruthless and reckless was more of his style than all this undercover work. After visiting 7 major cabarets and grilling the girls working there for information, he wasn't able to find anything new of the Neoarines. However, he was able to get a news that satisfied his bloodlust. A rear admiral had arrived with a few 50 soldiers on an office building nearby, most likely reconnaissance to see how strong the leftover Neoarines were. He couldn't let the Marines discover that Aang was still alive now, could he? And he couldn't let a Marine stay alive when he was in walking range now, could he? His smile was one only the most sadistic devil could produce. XOX. The rear admiral arrived with his crew in the empty office near one of the alleyways. Here they could work and not be disturbed. The main points that need to be surveyed was the desert and the volcano. It would be very hard for any Neomarine bastards. Remember, this island is just for us to spy where they are storing the Dena stones and their relative strength. Yes, Rear Admiral Juno. The men nodded and went inside, organizing it to be a base of operations. He arrived at his own room, which had a desk already and a snail transponder ready, when suddenly he heard of a scream outside. He looked over the window of the second floor and saw 3 of his men horribly disfigured. Enemy attack. Then, when suddenly his own door exploded and in came the 6'8" man known as the Son of Dragon, carrying the body of one of his own lieutenants, bloody and headless, his spine broken and his body flopping about, being carried by one hand only. To reach here he would have to go over 50 Marines. There was no way he could have reached here so fast. This man was a pure monster. Monkey D. Luffy. The rear admiral's first instinct was to reach the transponder, however a lightning spear broke through from the pirate's fingers, vaporizing the poor creature. Rear Admiral Juno unleashed his blade encoded in haki. The other hand was holding a sickle and chain which was also enhanced. So it's true, you ate a lightning loja. Oh, so the government is still confused about that. Nice to know. The man who had the aura of a supreme king threw the lieutenant towards him, staining his coat with the blood of his comrade. You bastard! The rear admiral almost burst a vein in anger and met the straw hat midway. He utilized every of his haki on a single bisecting strike at the naked skin near the ribs of the straw hat. However, the sickle and his katana failed to even break skin. The man didn't even turn into the element of lightning. He just took it. Huh, are you not a loja? Dumb Marine, you need to hit an area where I don't have passive hacky or overpower my own passive enhancement. If you can't do that, you won't even scratch me. Luffy opened his arms and hugged the man with such force. All iron body. The man screamed. However, it wasn't enough. Luffy pressed and crushed the Marine in his arms like a bottle of mayonnaise being crushed by a press. The body he hugged exploded in a shower of gore. All was left was parts of the cranium and 3 pieces of the tailbone connecting with a floppy spine. These rear admirals think they're hot shit when they can't even use armament for defense and rely on something weaker like iron body. Luffy was disgusted. At least try to mix the 2 techniques. It would make your survival more likely when messing with a beast of pure physical might as him. Killing Marines really makes my day brighter. Luffy used a towel and cleaned the spots of blood and pieces of meat on his muscular torso, and walked with a smile of contentedness towards his resort. He really wanted to try the hot springs at night. XOX, Arara, I didn't expect such a warm welcome, he said in the shores of one of the town's bays. He was walking on the stone path when he saw Luffy land on the stone fence, overlooking the crashing waves. On the alleyways there was a woman wearing a professional blazer and red social shirt with a leather skirt and wavy eyebrows. You were blowing your presence all over the island. Anyone with a modicum of observation would arrive here or run away. Of course, some of us are mentally challenged and would rather chase smoke, Sora said, muttering about the moss head that lost his way yesterday and was still running around in circles on the damn volcano. What are you doing here, Aokiji? Luffy asked with a tenuous expression as he swung a flat stone to bounce 73 times in the waves. Dawn was almost coming. The day of the confrontation was finally here, and an ex-admiral had arrived. What am I doing here? The man creased his eyebrows and scratched his forehead in thought. What am I doing here? He asked himself as if he had forgot his purpose for being here. Are you mentally challenged as well? The blonde asked while looking at the clock. Luffy had no words for the ex-admiral. No matter how the man may hide his intentions, he was not getting out of this without answers. Don't be so cruel, sister. The ex-admiral sighed. He told them that he was temporarily helping a daughter of his old master and that he wanted to see how it would all turn out. So you're helping Ain in the end after all? Luffy asked him, without any jokes, completely serious. Arara, so you know about that. Well, I can't do nothing about that after all. He let a freezing breath. Want to fight? You know I respected you, Aokiji. You left the damn Navy, even if you had to lose to that Akainu. An ex-Marine is good in my book. I don't understand why you want to help Ain in her insane plan. But if you get in our way, then the result might not be pretty. We're not like 2 years ago. Luffy and Sora stretched and walked away from the Admiral. Luffy mocking the man for trying to start a fight right in the middle of the port where many fishermen were arriving. I can't believe you would help her in her self-destructive path. You must have a very soft spot for her master, Luffy said while waving his hands in goodbye as Sora walked with him. I wanted to fight this Z guy myself, the Straw Hat muttered, a bit saddened that the legendary man had died before he could see what he was capable. Aokiji looked at his master's favorite bottle of sake. He saw his own reflection of him in the mirror. One of the great perks of his power is that it always kept his booze cold. XOX. Lily washed her little hands as she helped her father close the shop after a day of festivities. Their little city-wide party had netted them a lot of money to buy another ship for them and not be so reliant on the goodwill of the Straw Hats. Thank you for the meal. There was a last customer of theirs finishing her meal. She wore a black hood over her face. Why are you doing the same? Lily asked, expanding her hand and grabbing the hooded customer. Pants also prepared his knives for combat. Meanwhile, Ain stood still on Lily's hold, as her dark-skinned giant friend pleaded with her to stop her plans to destroy the New World. She told Ain that the Straw Hats were still in the sea and would be caught up in the aftermath, following a plan that was not hers. Following something that she knew was wrong was, however, that was the limit. The hooded figure drew an intricate dagger with a Damascus style of forging and nicked Lily's hands. Lily screamed, not because of pain but because of surprise. She shrunk immediately due to the knife affecting her power. It works well with devil fruit users. A memento of my master, she said as she stared into her own reflection of the blade. A devil fruit user using a sea stone dagger was a riot now that she thought about it. She was desperate enough when she saw the power of Luffy. This dagger would give her a fighting chance if they ever met again in combat. Pants tearfully attacked her, and Lily in turn got up and started attacking again. However, the giants were simply outmatched and soon their bodies were strewn on the ground, bleeding from their wounds. Don't go, Ain, you're my friend, please, the little giant said to her. You don't understand. If she had lost her father, she would understand her pain. Ain looked at the fallen Pants for a moment. If she would lose her father, they would be the same. However, when she raised her dagger, she lost her resolve, because superimposed on Pants's face was the face of her old master, her father. The cool and amazing Zephyr, seeing that she took a step back, she couldn't do this to Lily, not her best friend. Lily reached out to her. With those tearful blue eyes, Aang stared at her and her dagger glinted. It would be the easiest thing to slit the throats of these dreadful and hateful pirates. Just one attack and it would end their lives. Pirates all deserve to die. Her master dedicated his entire life towards justice. The Neoarines all had their fair share of terrors from past experiences. Bint suffered long because of pirates. Her master lost his wife and daughter to pirates. He lost his arm and his apprentices to a warlord named Doflamingo. Aang should have killed them, but only tears fell from her violet eyes. She clenched her teeth and walked away with the sea stone dagger trembling in her hand. This dagger was the symbol of her mission. She would carry it through, no matter the consequences. Even if I were to disappear. The all-knowing ocean leads the way. She sung her tearful goodbye to the giants who took care of her for those 3 days and nights where she was wounded and without her father. Lily yelled her name. However, Aang ran away towards the alleys. 3 buildings at that moment exploded, already vacated of citizens. It was a distraction in the city so that the Marines would be occupied. In the meantime, Aang ran in the alleyways towards the edge of the city and towards the volcano. She carried on the back of her cape 6 Dena stones. It would be enough to blow this entire endpoint. Vince and the others would serve as a distraction in the desert to draw away the attention from the volcano, a double distraction for the incompetent Marines. And she would kill any forces guarding the volcano itself if need be, but for the moment she would keep to the shadows like a silent killer. However, her heart started having severed doubts. Her mind was plagued by indecision. XOX. The Straw Hats were not near the explosions in the city, nor there were any Marines alive to be confused by the first distraction. And now ice pillars had risen towards Nami, however a plasma beam melted them. "It's ready," she said as the thunder cloud was formed. Luffy arrived and grabbed Nami's weather baton, overcharging it with his electric power, and with their combined strength they dropped a pillar of lightning over the Neo-Marines. However, an iceberg was formed. The hot lightning melted the iceberg. However, the ex-admiral kept reinforcing and freezing the hot water and steam in the air. Meanwhile, Brook, while an accomplished swordsman, was having trouble against the massively motivated Neo-Marines who used mediocre-level haki and other cipher Paul skills. Chopper arrived to help him. However, his strikes had a hard time knocking the breath of haki users and iron body users. These men were 40 and 50 years old. Having led a life under Z, they also sought justice along with their master. However, in the recent days they've been under the leadership of Aang. They came to realize that the girl they looked after like a little sister was now carrying the weight of their dreams and their soldiers. It made these men who were in the retirement age cry and try harder just for her. They couldn't let these pirates get in the way of what she was going to do, and so they fought bravely against them. However, Monkey D. Luffy was an overwhelming opponent. When all seemed lost, the ex-Admiral Aokiji saved their lives from an electrifying end at the hands of the ruthless pirate captain and had been fighting him for the better part of dusk while also protecting them from his attacks. Aokiji was no slouch. He was also aiming for the Straw Hats as hard as Luffy was aiming to kill the Neo-Marines. Any attacks of ice, be it spears freezing the atmosphere, teleporting with the moisture in the air, anything that Aokiji tried to do to end the Straw Hats was being blocked by Luffy's titan-like strength and his lightning storming around him. Usopp used his skills as a sniper to annoy the hell out of Aokiji with spikes, poisonous clouds, carnivorous plants, and other assortments, all just to keep Aokiji sufficiently occupied. And Aokiji couldn't disable any Straw Hat because Luffy himself was blocking and repelling and melting every ice attack thrown. Aokiji looked at Luffy's expression. The god of destruction appeared almost disinterested in this battle. This was just stalling for both sides. Arara, is there someone waiting for her already? Luffy smirked and tried to kill one of the Neo-Marines but was blocked in time by the ex-admiral who commanded ice. "Ah, I miss the old and cheeky Monkey D. Luffy." The ex-admiral complained about his 2-year transformation. "You say like things changed. Not much is different. I will find the One Piece. I am still reckless and stupid. It's just that people die to my punches more often than not. It's that people's hearts just stop working after I shock them a bit. It's just that people melt when I hit them with plasma. What can you do? What can you do?" he said with a neutral face. However, his eyes stared into the ex-admiral's soul. The man before him was a true demon. This new Monkey D. Luffy was a pain. He was almost more psychotic and murdering happy than his grandfather. Nevertheless, Aokiji always knew that this bloodline was a pain, even back 2 years ago. His hands turned to ice as he faced the man who controlled the heavens. XOX. On the other side of the volcanic island, on pools of hot steamy water, 2 people fought. A woman wearing a black blazer over a red social shirt, leather skirt with pantyhose and heels, and the other individual, a shinobi hailing from Wano who used a massive shuriken and control over all matter of flora. He closed the distance and teleported behind her with his shuriken spinning like a saw blade. She gently evaded the attack and kicked him in the side. However, a tree was born in the way, so all she did was blow splinters all around him. He attacked her with his hands, forming trunks of wood in every attack, plant life always defending him when he kicked. To turn matters worse, he would break his own bark that he created to form splinters of wood coated with armament to shower over here. These splinters were like spears that sunk into the rocky ground like iron pipes on sand. She avoided them gracefully, however he pointed his hand towards her, and a flower bloomed on it, spitting a cloud of poisonous explosive gas that blew up the area, winds traveling as far as the other side as their destructive fight continued. You're the most dangerous enemy I've ever fought. Your devil fruit is really a pain. Sora turned to stare at the pools of water. Now it was a fully grown jungle for giants. This man was troublesome to fight. She was a few thousand feet from the problematic shinobi, but she was done now. Her skirt was a bit frayed and her hair was a mess from all the hot steam. She spun in place, her right leg burning hotter than the sun. A brilliant white light replaced her leg. It's not only our captain that can make things melt, she said with a teasing smirk. Diable jamb, star heel. She slowly hit the air right in front of her. The world itself broke from that kick, and a blast of pure connect force coupled with heat rushed faster than Mach 20. The shinobi raised a forest of titan, made a golem of wood and a dragon that blocked the white shockwave. He made 3 shields of wood and a forest of bark around him. He activated armament on his whole body and used the improved steel body to protect himself. However, the attack ripped off half of the island away. Like a star of destruction, the sea itself parted to a massive catastrophic hole. The rest of the island suffered an earthquake as the sea rushed to fill the crater formed on the seabed. The forest and all protections created was blown away, and Sea found his body on a canopy. His shinobi clothes ripped away and massive burns on his body, but he was still breathing. Incredible. You were able to survive that strike even if I didn't hit you directly, just 1,000 feet away. He had made her use the feet of the devil again. Most enemies just were obliterated by her normal kicks, but the shinobi made her feel like using one of her trademark styles kept hidden for really powerful foes, and he still survived. He was breathing but was completely out of it. His eyes were white, and he would probably take a couple of hours to wake up. She stepped with force near his left ear, missing his face. If she kicked his face, he would have died. I'm never in the mood of killing unconscious opponents. Thank your luck that you passed out. If you were still up, you'd be dead. You're also a great friend to Ain-chan as well. It'd be a waste to kill you. She took out a fancy gold lighter with diamonds and lit up. Her addiction to smoking was gone and done. She quit smoking almost for 2 years now, ever since Iva turned her body to this gender. However, sometimes she still got the urge, and to counteract that she kept this lighter with her. And when she had the urge, she kept staring at the flame for a few minutes. She looked at the flame in the canopy of burned trees. As the waves crashed on the fissure she created with her kick. XOX. At the same time, Sora and Bin's fight started. So you were waiting for me. She walked on the burning steps near the volcano. The 6 stones were already placed and ready to detonate. Zoro was sitting cross-legged on a rock, with his katana resting on his shoulder. He said some pleasantries and started mocking her resolve. She shot back with an insult to their way of life, that pirates had robbed everything from her, and she finally had the means to end it all. She drew her dagger and pistol, and their fight started atop an active volcano. Zoro was careful. Only one touch with her power was enough to end the fight. Yet the woman was also incredibly proficient in her dagger and gun use. She had cut his arm and there was a bullet wound on his stomach. She kept evading his strikes with her nimble body until his cursed black sword cut her robe off, revealing her blue hair and violet eyes, a purple shirt with white frills and brown hot pants. She stomped the area and it regressed to being a pool of lava. The pirate hunter rushed her, stepping on melted rock, uncaring as it burned the soles of his shoes. She and him kept meeting in close combat, with her dagger and pistol blocking every single sword strike. Then she rushed to an area where there was nobody, to the surprise of Zoro. However, his surprise turned to pain as she regressed his position to where she rushed to, almost as if time tuned back. But it was only his position in reality that did. She struck him with a lunging blade on the gun wound. However, he dodged to the side at the last second, only making a gashing line that led to his side of the stomach. She revered his position again and shot him. She reversed the sky to make it rain. She revered the atmosphere to make a steam cloud. She reversed his position more than 50 times, always ambushing him. He had no agency over his body. However, he concentrated, and on the next time, took her by surprise and slashed her arm off. The one holding her pistol, the arm was cut clean off. The woman crouched down in pain as the blood kept gushing out of her stump. Zoro pointed his blade at her and told her to give up here unless she wanted to lose more limbs. The ocean knows how the world will end, she whispered the song, drawing strength from her master, even when her arm was cut off. She got pale and was huffing heavily. However, she stood her ground, and she used her power of regression to regress her body to a previous state. Her cut arm returned back. The gun returned. The arm reattached itself and her paleness and stress vanished. She turned to stare at him with a determined look. I have the power to regress anything. Anything. Don't you get it? With my power nothing can hurt or kill me. I am essentially invulnerable. Now get out of my way. No, sorry, I can't let you. Your resolve is too weak. This dream you want to accomplish isn't yours. Think deep. What did your master want to truly do? What reason you have for killing all these innocent people? He pointed at the city with his sword, a city full of criminals, but also of working people, of people wanting to take care of their family, of young men and women looking for work, of old geezers saying how the new generation was bad, of the young saying the old generation was worse, of children wanting to parley with a ball, of rich children being homeschooled, a society full of innocent people that she wanted to blow up just because her master said so. She was reminded of his words. Z-sensei was a hero of justice. Shut up, what do you know? She yelled, and he kept grilling her about her resolve, about her motivations, about what led towards here, but she did not care. She was going to do this. If she didn't, what would her life have been for? What did her master die for? She could regress time itself. She couldn't regress her master back to life. Her power was useless. And there are ways to defeating invulnerable opponents. Zoro tied his bandana to his head and entered a serious stance, with his armament coating the surface of his blade. I'd like to see you try, she said with a bite. This man was not Monkey D. Luffy, therefore he was a man that could be beaten. A giant earthquake was felt by them, however they did not care. They met again in a field of lava, with her activating steel body and her armament on her sea stone Damascus dagger. This was the last strike. Two who had easily killed Vice Admirals met, and Zoro's sword broke the dagger into little pieces. A shard was embedded deep into her thigh and she lost all of her strength and fell on the rocky ground. With her leg twitching, her arm couldn't even lift to get the shard out of her body. She saw her sea stone dagger broken into pieces, with one shard piercing deep into her muscles, sapping her strength, and started to cry. She yelled and struggled on the rocky ground as she cried and cried. She had failed. She had failed her father once again. She banged her head on the ground so hard it made her forehead bleed as she cried and convulsed on the ground. Her hand tried reaching for her thigh. However, she couldn't pull out the piece of sea stone, and she couldn't regress her wounds because she could no longer use her power for anything. Your blade lacked resolve, thus it was broken, he said with finality. What resolve? What was this elusive concept this man kept hitting on that she didn't know? What was wrong finishing what her father started? Then someone came over the hill. It was Lily and her father. They nursed her again as Zoro watched. Why do you come here? I hurt you so much. I turned back on you. I said you were detestable pirates. Why? Because my best friend was hurting more. Why wouldn't I help you? The Lily, who had returned to her normal age, said as she took the sea stone shard out of her thigh. While losing strength, the little giant kept her hold on the shard as she pulled it out of her body. The little giant called Lily started crying with her. God, I can't deal with crying women, Zoro muttered. Yeah, but they've both need their time together now, Pants muttered by his side as they watched Aang hug her friend and started crying hard on her shoulder. Without many words said, a lot of meaning was transmitted between the two giants and Aang herself, something that Zoro had no more business listening into. He descended the mountain. Their friend Aang was already saved. It would quell Luffy's selfish desire to keep his friends and comrades happy. And it was a good relief to set someone as powerful and with so much potential as Aang towards a better path. However, the honor-bound Zoro would never speak of his relief towards the blue-haired woman to anyone. It was embarrassing enough. Thank you, pirate hunter, Roronoa Zoro. He heard someone mutter that, but it must have been the wind. XOX. She was carried down the mountain. She saw the blonde woman of the straw hats drag Binz on her back without any problems. The huge earthquake must have been her doing. Then he woke up and the woman delivered him towards the greatest doctor she ever met, Chopper. She saw Luffy staring at her, with the ex-admiral in front of him, and she ordered her troops to stop the attack. The 50 men who stayed behind with her and Binz approached her with the air of big brothers, all worried. She really didn't deserve them. She was about to doom this sea and everyone along with it with a misguided hatred towards pirates inherited from her master. She apologized for everyone. All of this was her own selfish desires and sense of loss after her father died at the hands of Kizaru. The lazy ex-admiral came by her side and supported her as Chopper came to treat her wounds. The Neoarines and Binz crowded around her as she softly described her master before he became obsessed with destroying evil, as he said. She described his dreams. She described his real family. She described what he took pride in and what he hated about himself and the system that he abided by. 2 hours passed. Chopper's treatment was done, and the night was only beginning. So you guys are staying with Aang? Luffy asked the two giants, Pants and Lily and Strom. Yeah, we're sorry that we've troubled you so much. Pants bowed. Lily smiled. Thank you so much for everything, Luffy. We'll always do what we desire. We are selfish like that, he said, and his crew smirked. We'll definitely be seeing you again, right? Lily asked with uncertainty. Luffy and the Straw Hats walked slowly out of the desert. He turned his head to look back and gave a smile. Yeah, if you're still in this vast ocean, we'll eventually meet again. He and the Straw Hats waved their goodbyes. This adventure was over. There was no need to remain here anymore. Aang looked at the backs of the straw hats with calm violet eyes. Her face turned of determination. I'll definitely repay my debts to you. They cared for her. They stopped her when she was going on the wrong path. If they were ever in danger in the future, she would arrive to help. Aokiji climbed the volcano, froze the Dena stones and shattered them. The second endpoint was saved. The only one that was destroyed was the first. Aang and the rest of the troops dumped the 300 or so Dena stones they had stored into the sea floor. They exploded down there. However, it barely created waves above the sea. These weapons were now destroyed and wouldn't be used for evil anymore. XOX. Luffy and the others boarded the ship. Robin arrived by his side and delivered 2 presents, 2 Dena stones that she had stolen secretly from their ship while they were occupied with the fight. Luffy stared at the 2 vials of Dena stones with the coldest look and the most satisfied smirk. He couldn't believe that Aokiji was so preoccupied with his battle in the desert that he didn't notice that Robin wasn't part of the battle. Robin of all people escaped Aokiji's notice. Luffy thought it was ironic, but he also didn't want the 2 of them interacting in any way. Their story was heavy and not pretty. It would only cause Robin stress if she were to face the ex-admiral again. We got great rewards for this mission. I am sufficiently satisfied, he said towards the crew as Frankie stored the powerful and dangerous weapons deep beneath the ship to be used later. And you said that you didn't need any rewards for helping the giants and Aang. Nami complained. But they shouldn't believe in pirates. They are bad people who steal and murder as they want, Luffy said with an ironic tone as he grabbed his beer. You're sounding like a final villain there, Luffy. Usopp had a disgusted look in his face, however his words had a tone of sarcasm. The tension broke and they all laughed at Usopp's joke. Luffy laid on the lawn as he stared at the dawn of the sun. I really wanted to fight Zephyr, he said as he remembered how many people looked up to him. Nevertheless, it was time to start another party. Mission success. Hey Brook, sing that song that Aang liked to sing. With pleasure, Captain. XOX. They put his mechanical arm together with the grave of his disciples who were killed by Doflamingo. She had picked up the pieces of the dagger and laid them with her master's mechanical arm. She did not need a sea stone weapon to become strong. She had to find her own resolve from now on. She was reminded of the warlord's laugh. She was reminded of her master crying over the bodies of his apprentices without an arm. There are many people in the world who deserve retribution. There are many people in the world that deserve to be saved from injustice. So, want to come with me? The ex-admiral Aokiji offered them to work under him. For the Neoarines, Aang and Bince and the 2 giants from the Enstrom family who accompanied Aang faithfully. However, no, we'll carve our own path this time by doing what's right. Aang and her people returned towards the black ship after paying respects to the grave. Do you wish to become pirates? Mercenaries? What do you want to do? The ex-admiral Aokiji pressed her hard for an answer. Who knows? We're a blank slate now. She left with a non-answer. The ocean saw the world begin. She sung goodbyes to the ex-admiral Aokiji. Aang thought about the past. One of the 2 dreams Zephyr had was becoming a hero of justice. Ever since he was young, he would wear capes and helmets, using elaborate weapons. He would call himself Z. He would save damsels in distress, people who couldn't protect themselves. That strong justice inside of him eventually made him enlist to the Marines when he was only 12 years old. He passed many wars. He kept his strong sense of justice. You don't need to come with me, Lily, Aang said as she stared at the dawn of the sun. What are you saying? Why shouldn't I accompany my best friend in her big adventure? She said with an excited smile. Honestly, you're a dummy. We here are a bunch of pirate haters, you know, Aang asked with a big smile and tears running down her face. But we are comrades, aren't we? Lily asked with an emotional tone in her voice as Aang hugged her again. Aang couldn't trust her voice and just nodded in her best friend's embrace. Both turned their eyes to see Pants serving a big barbecue to the old members of the Neoarines. Everyone partying and talking to the gentle giant, with Bince by his side as they talked animatedly about Wano and Elbaf. Zephyr told Aang the stories of the past. After defeating villains and bullies when he was just a kid, he would always say those words. I'm always there to take you on. I am the hero of justice. Z. Okay, sadly the chapter is over. And if you enjoyed the video, just leave a like and subscribe with post notification, so when the next chapter is ready, you will be notified. Okay, see you in the next video. Bye.